What's up? Yay! Let's go, baby! First of all, I want to thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate you guys being here. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for coming to my house, right? How's it hanging out in my living room? Did you guys have any questions or anything from yesterday? You have any mind-blowing experiences besides us freezing our asses off in the water? Well, if you haven't already, stand up, meet your neighbor. Guys, this is how we get to know each other. Edwin and I talked a little bit last night, and we talked about, one of the most important things about a mastermind in an event like this is I'm going to spit a bunch of stuff out. You guys may take a few pieces from it. We're going to chat back and forth, things like that, but sometimes the connections that you meet at these type of events can change your life. And literally, I had business partners because of some of these events. Even the videographer, Joel, back there, I met him in an event. So many things come of that. So if you haven't already introduced yourself, left and right, come on, guys, participate. Say hello if you haven't already introduced yourself. You guys probably already know each other. Let's roll. All right, so what I'm going to open up with today is we're going to talk a little bit about my history. Some of you guys know me better than others, but some of you guys may have not. You guys see stuff on social media. You hear things, but you may not know some of the struggles that Alicia and I have been through. And so it's always good to hear the good and the bad, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And sometimes we don't broadcast that enough because it's a longer story, but I think it's important to talk about. And then there's lots of good things. And really what it is just more of a story of continuing to overcome regardless of the situation, whatever it is. And by all means, I don't want you to think you hear a lot of hype and you'll hear stories on social media. You'll hear the guy that came from nothing. We've seen the stories of the drug addict or the guy that's been in jail for 40 years or all these things like that, But unfortunately, what I see a lot of is that the biggest trap is the people that had a little bit of a decent life and had some parents that were pretty good and it was pretty okay or nice. And that's how I grew up. I grew up great, middle class, and it's easy to get trapped into the comfort zone. That's the easiest trap right there. You don't really need for anything. Everything is a want right when you get started in life, right? And we're blessed from that, from our parents and prior generations, our grandparents maybe, for working so hard to give us that opportunity. But it's easy to get stuck there. Because what happens is, reaching for that next rung of the ladder is you're risking more than you're worried about falling down the ladder, right? So you get to a point in either business and life that you're like, oh, well, if I take these risks, then X, Y, Z could happen, right? And so let's get started a little bit with, well, first I want to read this. This is pretty cool. So you guys, I don't know if anybody knows, but I have two daughters. They're 7 and 8. My oldest daughter said that she goes, how many people are coming? I said, I don't know, 30 or 40 people, I don't know. And she says, well, I want to write them a note. I said, they're going to write them a note. She's not here, she's out skating, she's spending the night with friends. So I'm going to read her note. We got it on documentation so that she knows that I read it. This makes me really proud. If I cry right at the beginning, you guys will know why. I'll cry with you. You guys cry with, everybody's crying. That's totally going to make me tear up. Dear people, even though I don't know you, I bet you are a brave man and a brave woman. My dad taught me how to make money, and I hope he is teaching you that too. And I hope he is teaching you how to get stronger by eating eggs and steak and meat. Love, Harper. So there we go. So I'm not only yelling on social media, at home I'm really yelling. Listen, you have to be doing this. All right. So show of hands, how many knows that I was in the Marine Corps, military? Cool, awesome. How about the fact, of course, thanks. There's other Marines in here too, other veterans as well. So thank them as well. So I want to read a few quotes that I think are super important to kind of start our day out, right? Some things that'll spark the beginning of this, to get the momentum to get going. Success is something that you attract by becoming an attractive person. That doesn't mean physically, but that means who you are attracts what you're looking to possess, whether it's materialistically or the life that you want. And this is proven over and over and over again in my life. Who I've become was more important to my success than learning maybe one skill. Because what you guys are going to learn today are great tactical tools, right? We're going to go over business stuff this morning, and then we're going to go over real estate specific stuff this afternoon, right after lunch, and we're going to go through 3 different types of real estate opportunities. The ones that I've literally done and that I preach today, and a lot of you guys that have reserve seats that are actually actively doing. And some of you guys also are doing the same. So something that you attract by becoming an attractive person, what that means to me is that my financial development will never surpass my personal development. And so when we've had financial struggles or something's been hard in life, you know what? When I would go back to the drawing board, when I would get back and start developing myself, when I would go back to reading these books, when I would go back and maybe listen to some silly motivational video or something that could help me persevere or to give me these key components that I'm not the only one. Sometimes we feel like we're the only one. And so when you work through those things and you keep going, that you change throughout this journey. Your mindset changes when you start hitting different levels. It wasn't the life that I wanted. And what happened was on my journey, and by no means am I even near where I want to go, but on my journey, and you guys have experienced this before already. You're here in this room, so I know you've experienced it. But on my journey, when I wanted to go to the event, when I wanted to go to this thing, your friend group, the people around you are maybe pulling you back, or you don't want to say anything to them, or you don't want to post that you're doing this thing because you don't want to get made fun of, basically, right? It goes back to you being scared of being made fun of. That's one of the cool journeys that I've been on recently with just putting myself on social media. I had businesses before and I was doing well, but then the whole journey of me putting myself out there, which has brought you guys here, which is hopefully helping you guys, I looked at it the reverse way. I was like, what about me? I'm worried about what they're going to say. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about made fun of. And the reality is I wouldn't have been able to help a single person out. If I just helped one person out by putting myself out there, maybe prevented them from going through a struggle that I went through, or even just shared a positive message, man, I'm good. Or what I see, I draw inspiration from. I saw somebody else do it. I'm just cocky enough that I'm like, fuck, I want to do that too. And some of you guys have said the same thing. You're like, he can do it, I can do it. And if you walk away with anything today, I want you to understand that you can do the exact same things. But you need to make sure that you clarify what you're going after. It's super important. There's many of times in my life where I was going down these roads of what I deemed success, but I deemed that success because of the people that I was around. So I'd be hanging out with these people, and for instance, I've said this before, but my friends, they're going to build in the golf course. They're going to have a house on the golf course in this gated community. And I'd be like, I want to do that too, because I just want to push myself to the limit. Let's do that. I want that. And then I would pull back. I'd go drive the neighborhood. I'd look at lots because I'm an action taker. I was a builder. I'm like, fuck it, let's do this. I'm going to figure it out. And then I'd be like, dude, I don't really want that. That's not like my version of success. Where you guys are sitting today, you got to think, less than a year ago, I lived in Oklahoma. I had a 3,300 square foot office. I could walk to my office. I walked my kids to school in that little area. But what I realized was I'm addicted to growth. I'm addicted to the change. You really do. Once you start to make these little changes, the incremental changes, we talked a little bit about last night, Edwin, that you and I talk about it all the time. That when you make these incremental changes, whether it's your physical appearance, whether it's coming out here, you're like, damn, I felt really good. I want more of that. Or, oh man, I started the business. I started making some ground. I want more of that. And you have to start going out and reaching around or being around people that are doing that and be very intentional about it. But going back to clarifying your vision, you have to understand that every single one of you guys, look left and right, and you guys will realize that the version of success is different. Everyone's version is different. I've built houses for people that had probably $500,000 in hunting equipment and would go on hunts across to other countries. That's not my thing. They did very well financially, but that's their choice. That's their version of success. They would drive a beat-up Dodge pickup, literally, and be worth millions. That's their choice. The other thing is like, I spend money on cars. I like these other things. I want to have experiences. I have a vision in my head. And what's crazy, and I hope you guys think about this deeply. What's crazy is a lot of these visions that I've had is from when I was young. They never went away. There's that itching desire. And I'll tell you one thing, there's a lot of tattoo dudes in this room, but I bet you wanted tattoos a long time ago. You saw that picture, you saw that image of what you wanted to look like, and it started and you're like, I want that, I want to be that guy, I want to do that thing, let's go, that was my thing. And so it's the same for whatever version of success or whatever life you wanted. You're the artist, you can paint it, but there's gonna be a shitload of distractions on the way, a shitload. And there's gonna be a lot of objections, there's gonna be a lot of problems, there's gonna be a lot of things, I call them problems, but reality is you become better at solving those problems. And then what happens is if you're sharpening the pencil correctly, you become a person that can start crafting your vision because you're just painting it every day in your head, right? Maybe you're making a list of what you want. That's something that I did that I highly suggest. If you guys want, this is a good point, write this down. If you guys make a list of what you desire that is limitless. Don't limit yourself on what position of finances that you're in now. Don't limit yourself on where you are now, because what's super important is you're not the person today that's going to achieve that success. But on your journey towards being that person, you will find it. And then you'll want more of whatever that version of success is. And so you have to constantly keep progressing. There is no end all. We'll talk about real estate later today, but one of the things that were sold at a young age is like get a home, pay it off, have a decent car, get a good job, have a 401k. You know, you were a good boy if you went to college and you got a degree, you're going to be untouchable. All these types of things, but nobody really tells you the truth about time and recirculation. Nothing is ours. I leased this house, you know? And the reason I do, asked me 5 years ago if I'd have leased a house, I would have said, no way. And it makes sense to me, wealth from owning my own property and building equity into it. We'll talk about it in a minute. But what I'm saying is nothing is ours. The cars aren't mine. If I die tomorrow, she's gonna sell the fucking cars, right? Or sue something, maybe she won't. But nothing is ours. And when you start to detach yourself from those materialistic thoughts and you start to get a little bit more freedom of movement, then, or what you really want, if that's what you choose, if that's what you're looking for, if that's your version of success, then you'll start to obtain it. But you gotta detach yourself from some of these materialistic things. These guys are a good example. We can talk about that in a little bit. But so building our own homes multiple times, and I'll dive into my story from here, but building our own homes multiple times has really taught us a lot of things. And so being a builder and being a pretty creative person and working with people off one-off plans and having the ability to literally draw my own blueprints, go to the CAD guy, tell him to change the room 3 inches, 4 inches, center the light here, do this, do that. What kind of trusses? Are we using trusses? Are we using stick frame? I've done the whole kit and caboodle. You know, designers, the architects, everything from ground up. And throughout that journey, our first home, they were super important. I'm like, man, I don't know, should we get the gray or should we get the medium gray floor or should we get the light gray floor? Shit, I'm up all night. Like, it's so important. What kind of paint is it? Is it the Dove white or should we go with Bear paint this time? Spectrum. You get so in depth into these micro things of importance, but I feel like most of the time that I ever did that was because I wasn't thinking of bigger shit. I literally wasn't thinking of bigger things in my life. Because at that point in my life, I wasn't thinking, hey, you want to move to San Diego, sweetheart? Let's go buy a Rolls Royce. I would have been like, that guy is totally different people. Literally. It just is. But you start getting addicted to that growth. So I went and did it, built the home. Wow, it's great. You live in it for a couple years. And you're like, well, that'll be pretty cool. And then what's new now is the modern design. And well, we're builders. We got houses going. We can get a lot in this neighborhood. I know the developer. Boom, hit the phones. Next thing, take an action, and I just make it happen. Boom, got a lot, put the house up for sale, moved to the next thing, and I did it again. But throughout that journey, I think we're crazy a little bit because how did you get your wife on board? Doesn't she care about the design? What about the fucking painting on the wall? And I'll let you speak on that. How do you feel about moving? Moving is huge. It's a huge thing. So how do you feel about moving when we would build our own home? Because we had what most people would say, this is the picture most people would paint. We had our babies in that home. I remember moving into my first house at 29 years old that I built, and I was doing decent as a builder, and it was 3,500 square foot in a gated neighborhood with a pool, and I remember driving down the block, because I was still this mindset. I was still moving all of my own shit on a fucking flatbed trailer, but I'm moving into a fucking $600,000 house in Oklahoma, which is big, right? Big, especially at 29. And so I still have the work ethic and the shit that I was doing, fix your own stuff. And I just remember seeing my neighbors, and some of my neighbors would be like, they'd be like 65, they'd be like 50-ish or something. And I was like, oh, it kind of dawned on me. And then a friend asked me, he goes, is that your forever home? We were hunting together, and he was like, is that your forever home? And I remember being like, forever home, bro? I'm 29, how the fuck am I gonna project the rest of my life? And so that was a click moment for me. One, people were like, wow, you made it. People pat you on the back, you did good, you made it, whatever. And it's like, no, I don't care as much about that. I don't want to get complacent. I don't want to get stuck there. And so you have to ask yourself, are you being complacent with where you're at? How hard are you really pushing it? And I don't mean stretching your last dollar, but I mean like stretching you, stretching your mindset, stretching your growth, stretching your development. Because a lot of times it's not about the money to stretch. It's about you believing that you could obtain what you're looking for. That's really it. And it's also, if you're not shooting for a target that's high enough, then you're never gonna hit it. You're gonna think small. You're gonna think about the eggshell or the satin paint on the wall. You're gonna think about those things. And you're gonna spend your time and your energy and your resources on that, because I've done that. So by all means, if you guys wanna build your own home, there's nothing wrong with deep diving through that, but I'm telling you what that journey taught me. Does that make sense? Cool. I just wanted to explain that's what the journey has taught me. I'll use you guys as an example real quick. We talked to them a little bit about, well, dude, just sell your house and freaking rent a place and do this and that. And they're like, whoa, that's crazy. But what happens is, if you don't when you do it, this is what I want to get to. When you do it, how much growth do you feel like you guys have already made? Just by moving, just by doing it. You feel like you've made mental growth, you've had conversations you would have never had, you've thought differently, you've looked at different things. It's crazy, isn't it? I only want to say that for him to verify, because It's a really crazy feeling. It's a crazy feeling. Have you ever cleaned out old shit and you're like, why did I hang on to this? But we have to ask ourselves why we do that. And it can become a very bad habit. And a lot of the older generations, like my grandparents and my parents, mainly, specifically my grandparents, they came from nothing, so little things were super important. And so times are moving so fast, people are realizing maybe we don't want to be, like you're how old, 22? 21? The younger generation, I feel, is less attached to a lot of the things, right? They want more mobility, freedom of movement is super important to them than maybe this white picket fence in Podunk, Kansas. But anyway, so let me dive into our story a little bit. So for those of you that don't know, I graduated high school in 2005. I'm 37 years old. I graduated high school. When I graduated high school, it would make you feel old, bro? You're like, damn it. Shit, I feel old now, bro. It's all this. So I graduated, I had 2 felonies and I had 2 misdemeanors. I'd made some stupid decisions my senior year in high school, drinking, fighting, lying to my parents, pivoting, trying to fucking carve my own path. Literally, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm very fortunate. I grew up with pretty conservative parents, always loving home, never needed for anything. They worked hard, very studious with their money, middle-class people, great people. I have nothing bad to say about that at all. I rode my bike growing up. I had friends. I played ball. I lived the, sandlot lifestyle in the early 2000s and late 90s. So it was fun. It was great. I never thought anything about it. But at that point, I wanted to challenge what the hell they brought me up with. You going to church on Sunday, you don't drink, no alcohol in the house, all these things. And I was like, maybe they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They've never done it. And so I'm gonna go out and do it. And so I did. Great decisions that put me with 2 felony charges and 2 misdemeanors at a pretty damn young age. I was tried as a youthful offender because I wasn't even 18 when the crime was allegedly committed. And I was in a shit situation, right? I never got convicted, but I was in a shit situation. And at that point, I don't think I knew the magnitude of the situation. Being young, being kind of dumb, obviously super dumb. And it could have changed the trajectory of my life, right? I only want to tell you guys that story because I just want you guys to know a little bit more about me. I want you to understand where we're at. And so from there, I always want to join the military. This was going to ruin my opportunity to join the military because of this. And I was looking at doing a small stint of juvenile delinquent time because the judge was a chick and she was going to make an example out of me and my attorney couldn't get me out of it. And so one of the guys I was working with, this is very important. Sometimes people around you can become mentors and you don't have to pay them a dime. Sometimes people in your life can impact you or make that one little decision. And he pushed me off to do it. He's like, dude, my dad was in the Marines. I couldn't join the Marines. Guy used to Red Bulls, so he had a broken jaw and a plate in there. And he goes, you should join the Marines. And I was like, I've always wanted to join the military. But just like everybody else, a lot of times when they go to join the military, they drag their feet, they wait a little longer, they're hesitating. And my parents were in my ear. They didn't want me to. This is the generation that grew up watching Vietnam on TV. They don't want me to join the military. Their brothers were doing things in the military, but a lot of the times in that era, the military was not perceived as how it is perceived now. Things have changed in a good way, right? I think that's changed a lot. Back then, for those of you young guys in there that may not even know, but it was like degenerates, criminals, people who joined the military because they could afford to go to college. A lot of these stereotypes from 1960s in Vietnam. And my parents, they by all means never said any of that, but they were like, well, we want more for you. We want you to go to college. We want you to do a traditional education. And I was obviously challenging them. But this guy at work that I was working with, I worked for my dad in the summers. And I was doing trim carpentry this time. Every summer it was something different. So I'd work with some concrete work. I've done pretty much everything from tying rebar to welding to running skid steers at a young age, moving trucks and trailers in. I used to run semis a lot. I used to drive a lot of the semis, like the flatbeds and then also even low boys and stuff when I never got a CDL because I never wanted my dad to legally throw me out there more. So I fought him on that. Anyways, I was trimming with this guy, and he's like, you should join the Marines. And I was like, oh, I don't know if the Marines, what is that about? And he's like, it's the best, bro, you should do it. And I'm like, whatever, sure, I'll go check it out. So I fucking go right into the Marine recruiter, tell him what I want to do. Fortunately, this guy happened to be, his dad used to be the chief of police of Edmond. For those of you from Oklahoma, you know where Edmond is, but it's a suburb of Oklahoma City. And so he liked the area, knew the place, and he had selected or tried to get to that duty station to get recruiter duty because he was from Oklahoma originally. And he's like, dude, we'll see what we can do. This is 2006, so I'd graduated, things had moved on. I turned 18 at the time. And he's like, we'll see what we can do because you think I can pull some strings and I'll go with your attorney to the freaking judge and we'll see what we can do. And I was like, fuck yeah. So 2006 is going on. For everybody else, maybe it's too young that knows what's going on in 2006, is the war is in full bore. I just kicked off hardcore. George W. Bush at the time was like, we're gonna do a surge. We're gonna send everybody out there. We need more troops. You know, that's exactly what they did. So they started just, for my Marines out there that know, they just started fucking wavering people. Like, they were like, oh, you smoked weed last week? That's cool. Don't smoke this week. Here you go. You're like, oh, this guy's got a fucking 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. Perfect. Get him in the infantry. And it was the perfect place for me. And so, long story short, I end up joining. I get it expunged through joining the Marine Corps, not having to go to juvenile delinquency. It was the best thing for me. But that one decision that guy, or that I made based on that guy kind of pushing me or having that conversation, boom. That was probably the first like movement in my life, pinnacle movement. And then when I got to the Marines, I was like, oh yeah, this is the place. Like, I could still be a degenerate, and it was just perfectly fine. So it was harnessed, right? It was a little bit harnessed. You know, it was what I needed. And speaking of that, for those of y'all who don't know, John Sims right here, I want to call on you. He's one of my sergeants when I was in the Marine Corps and deployed with him. So he knew shithead 19-year-old Austin. And he's still around, so it's a good thing. I've come a long ways. Yeah, bro, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I literally, in trucks together, deployed together, like that. So anyways, boom, moved to the Marine Corps, had a blast, did my thing, moved out. I got out, boom, what do we do? What are you gonna do? For anybody that's a veteran out there, you guys understand, you rotate out of the military, you go from doing those kind of things, and a lot of people get a mentality or they get an attitude. Some of you guys can associate this to sports or what you did before. And it's like, I'll never be as good as I once was. You got guys that are 25, 26, they're in charge of platoons, they're in charge of men, they're in charge of millions of dollars of equipment, they're in charge of logistics, they're in charge of a lot of things at a very young age. And that's what the Marine Corps does really good. That's what they force people to do. And so what happens is you get out and they're like, and then you have to hand some asshole behind the counter your resume and say, hey, you know, I get a job here and they're for fucking $30,000 a year. And they're like, well, what'd you do? And it's very humbling, and people struggle with it when they get out of the military on what to do. I've seen it a lot. Other people do really well. Not all vets struggle with that, but it's a tough time. And so what I did is I got out and I started working construction again. I worked for my dad, right? I just went right back to working for him, and I was just doing the same stuff. I just got better at it. I just ran more skid steers, dug more holes with equipment, you know, a little bit more high-level stuff. But I was very disgruntled at that point in my life. And I had met Alicia at this point in my life. And I was going back down a rabbit hole from a lot of my maybe not so good habits that I carried through the Marine Corps, of drinking pretty heavily, pushing through. I was still working out, but I was pretty heavily drinking still. And yeah, I did. There was a short stint where a buddy of mine that was a welder said, let's go fucking ride bulls in Kansas, Rose Hill, Kansas. And I lived in Oklahoma City. And I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. I fucking get on that, sign up. And he's like, oh man, I can't go that weekend, I'm broke. Because he bounces out. That's the difference, you guys. Some people do, some people don't. I'll fucking show up on my own. I'm like, oh. So I go to Rose Hill, Kansas. You can look it up. It's called Sankey's Rodeo School. And they literally teach rodeo clowns. They teach you how to buck bulls, and they teach you how to buck broncs. And so I was like, all right. I was just trying to get a hit of dopamine again. Like being and coming back, I felt really bored. And with that boredom and with that downtime, I was doing the wrong things, right? I mean, driving a lot. I was just in a place when I met her that anything could have happened. You know, easily gone back to the other way. Boom, I get arrested, drinking and driving. Boom, all these things. I'm very fortunate that it didn't happen. And I only tell this kind of story and this kind of stuff because, you know, if you guys are going through this or you have gone through this, then you understand, or you need to pony up and figure it out. So anyway, so I go to that and I meet her. You and I are kind of very similar position in life at that time. And both, I would say we were lost. We knew we wanted more, but we never had that conversation. You know, this is going to be something I talk about like this huge, is like who you marry, who you lay your head with, who you're partnered with can impact your life so much. And I'm very lucky that I didn't have like this wreck, but it still worked out. You know, a lot of people get into relationships, they don't really have a prerequisite. They don't have like is this the right person for me to really want to push my development? Because that was the last thing I was thinking about, dude. Literally the last thing I was thinking about was becoming a multimillionaire. Or push it to the envelope of success, or even what my fucking version was success. My version of success was getting off on Friday and drinking early and fucking working on my motorcycle or working on my car and then going to the car show. Like literally my version of success at that point in my life, before I had kids and before you and I got married. I mean, was it? Oh, what lift kit am I gonna get on Craigslist that I can put on this new truck and change this bumper? That was my version of success, like straight up. I'm gonna murder out these wheels, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And so, Pete, you know, fun. I'm not gonna dive too deep into that story, but we meet, we end up getting married, boom. We have kids for how long?
3 years.
So we waited, we had fun, yeah. The best decisions that I made, and this kind of contradicts what I said a minute ago, but one of the best decisions that I made when I got out of the Marine Corps, I think I bought my house in maybe 2010, 2000, yeah, ish. I bought a house at a pretty young age, you know. My dad co-signed on it, but I was the one paying the bills. It was my loan. It was my debt. It was my responsibility. I'm fortunate that I was able to have somebody co-sign on it for me. But I bought a house, and I had saved some of my money since I had zero expenses when I was in Iraq. So I had this money in my account, like $30-something thousand accumulated from cars that I sold or things that I had traded, and then the money that I had put in my account from deployment. And so I used that money to purchase my first house, which was like $130,000, $140,000. And that was a nice house. It was a super dope house. It ended up being a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. In Oklahoma at the time, you could get that at that price. Yeah, gated neighborhoods, surprisingly. Yeah, and Edmond, it was nice. Like, that house is now probably, this is the real estate education right now. The price of that house in Oklahoma is probably like $290. Yeah, but you could tell it didn't go up in value that much compared to here. But so yeah, I bought a house, boom, met her. She moves in. We move pretty quick. We make decisions. It's kind of how we are. I'll say that that's something that I'm talking out loud about, and that's probably been a pinnacle thing in our lives that has given us, you want to move to San Diego? Shit, okay, let's figure it out. Oh, put the house up for sale. Boom, it's gone. Okay, we get a pod. Okay, we move. Because if you look at your life on a timeline, if it takes you this long to make a decision, it takes me this long to make a decision, and I make a mistake, I can make 6 more mistakes before you even make a fucking decision. And I'm just okay with that. I have a Kool-Aid man theory because I just like to freaking blast through the wall and figure it out. I have faith in myself that like, fuck it, if I figured it out. Now, I'm not saying like blow your money, all on red, right? But I am saying like you take action and you have to act like you may not be around. That's one thing I learned from the Marine Corps was like, I had a really good perception of how short life could be at a young age because of being in the Marines and being deployed. And when you sign your own will or you go overseas and you think, yeah, man, just is what it is. I didn't have kids and I have wives like, fuck, if I die, let's go. With my mom, I'd be like, dude, I'm gonna get like lieutenant legs if I get my legs blown off. My mom's like, oh, fucking dude, talk about that. She's like, cry. I was like, nah, it'll be funny. So like, twisted sense of humor. And so I got good perception of that. And I think that's what's also sparked me and pushed me is like, dude, One of my mentors that I had met at the gym, which is where this next push-off comes from, about the same time, boom, we get married. I'm working out with the boys back at the gym again. 2 of them are entrepreneurs. 2 of them those 2 dudes got GEDs, or if they even got them, they didn't graduate high school. They both at the time made great money. One owns a landscaping business, still basically my brother, a great friend of mine. And then the other one owned a real estate company. I didn't know anything about real estate, but I was like, that sounds fucking cool. Like, you make a lot of money. You drive a Hummer H2 to the gym. That's dope, You do. And it was crazy because I was working out with those guys, and they lived this lifestyle. They were able to go on a vacation. They were able to pay for their families' dinners. Like when they went to a group, I was like, that's wild. I want that. They're both jacked. So I started my relationship with them back in the day by asking them like, hey, how do I get bigger? How do I get stronger? And then I was just very inquisitive. Something he and I talk about a lot at a young age, like I have questions. If I want something, if you do something and I want to learn how to do it, I'll just ask a shitload of questions, then I'll figure it out. I'll start working through it. That's something that you guys could totally do. Definitely. I have to see it to believe it. Anyways, this guy, he said to me, he's like, I was bitching about like, dude, sucks. My dad had me going out of town a lot, hauling the skid steer because he knew he could trust me. So when you're the son of a self-employed father, you trust your son for the most part to get shit done. And he doesn't give a damn about how many hours you're working or how you get paid. And so, I have those experiences, but at the same time, I made salty, made me really like disgruntled, handing out bonuses or anything. And I'm working my ass off. And so when her and I met, I was driving in and out of town, and I was working from like 6 a.m. or wake up at 5, get to the office at 6, take the skid steer out to Podunk, Oklahoma, and I'd be back at like 7 or 8. And then I would rotate out, sometimes stay in a hotel, and a couple days I'd be back in town and just running around. And I was just getting pissed. I'm like, I had this feeling I'm meant for more. I want more out of my life. This cannot be the end. This, what it is, like, how do I get out of this? Around me at that time, or all the knowledge that I had received previously from schools and people were, you gotta go to college, you gotta go do this, ever gave me the pat on the butt until this situation and said, hey, dude, you could start your own business. You could do your own thing. You could be your own individual. And I was like, wow. So I go to the gym. The dude, the own state business was like, yeah, man, you should start your own business. I'll help you. And I was like, what? I'm interested. I'm super interested. And he pushed me off and said all he had. He said, what happens if all these things? This is what you guys are always thinking about. We're all thinking about it. Every single level, you're still going to think about it. The more shit you get, the more money you make, the more you're going to be fearful of losing it. Different. Like, it is what it is. It's just like, so you kind of decide whether you're going to go forward or whether you're going to go backwards. And every time you try to go backwards, you get what you're asking for. I mean, armor up for bad economies. You got to armor up for certain types, for certain times, and for catastrophic life events is what I like to call them. You know, help if your children get sick or something that you can't change. Somebody gets in a car accident. But at the same time, other than those things being the worst case scenario, you need to be completely and only focused on the 99% of the forward movement and the growth side. You know, save a business by cutting all expenses, and it'll just keep going down and down and down. Like, you need to drive revenue, and then you need to create margin. It's the same with your life. You know what I'm saying? You need to drive revenue to make more money, and you need to create the margin of the money that you're making. And so when he pushed me off, he's like, dude, you could go do this. So I just do it. I build a house, and my first house was a spec house, and I made 45 grand on that house, and that's when the next epiphany for my life came. One, he pushed me off in entrepreneurship. Boom, I start my business. I'm fortunate I was able to still work for my dad for like 15 an hour while I was checking on this project, while I was doing this ground up construction. So on the weekends, I'd check it, afternoons, evenings, whenever I could swing by there. I was checking it and coordinating subs, boom, boom. I'm fortunate that I had that opportunity with the time. I made 45 grand on that first spec house. Spec house is a house you build from ground up and you intend to sell. That's the only avenue of approach. That's kind of the world I grew up in. And I made $45,000, and I remember being like, oh my God, that's gonna be more. That's more. One check is more than I make this entire year. Like, accumulative. Like, this is crazy. It like shifted my mind. It really did. It shifted my mind on how like money made. What did I think at the time? How many more of these can I do? I need to do like 10. I didn't think about the bad side. I didn't think about what could happen. But I had continued and did a few more and started accumulating, and slowly ended up working for my dad. Started building homes. I got some custom houses off of that. So customs are when you're building for somebody individually. So let's say I built for them right here, and we designed the plans, we bring in the architect, kind of stuff I was talking about earlier, right? And I would go and these plans, do these customs. And what's good about custom homes when you're in this situation is that customs homes are actually like residual. Like, you make money now, right? Like, so when I charge an invoice, I make 10 to 15% on that invoice. And I was doing cost plus jobs. And so I was bringing home money so that I could eat today. And then when I would do a few specs, I was banking on making a lump sum of money to make more money in the future, right? Similar to what we're gonna talk about with flipping and long-term holds, et cetera. At the same point in time in our lives, this is when we started doing more and more. We got a little bit deeper into building. I ended up getting on the board of directors for Central Oklahoma Home Builders Association, one of the youngest members. I was pretty ingrained into that community. Growing up in construction, I knew a lot of the builders already. I had worked on their jobs. They'd seen me since I was 13. I knew most of the community anyway. And then we get married around this time. And quickly after we get married, we're like, well, we got married. We want to have kids. We had to have kids. Well, we had waited to have kids at 3 years. You're right. So we waited to have kids. We had kids. Boom. We had a hard time having kids. That was a stress. So we were pretty impatient. This goes into a good conversation I want to bring her in on, because I think it's important to understand the other side of the story besides mine. And so, boom, we start trying to have kids. I'm running the building company. I'm just working my ass off, figuring it out, loving it, because I'm just like, this is crazy. At the beginning of entrepreneurship, I'm super excited. I'm still in the honeymoon phase of entrepreneurship. I'd made some money. I'd seen how some things could go bad. I'm starting to figure it out. All I'm thinking is, I need to be on another magazine. I need more business cards. I'm gonna need a hat that says my logo on it. Fucking, this is how you run a business. And so she is still working. You ended up working for Chesapeake at this time of our life. And Chesapeake, if you guys don't know, it's an oil and gas company. It's a pretty big, it used to be a pretty big oil and gas company in Oklahoma City. And fortunately with Chesapeake and a lot of these oil and gas companies, when they're doing well, the insurance was great, right? I needed the fucking insurance. I didn't have any insurance for me. So we had health insurance, so we were struggling to have Harper, which was our first, and we ended up doing IUI, is that correct? So we did IUI, and then they were like, you can't have kids on your own. We're like, okay, what do? We tried again, and boom, we have Presley. They're 13 months apart. So pretty quickly we had another kid. But I say all that stuff, that personal information, because the two things. One, she was still working. Two, we were trying to get pregnant. You got pregnant. And then three, during that period of time where she's carrying insurance, she's basically, she has a stable-ish job so that I can go be this guy that starts this company, and it's not always getting a check all the time, or it's not necessarily enough to really sustain where we want to be or what we're doing. We still want to have kids. We didn't think anything about it. We weren't going to wait for the perfect time. We just did it. Boom. But you get laid off. She gets laid off. Do you want to talk a little bit about any of that? No. She says no. So she gets laid off from her job, and I'm like, shit. Like, that's our income is going to freaking be, we're going to struggle, because now that was the only, residual. Yeah.
They paid for her treatment.
But she's all like shirts and shit. Oh, I'm just fat.
Orientation and then actually stepping to the office to work, I'm showing. And I just remember like I was actually had security on me because they can't fire me because I'm pregnant, right? But I ended up staying with them for a while. I got to work virtually.
It's huge.
I go in the office like once a week, but I'm still at that point. We're still not starving, but like I make things work and like to do daycare.
No, hell no.
Fortunate enough to have like that program and grandparents.
Yeah.
To work through the whole building side.
Yeah. She's working for the company that allows her to work virtual. Yeah, they worked virtual. Then you're right, you got Mother's Day Out, which if you guys don't know Mother's Day Out, it comes in clutch. Essentially like a church program where you can bring your kids in like community. And it's like price like a month or something for a kid compared to daycare, which is like $1,500. It's freaking crazy. And so we couldn't afford the daycare. And so when we had to make a pivot a little bit. But I say all that because like happen in life, like go through all of these little struggles, like through these things in life, these stuff you can't control, losing jobs, to have kids, or even knock on wood, I hope never has it, but like can't control if somebody gets injured or has a sickness. Or you need to continue to persevere, and who you are is very important throughout that process. That's what's so important about this little speech this morning, is like by all means did we these horrible stories where we lost everything and we came back, but there's definitely this time in our life that we're getting ready to talk about too where we felt like we were. And one thing that's huge, and when I had this epiphany through this hard time I'm about to talk about, is your perception of it. And so I had this epiphany when I was early in the morning. I'd just get on the treadmill, I'd walk, I'd listen to these books, I'd try to listen to all this positive stuff. I was like, I gotta learn something new. And I gotta grow this business, I gotta provide for this family. You fucking took it on, like, what are you doing? And I remember being like, dude, I was stressed out. And I remember being like, the perception, what if I was one of the CEOs or I was of a $100 million company? What if I was the CEO of Sears or Enron when it went down, or one of these massive corporations, or Chesapeake when it went bankrupt? Like, if I had $1 million salary and I had all these assets and stuff and I was about to take a massive backstep because of me losing my job. Like, all of these things are exactly what they are. And so there's no difference than in feeling like when you're young, a $10,000 problem that stresses you out that you can't afford, to when you get to making a little bit more money, a $100 million problem. That feeling that you feel is the same. Nobody in this room is special. And so what you have to do, I think you're all special, by the way, I take that back. What you have to do is you have to realize that if that's the case, you're a kid, right? Like, one of the littlest things somebody says to you could break you, could hurt your feelings, your mom, your friend, your buddy, or some punk at school, whatever. And so you feel like your world's falling down. Or when you get a little older and you're dating that chick and she breaks up with you, or so you get cheated on. Oh my God, it's the worst. I'm about to live all of that with my daughters. So the perception of that is so big, right? A $10,000 problem is massive. I'm not gonna pay freaking so many months of bills at the time. It's huge. And then what happens is you change. You have to go through that. You have to figure that out. You have to continue to go. Because it's not going to be any different. It's the same feeling if it were a $100,000 problem or if it were a $10 million problem. It's the same emotional feeling. And so I realized, okay, it's the same feeling. Then the only thing I can control is how I feel and try to figure out that, how I can feel through this process. What can I learn? How can I achieve more and go forward no matter what happens? And so I started self-educating. That's when my self-development journey really started. And so I had started building, boom, I had this company, blah, blah. I was learning from people around me, basically my community, the board of directors. But my life where I was like, I need to learn more. Like, this is enough. This is like the people I really want to be like, I need to learn more. And so I started self-developing. The first event I think I ever went to was here in San Diego, which is super cool. And it was the Jocko Willink Echelon Front event. And I had mad respect for him because I had listened to his audiobook on the treadmill. And I was like, dude, I fuck with that guy because he was a commander, high up in the military, and he talked like real. And I was like, dude, I got respect. So I could actually like listen to him. I didn't want to listen to some business guru that hadn't ever picked up a weight. I didn't want to listen to some dude that was super soft and, make $1 million. I was like, from like somebody to lead that many people and then turn around and create a business like that and still be a good father and still be a good leader to his community. And I was like, wow. So I sought admiration from that. And that book kind of around for me. And this is huge. That book changed my life. You change your life? Because what it made me realize is that extreme ownership by Jocko Willink. Because what it does is it turns things around. If you blame everything else, if I blame Ted for not finishing the sheetrock on the house, if I blame for this, if I blame everybody else, I'm not in control. And when you're not in control, you blame other people. But if you say, you know what? I am in control, and even though there's things I can't control, I'm still in control of the way I act. I'm still in the control of the things that I can do. You realize, like, boom, that I can try to control it. If I can't control it, then I need to let it go. I need to move on, right? You can't control how somebody treats you. You can't control if some asshole cuts you off, you know? Can't control where you go out at night. You can't control how you talk to your kids. You can't control your attitude. You can't control when you wake up. You can't control what you eat. You can't control how you spend your money. You can do all these other things. And if you start to look inward, you'll start to find solutions. And when you start to find solutions, you get addicted to the solutions. You get addicted to finding more. And that goes on the self-development route. That's literally where I got hooked on it. It's like blaming, oh, this person does that, this victim mentality and this victim mindset. You'll never anywhere. You may get a little bit, but you're not going to get that far. You're blaming everybody else. And I've seen in construction specifically, it's very, very common attitude to have because it's like, well, they didn't show up. You guys know you're in construction. A lot of y'all are in construction, you know. Pessimistic, negative, bitchy attitude that happens a lot of times in construction and a lot of times in certain industries. Well, they didn't do that. It's almost like how you communicate. Like, well, he ain't paid his bill, this and that. It's like, it becomes a habit. It becomes like you talk to other people. You know, because I can't believe they do that. And so when I read that book and I went through that first event, it really changed my life. It changed my perception. And so I was like, oh, fuck it. If I'm the problem, then I'm also the solution. Let's figure it out. And so one thing I want you guys to write this down: become the solution or have the solution. As a builder, I had to learn that, and I got better at that because there's a lot of problems that come up when you have thousands of people that come into a home, and the homeowner wants an outcome, or you want an outcome. But you can't control or mitigate a lot of the shitheads that come through in and out of the house, or the things that happen, or that don't happen when you want them to happen. And so you have to start being solution-oriented, right? Like, oh, I can't control the weather. If I'm trying to pour foundation tomorrow and I can't control the weather, I'm gonna get all poopy pants about it, get all mad, because now the rebar's already in the foundation and just fuck the rebar up and the concrete guy wants to charge me more. Like, what am I gonna do? I gotta solve the problem. You gotta keep moving forward. That's gonna be the same thing that we're gonna talk about it again, but it's the same shit that you guys need to learn in real estate, which we'll talk more about this afternoon, like specifically. Then business, anything. You gotta be able to solve the problem. Too many times I see people, I drew this, let me see which way I did it. Yeah, you're gonna get see some artwork. This is my little rendering. So this is a level up diagram I just made the other day. In my head, I had this vision, I had this like thought of like, how can I articulate this out loud and show somebody? And so this is Weak Will, and we got Strong Sam over here. You guys like that? So Weak Will, what he does is he goes and he tries to level up, and he goes to the event, and he goes and does these things, and he fucking hits a glass barrier. He hits a problem. Oh, Austin, the banker told me no. Oh, they won't give me a business loan. Oh, I was closed. All this fucking bullshit that I don't tell myself anymore, and the people that persevere and push through don't even think about. Okay, we'll just go on. We just keep solving these problems. So Weak Will just stays in this cycle. What about the economy? What about all this stuff? Like, what about? Are you changing it? No. You're not fucking changing it. So change you. Figure it out. Pivot. Do different business if you have to. I don't give a shit. That is literally my mindset. I do not care. I'll figure it out. Whatever it is. Because I know something. I'll pivot off real quick. You guys bear with me on my rants. I know that my outcome is not attached to being, like, for people, their whole personality around being a Marine. Or people build their whole personality about being an oil and gas guy. Or their whole personality about this one thing. My outcome isn't attached to that. My outcome is attached to the life that I want. And so I know that, like, I gotta figure out the solution, or I gotta pivot, or I gotta do something else, okay? This here, Strong Sam, gets rejected too. Boom, I'm rejected right here. Oh, he back up, boom, breaks the glass ceiling. You think this level was easy too? No, next level just as fucking hard. No matter what it is, and no matter where you're at, this is a good diagram, even though it's probably gonna be a good painting one day. So, yeah, boom, hit the next level. The next level is not any easier, but you grew by going through the first level. You changed. You did something there, whether you believe it or not, that you grew through that struggle. And like I said, the struggle is a matter of perception. A struggle for some could be moving from India and becoming the first freaking citizen of the United States to become a doctor, bro, like, and becoming a millionaire that owns hotels or something. That's a struggle from somebody else. So the struggle for you may be different. You know, maybe not being so fearful of taking a leap and investing in yourself or growing and developing that you have to ask yourself, why am I so fearful of taking this risk? Boom. You change here, and see, what I did intentionally is that I made the downside of the diagram go down lower, less each one we go, because you become more acclimated to breaking through those glass ceilings. And it's just the truth. Like, you go through those things, and but you become better. Victim mindset. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I went off on a tangent because it's really huge and it's really important. I could give you guys all the information in the world. I could show you my freaking books. I could show you my P&Ls. I could show you how I had this one deal. I could show you how I fucked up and didn't make money on this one. I could show you literally every single thing. But if you guys aren't willing to push through your own problems, then you'll never make it. I hate to say it, but it's how it is. And you can look to your left and you can look to your right. And at the end of the day, there won't be everybody here if we were to persevere and look for our goals and obtain those, because some people aren't willing to really push as hard as they want to talk like they do. They just aren't. But for me, I realized, what else is there? Because when I see that diagram, I'm like, well, what am I going to spend my time on? What else am I going to spend my energy on? When you start to become the person that needs to solve these problems, you start creating solutions. You're like, oh, well, I can do this. And then you get more confidence, and I can do this. And then, whatever target is now, your dream or what you want to do, it may be like here. But once you get to that point, once you achieve it, because all you're thinking about is that target, that goal. All you're thinking about is achieving that. And when all you think about is achieving that, you might be surprised, but you will achieve it. I don't know what time, I don't know when, but you will. You're literally only thinking about that. Laser focus. I don't give a shit what pops up in my way. Flat tires, stolen trucks, stolen AC units, stolen any wires, broken in house, wife leave me. I don't care. I still have a mission to accomplish in my life, in my goal of what I want. It is more of a liability, in my opinion. It's easy for us to say at this point, but it was harder for us at that point when we took it. Whatever risk that is for you. And so when you're going through this, you have to think, what lesson am I being taught, and who am I becoming through this process? Whatever it is. Even if it's a small one of getting your first deal, starting your first business, maybe not asking everybody to be an entrepreneur, maybe to make more money, that's there. Like everybody's like, I'll make more money. I'm like, well, have to talk to your boss, or how well do you perform at your own job? Like straight up, I want to make money now, like somebody that's out. And I'm speaking to people on different levels and different lives and different realms. But if the best for you to do to make more money is to spend less of the money that you have, ask your boss for a raise, and maybe work a little bit on the weekend. Like it's not. But the reality is most people really aren't even willing to do that shit. They just aren't. I was. People in this room that are too. Big time. It's proven. You're willing to do whatever it takes, and so am I. But when you get to these goals, you achieve it. If all you think about and all you're shooting for, regardless of what life throws at you, is this target of success that you've clarified, then you will reach it in a timeline. You will reach it. But you have to be very careful not to get distracted upon all of that growth. You have to be very careful. And people will pull you. The more and more you go after your stuff, the more distractions and more opportunities you'll see that become distractions will happen. You guys have probably heard some high-level people talk about like not doing when you get to a point. When you see opportunity everywhere, when you learn how to make money, when you first start your own business, there's a lot of business owners in this room, you're like, oh, that's how that works? I can start an LLC like that. I can do this deal. Then you're like, bam, I'll do this. And that's kind of where I'll go back to my story. That's what I did. And I went down that road. I was like, oh, fuck, I can make this. I can make that. I can start this business. That's what we did. We started a lot of multiple little companies that we've started that we kind of pushed on a little bit. A buddy of mine got laid off from Chesapeake about the same time she did. And we started an oil and gas company because he knew all the knowledge. And I was like, shit, I'll run the business side of it. You go out and do the thing. And we were doing title. It was a title company. And so we did like $200,000 or $300,000, and it really just a lot of time and energy. And so I had to learn that lesson of like, and he really wasn't willing to push as hard as I was to get it done. And so I've learned a lot about partnerships at that point. I've had more partners than that. I've learned a lot about, some things as an opportunity that aren't. But, like money now, that's your job. And then the next thing is when you start to see opportunities in the thing that you guys already have. If you guys are already business owners or doing your own thing, the best thing you could do is start refining that and drive margin and make more money there. That's what's super important, is to make more money in the company that you already have, refine it, create systems and processes so that you guys can set yourself up for success and really scale that. But the cool thing about that is while you do that, real estate in general isn't necessarily a shiny object syndrome or an opportunity that's distracting. It's a great opportunity in general, and you should always parlay with that. And so I never made, you guys may hear the theory like burn the no in certain circumstances, but the reality of it in certain circumstances is it doesn't necessarily work that way. I've always parlayed into the next thing, right? I still worked for my dad when I started building. I still was building when I started investing, and at the same time going. And so it's always been a lap moving over to the next thing to grow. But I also had the hustle in myself and the belief in myself that I would be willing to put in the work at whatever it was. Whatever, I don't care. Like some people like waking up or staying up late or whatever it is, working on the weekend. Like I never thought that way, even early on. I'm like, having that, if any of you guys have that perspective, I highly recommend that you shift it or get the fuck out of here, because the reality is you won't make it. Because you're betting on you. There's no other place to spend your time and money. On you. Literally. Like, I missed the game. Bro, like, what are you talking about? You have a life. You're playing the game or you're losing it. And you've got to bet on you in that. And you've got to be willing to go through these things and give up certain things. And I'm not saying you have to have no hobbies and all you do is work. By all means, that's not what I'm saying. I have plenty of hobbies and I have lots of fun. But I'm saying, like, it never felt hard to me. And I see people stop. Now that I've started educating people and coaching, I see people stop way earlier than I ever fathomed at even trying or reaching for whatever goal that they're trying to reach. And sometimes their goal is so small that maybe that's the problem. Maybe the goal's too small. Maybe you don't believe that you can attain whatever you're looking for. But let's go back to painting a clear vision and go to passion real quick. I did write down a quote right here about passion, because I get a lot of times people like, from young, it drives me crazy a little bit. What's your passion? What got you there? My passion, to create the life of my design. Like I was making money or had an opportunity in another business. My building company would have given me the lifestyle and what I wanted. Timeline wise, it was making me money, but it wasn't giving me my time back. It was soul sucking. So I knew I had to learn more at that point. But like the passion, I was passionate about building. We're gonna talk about real estate, and I'm not passionate about real estate. Did I have fun designing stuff? Of course. But what I've always been passionate, I'm not even passionate about the cars out front. Are they fun? Are they cool? Yeah. But the older I've gotten, the more things I'm passionate about is like growth and of development and doing more, because I've realized, like, going back to the picket fence and the house paid off and all this retirement bullshit, like that, if that's where it's tied to, then you really don't know what you're looking for, in my opinion. You don't really know like what the scheme of things is of what you want. And so like you'll see, I'm about weightlifting. I don't necessarily think that you need to become a coach in fitness or train people. I think if you want a certain lifestyle, you need to ask if that career path or that entrepreneurial journey is going to give you the lifestyle that you want. That's the key nugget, guys. Why did I get into real estate investing? Because I realized it was going to give me the lifestyle that I wanted. It wasn't like, ooh, you know what's from these $1 million homes to these shit boxes. That's going to be sick when we remodel these and the tenant busts some windows. Fuck no. It wasn't exciting, but what I did understand was like, it was emotional. Very building these homes. What we talked about, all the feelers are in there. She wants to know that fucking wall's a little bit off. Why is the window not centered? You know, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about if you've ever done any construction. It's very passionate, it's very emotional. And so I was like, I want to learn something that's not attached to the emotions of the situation. Like, I want to have the lifestyle. I mean, because I'm catching emails. By all means, we skipped over this a little bit, but I'm catching emails. I was doing houses for CPAs. I got to where I was doing houses for some CFOs and oil and gas companies. I was doing full-blown houses for some attorneys. Biggest mistake I ever made. And dude, my father's an engineer, so I never did anything right my entire childhood when it came to building. John knows, my dad, so nobody can do anything right. And so while I'm going through that, I'm like, dude, this is a nightmare. I would be at Easter and I would catch the text while I was building these homes. And I was doing well financially, right? I catch these texts, like the passive texts. Did you guys ever own businesses or you've ever got them in general? It's very annoying. And it just puts you in this funk. It just pisses you off. You're with your family trying to have a great Christmas or a great Easter. Hey, took the family by the house. It's looking so great. I was just wondering, like, did they do on purpose or who was it and who do you think we should invoice? I'm like, why are you bothering me with this? Who did that? You know? Like, it's been a little longer and the painter's not really finished and it looks like the trim guy's not done, so the painter's never gonna have to come back. Who's paying for their comeback charges? For another one of those comeback charges, we're gonna have to talk to an attorney. And she's like, whoa, just come up with another good passive aggressive email to come back at with. Like, fucking cycle, like what I'm having to do in order to do this business in my mind. And it's just very stressful. You guys understand, anybody in construction understands. Jacob's nodding, and you're like, dude, this is not what I wanna do. So I'm like, okay, what makes money? And I just want to focus on making money. What doesn't tie to someone's emotions for the most part? Well, real estate investing. Like, somebody tagged me, and they were like, hey man, I'm thinking about, getting circles, thinking about getting on the program. And he's like, but you tattooed, it's gonna affect my business being tattooed. And he's like, how does that affect you, bro? And I was like, Real estate investing, nobody gives a shit. Like, do you think they care when I freaking buy the house cash? Do you think they care when the tenant, they don't even know what I look like, bro. They don't even know me. And so I kind of learned, I hit that epiphany, was another book while I was on this journey. And the reason I started reading this book is I'll go into 2018. In 2018, was the big baller builder. And I built these two, I was like, fucking Grant Cardone told me to 10X. I'm gonna 10X. And I had like a $600,000, I'm freaking, had 2 kids. Alicia just was working still, I think, at this time. And I'm like, I'm gonna build these 2 spec houses. Spec sale, like I said. I'm gonna put one in the Street of Dreams, which is like an awesome, where everybody can come see the houses, whole event, block party. And I'm gonna build another one, I'm gonna put it in the Parade of Homes. So I'm gonna freaking market, and I'm gonna get like so much of these houses, and I'm gonna get so many leads. It's gonna be insane. I'm gonna be so rich. And all I knew was building them, and it's gonna be sick. And that's my thought process. I was pretty optimistic, blindly optimistic, but optimistic. No, I needed to learn the lessons. And those houses sat. I did the show, I did the magazine, I did the parade. In 2018 in Oklahoma City, the market wasn't moving near as fast as I needed it to. And I sat on those bad boys. And these are like, I think I sold them for a little under $1 million a piece. And I was parlaying or hoping on making about 200,000 a piece, which would have been super sick that year. I'd be like, dude, so sick. I would have done it again and again and again. I needed to learn a lesson. And that's really what jump-started me into reading the next book, which you guys can write down if you haven't already read it, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you've read it, a lot of people nodding their heads, you probably know. Now, I know zero like actual tactical information, but I was like, I changed my whole perception. And I realized like I didn't even think what I was doing was a risk. Like I knew it, but I was like, that's all I know. And if you look at most builders or most people in their industry, they never understand like how wealth is. I didn't understand how to get my time back. I didn't understand owning a business versus being in the business. I didn't understand any of that, right? I was just like, I could build this cool house. I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna make a ton of money. And that didn't happen. Yeah, you're right. It's buying homes. This is before I reached out to anybody to get education. My buddy that was a real estate investor, the one that pushed me off being a builder, I was like, I'll buy some rentals. That sounds sick. And he's like, yeah, I got a few. I would tune them up. And then it was like, kind of like a deal for me to do because I was coordinating so many crews on my new construction side that I was like, this is another thing. I'll swing by downtown every once in a while. And so I did. I popped 2, 3, 4, 5 of them out, remodeled them a bit pretty quickly, put tenants in there, and then we had vacancies. And then we would have 1 or 2. And then what I did as a builder, and a little bit of my ego, which I needed to learn to control, was, and because of the numbers that were passing through the other company, I didn't even think about it. But I neglected that and made a mistake, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I looked at those things as like a pain in the ass. And that's a lot of times what you guys hear too about rental properties. Nothing but a pain in the ass. This and that. This all means I have a lot. And they are a pain in the ass, but so is not selling 2 $1 million homes. So I'm still on that same journey. Boom. These things are like $5,000 a month. Fortunately, I had a partner with the one in the Street of Dreams because I just wanted to split the risk. And we ended up selling that one in a fire sale, basically. Not a real fire, but like selling it.
We're still
Oh.
the person that we built, and I needed him to work and be fully focused. I'm still working, but it was important, but not as important. You know, we had 2 kids under 2.
Yeah.
So and when I moved into the side of the house,
It's a dark moment. I mean, I didn't think of it, but you just did it.
just keep them going, right? That was
Something that I look back upon after we got out of it, I didn't realize how stressed out Alicia really was with it. She never really said anything. She just kind of bared through it. To the babies, literally put yourself and Presley on the other side of the house because I didn't wake up with the second kid at all because I needed to get up at 3 freaking early in the morning. I couldn't even sleep barely anyway. And I'm trying to pay these bills. That's how I lost all my... Yeah. And I you guys understand that, you know, but it is perception reality, right? Like 10,000 could be somebody and 100,000 or, you know, you have situations. It's not always glorious, you know?
because you
It was an interesting journey. Going back to, good point.
would hide your tattoos before you would go meet clients. Like it was very.
Yeah, I didn't have my hands under my neck, and I felt like I needed to be a different person in Oklahoma. I mean, I made these things in my head too. Like I never really, but I made these things in my head. I needed to wear long sleeves because I'm going to meet these people. You know, Joe and want to build another house. They're attorneys or doctors, whatever I've said. You know, they saw I needed to like be the part. And a lot of people wearing cowboy boots and like look more conservative. You know, you guys, some of you. And so I was like, I looked like I belonged out here with these boys. And it's not so accepted, especially, you know, roughly 15 to go or whatever that is. And you're right. And so I felt like I'm willing takes in order to achieve the target, achieve the goal. But at that point, what I started losing and what started stressing me out the most and was the worst part about it, like not to do finances, I was almost feel like I was living two different lives unintentionally. You know, I was being covered up my tattoos, and I wasn't like acting different. I was the same person, but my life, my style, and be me and be free. And I felt like I couldn't do that. I felt like I had to sell those jobs and be this person that competed with the other builders in the neighborhood and looked like the other builders and stuff like that. And so you're right. And like she said, we have two big payments of these homes. We have our home that's ticking away on a nice little payment. We had plenty of toys that we had accumulated at the time that were, fortunately, we had some of those cash just because I'm a barterer and trader for cars before I ever really got into building. And it was just, and then we had the two girls. And it just is what it is. You're gonna go through it. It is what it is. And I needed to learn those lessons. I look back and I'm very glad that I learned those lessons. And I was stretching credit cards. And what's crazy, and I know some people I tell this story to, they don't even believe it, but what's crazy, at that point in our life, what we did, we invested the $52,000 on two company credit cards. We didn't have $52,000. We put it on two credit cards for a 2-year real estate education program because I knew I felt so stuck. It felt like I was back in the skid steer. I felt so stuck. I don't know something, because I know myself. I will fucking show up. I will outwork anybody. I'll fucking be there. I had that mindset, that mentality. So it ain't the work ethic. It's like the work ethic doing the wrong thing. And something that I talked about on your Zoom call the other day is fucking, you can row a really small boat really hard. You can fucking be the best shoveler on the line. You can be the best welder in the world. And unless you have a TV show, but other than that, you're not gonna make the kind of lifestyle that you wanna live. And so you can row really hard in this little boat. And I was like, I gotta learn how to make wealth, how to get my time back, how to make, because I'd seen these guys. I had the perception of people that were even further than me as a builder, and they're like, they have two superintendents, they have all these things, and I would get to be around them in the board of directors meetings, and I would hear them complaining about the same problems. They literally took the problems I'm having now, and they just shifted them to, hey, my whole development's sitting, the houses aren't moving, and I'm like, fuck. That's crazy stressful. I thought this was stressful. I don't want more of this. I don't want more people bitching at me on Easter. So I was like, fucking lay down the credit card. And we were two credit cards. How do we figure this out? We sold, I had a 68 Chevelle that I had cash and I had dirty, I was still modding it out. I had stopped and I sold that. I sold a few other little toys that I had rolled parts all the way from high school, got out of the Marines, rolled some cars and stuff. And so I just paid cash for that stuff. But so we sold that, but that wasn't enough to pay off the cards. We still had to trickle them out over a period of time. But my point of saying any of that is that I just really realized that I needed to know, I needed to understand more. And so we both did it, did it together, and that's another growth point. When we did it and we made that decision together, when we were at the lowest of our little boo pants fucking journey, was like, we did it together, we committed to it. And we're like, you would think that's the craziest thing. No, when you're backed into the corner, you gotta come out swinging. You can't stay in the corner and just cover your head. That's literally how it is. This is the same concept with business. You're not gonna go get yourself out of these problems by curling up in a ball or firing everybody. You're gonna get out of these problems by making more money. You're gonna get out of these problems by doing more of things that move the needle. And so I was like, I gotta learn something. And so I did. I signed up for that program. It was a 2-year program. And we would go out, we'd fly out once a quarter, we'd sit in classrooms just like this, and we would educate ourselves. One time we went to a classroom that talked about mobile home parks and how to make money in mobile homes, which is a pretty easy threshold to get into. Not even the parks, you can get the mobile homes and you can do stuff with them. There's a lot of stuff, we'll dive into it later. And then I learned about creative finance, I learned about flipping homes, I learned about buy and holds, I learned about commercial, and it was great. But the problem that I had was like I would go learn it and then I would come back home and try to implement it. And that process really started to drag because I was still trying to pay the bills, still running a company, still raising kids. And so we really kept building for a while, and up until about 2020, when the COVID hit, building out even more hard and hard enough that I just wanted to be done. And what's crazy is it wasn't hard enough financially. It was hard enough, like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was because what's crazy is a lot of people have a fucking ton of money in 2020. People were coming out of the woodwork, the funds were crazy, and that's why 21 and 22 were so wild. And so people would literally go and they'd be like, I want to build a home. And they're like, can you give me an estimate? We have this lot over here. It was the most amount of clients that I'd ever had. This is little right after those two houses. And going back to those two houses, I sold one. Me and my partner both stroked a freaking $45,000 check to sell the fucking thing, and the realtor walked off with 50 grand. I learned the real lesson on that one. And that was like the last bit of my cash. And fortunately, within a couple months, guess what house sold next? My personal. And I made about 100 grand on my personal. And I was like, thank God we're gonna replenish some of the coffers to keep the business running and keep going. Because you think 100 grand is a lot, but it ain't fucking a lot when you're burning it. And so I was like, sweet. So we move into the spec, the other one. We get bumped out of that one, moved into the other one. We only lived there for 9 to 10 months. Then we got that sold. I kept it on the market. I'm like, just keep selling it. Just get out of here. Let's be done. We ended up selling it. We moved into a rental. This is all simultaneous to our education. So we're learning and we're going through this. We're like, oh shit. So we're starting to peel things off to where we can get nimble again, where we can get light again. We're getting rid of some debt. We're coming out of the hole. We're fighting out of the trenches. And so we do. And we move into this rental. And it was a massive downgrade from like a cosmetic standpoint, from like an ego standpoint, right? And I had like a 20-foot slider at the house that I was living in. And I moved into a home, which is great. I have nothing to complain about. I think it was a 4-bedroom, 2,400 square foot, gated neighborhood. Still nice. But what's crazy for y'all that aren't from Oklahoma, I got that house. You were an agent at the time. She was already starting to do a little bit of real estate stuff. And she calls up a house for sale. And she goes, hey, can we rent it instead of buy it? And he's like, well, I'm out of town already. I can't move the house anyway. And she's like, cool. So we gave him $1,800 a month. Dude, we're renting this house for $1,800 a month, 2,500 square foot. Get pools across the street, neighborhood pool. We were like, damn, it was exactly what we needed. It was really what we needed. I look back now, and I needed that to breathe, because otherwise I couldn't see the end of it, right? The tunnel was pretty dark, and I was like, I'm gonna just keep fighting. And so we moved into that. That was great, but with our real estate education, it was pretty cool. How long did we live there? Because within about 6 months, we started building another home. We sold the spec that we were in, and we made another $100,000 on it. So we did recoup some of our losses from that year. But if you look at that year, 2018 to 2019 as a trajectory, and you were to take the numbers and line them out, which is super important when you guys start talking about money, and you'd realize, oh, cool, we maybe made 50 to 100 grand in actual net income, because you make a big win, you make a big loss, and then at the end of the day, you really look at it on the P&L, and you're like, that wasn't such a great business model. It was wins and losses. Those peaks and valleys are horrible. And so, boom, we're getting educated. I would say we fast forward a little bit. We stayed in that house. We bought another lot. We were going to build on it. We were taking our sweet time before building anything again. So we stayed in that house, I want to say about 2 years before we finalized and built our new home, which was the last home that we lived in before we moved here. And we ended up, the guy was like, I want y'all out. I want to sell the home. And then Alicia was like, would you sell it to us? And we had learned quite a bit about real estate investing. See, this is where I tell you guys, and I tell everybody on social media, dude, if you just learn one piece of information, if you guys just take one piece of information away from today and you implement it, or it comes up in one of your business decisions when we talk tactical, or even in real estate, you use it, it can impact your entire lives. And so we were like, shoot, we learned about this real estate investing stuff. Let's try it. Let's offer him cash. We didn't have the cash, but we knew we'll cash. And so we did. We offered him, we were like, we're gonna buy this thing cash. I think we ended up getting a loan from somebody personal. We were like, hey, we'll pay you 10% on your money. We're gonna buy this cash. We knew we were connected with people with some cash. And boom, they closed it for us cash. What we did is we were about to finish our home because we needed 6 more months before we moved into our house that we had just built. And he was like, I want to sell it. And I was like, well, what the fuck are we gonna do for 6 months? So we just bought it cash with somebody else's money. This is called private money. So OPM, other people's money. It's very important when you get into real estate investing, you start scaling your business. And so boom, we bought it cash. Paid the investor 10%. We sold it within 6 months and made a $90,000 profit. We bought it for $300 and sold it for $390 without doing anything to the property whatsoever. We lived in there. It paid for our lease basically for the last 2 years plus. And so we were like, holy shit, this education just pays for itself. That was probably one of the first things that we were like, wow, that's awesome.
Oh, that was easy.
That was easy. Instead of building a whole entire home, risking everything, working with these people. And so I was like, I got to do more of this. 2020 hits. We're knees deep in it. Everybody's trying to build more houses. We're doing high, almost 8 figures in custom homes now at this point. But we can't get lumber. We can't get supplies. I can't get freaking anything. 6-month wait. I'll go out back. Edwin, I want to build you and your wife this beautiful home. Let me go to my lumber yard and ask for a freaking an estimate. She's like, here's the estimate. It's good for 2 days. We don't know what lumber is going to do. And so you can't even estimate these things. The client wants this dream. You can't get the product. The chips don't work for the microwaves. You can't get that. And I was like, oh man, like this, it was already a stressful environment. And then it just got 10x. It just got way more stressful. I was like, this is my chance to fucking bounce. I don't want to do this anymore. I've got to figure out, we've already made some money. We have proof of concept. Let's keep going. So you started doing some off-market deals. Alicia had her license and you did a wholesale, right? A wholesale. You did a wholesale. So she got it under contract. No, we took it down with hard money, I think. Either way, we took down the property, we took title to it, and then we ended up selling the property for like 20 grand more within, how long? 2 months?
No, the first one was 2 weeks.
The one we sold to French? Oh, 2 weeks? Yeah, you're right. It was 2 weeks. So you made 20 grand in 2 weeks by flipping that house really quickly. And I was like, holy shit. And I was doing a lot of new construction, like I said, custom homes, but I had picked up a few remodels for people that I knew. I'd done some $400,000 or $500,000. I'm talking about remodels. That's just the add-ons to the home. So I was doing these, but I was doing some of those with a partner. And so I was looking at the numbers. I'm like, 12% at the end of the day, after my expenses, for a relationship with these people for the next 9 to 10 months, plus the warranty items the following year that I'm gonna have to warranty out of my own pocket pretty much. She made more in freaking 2 weeks than I'm gonna make on this entire project over 9 months, 10 months. And so the next gear clicked and I was like, we gotta do this. And it was scary. It's always scary when you take that next step, but you become better at it. And so we just stopped taking on homes. We stopped taking on customs. People would come to us. People still, sometimes my website may still be out there and people will still call me or text me from Oklahoma and be, hey, do you still build homes? I'm like, no, I don't. So I say all that. Do you guys have any questions about that journey? Anybody have any questions right now about any of that? Or maybe you want to share something that you've gone through? Because that leads us to what? We built our next home and then we stayed there for 2 years and sold that and moved here. That's fast forward, but that's pretty much our story. And I don't think I ever get to share that in a longer form with anybody, but it's important for you guys to understand and know that it wasn't a freaking yellow brick road. And it never is. And by all means, is it some horrible story and this travesty? And maybe I'm saying that out loud, but maybe some people would have sold the story, it was horrible, but I've just never had that negative pessimist attitude. I've always been optimistic on it. No matter what I was going through, I still was like, I can figure this out. I know somebody else has done this. I know somebody else has gone through this. And it reminds me of something that the guy told me, that first told me to start building. And I remember being like, man, what happens if I go bankrupt? And he told me, he's like, bro, this is rewinding. Didn't you just get back from Iraq less than a year ago or 2 years ago? And he's like, what's the worst case thing that'll happen? And so write this down. You need to ask yourself, what is the worst case? Really run it out in your head. Don't give it a bunch of time. Don't sit there and dwell on it. Don't think about it every morning, but you need to run the math. You need to run the scenario. For me at the time, I'm moving with my parents, with my new wife in their house, and I get punched in the nose, basically feeling like my ego's bruised, and I have to start over. And this was from somebody, one of my mentors, this specific guy had filed bankruptcy before and is already back up on top. And he told me, he's like, dude, I did it like twice as fast this time. And I was like, I never thought, I'm like, and I was not raised that way. Minimal risk, very conservative. Well, that's crazy. And most people are so fearful of things that have never happened. And when you live in this place of things that have never even happened or may not even happen, that it prevents you from taking the step that you need to take in order to get to the next level. And if you live in that mindset, then you never will move. And it's something I love, a quote from the Marine Corps that we use all the time, move or die. And it's the same concept in life. You don't stay there. You have to keep moving. Nobody cares if we go through an entry on that door, if we all stand on that door, stack on that door, and you're thinking about your girls, and if you die, then you're gonna fail everybody around you when you come into this house to clear it. And so it's very important to take that concept and apply it to your life. It's not as bad. What is the worst case scenario? Well, I was gonna move back with my folks. That was the worst case, and it seemed big to me at the time. It seemed huge to me. It looks silly to me now. We ran the same scenario.
Well, with fear so controlling, it's
100% back to you though, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's a good question. I don't know. Did you feel like you 100%? I feel like you surface level back to me when we were going through the trouble, but I never knew how stressed out you were until we got out of it.
so the momentum that you've always taken, I was always beside you.
I feel like that's where she's at. Clearly, I didn't do anything big as you did.
No.
Just to start my business. I'm gonna start a drywall business. Everybody around me, my parent, everybody, you'll never fucking make it, dude. You're shit. You're never gonna make it, bro. I'm serious.
That's how it is.
You know this. You're never gonna fucking make it. Fucking watch this.
That's right.
10 years deep, man, and just her behind me is why I'm even here. She's like, dude,
Let's go.
you can do it. I said, hey, just take a risk. Trust me. She said, I trust you. I know you can do it.
Yep.
We just fucking did it. I said, I'm gonna do it. Boom, boom.
Because she's watched you. You're just going to do what it takes. And that's the person you have to become regardless of the situation. You're just going to figure it out. You're going to do what it takes. Because you can't control the uncontrollable. And shit's going to happen. It's going to happen. It really does. All right, I didn't get into some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. But does anybody have any questions about that? I went way too long on my story. I wanted to talk a little bit more about business. But do you guys have anything? I know some of y'all. I've talked to a lot of y'all individually. And I know some of y'all have been through your own struggles, or you've had your own doubts, or you've had your own things, or you've had your own overcomings.
Well, I think more than important than anything is knowing the struggles that you guys have gone through. At least for me, when I come into these rooms, it's more like, tell me everything not to do.
Exactly.
Because it's going to save me so much heartache and time and money and all that. And obviously, you're still going to hit bumps. But there's a lot of things where you can say, hey, don't go that way, it's a dead end.
Exactly. And I got addicted to asking those questions. I was like, oh, I want to mitigate this again, right? You literally are collapsing time. And when you're hiring a coach or you're working with somebody, you're literally cutting a check for speed a lot of times. Because back in the day, you had to know. Why did I get into construction? Because my dad was in construction. If my dad was in oil and gas, I probably would have been in oil and gas. If my dad would have done a sandwich shop, I would have been like, oh man, I can make 4 of these in a franchise. It's just what happens, right? So you start with what you're given. But you need to realize at a certain point in your life, is this what I want, and is this vehicle going to get me to where I want? And that's where real estate investing was like, God, I read this book, and I'm like, let's see if it works. And it does. If I can reiterate anything before we dive into a little bit more, is like, it really does allow you to have time freedom. It allows you to make lump sums of money. It allows you to make wealth and cash flow all in the same vertical. And that's why I jumped into it. I was like, dude, it can make me wealthy, give me some time. I don't answer to anybody except for these pieces of property and figuring them out. And I was like, I'm all in, because I was beat ragless to try to freaking figure out the other businesses. And all the other businesses that I had had to do with other people's emotions or feelings or these things. And it was just different. It's completely different. So something that's super important throughout that journey. So now that you guys know my whole story, what I've learned, and this is what you parlays into what you just said, is how to structure your business correctly. Things not to do. A lot of times at the beginning of our journey, I'm very guilty of it. I lived out of the business. And so I didn't really know my expenses. I didn't know how much money I was bringing home. I didn't know my net profit. I didn't know any of these things. I didn't even know what the fuck that was, just to be honest. I was like, a company credit card, fuel, the CPA said I could expense this, cool, let's keep going. And so I never knew what I was doing and how I could grow it and have employees and scale it. And so talking about bookkeeping, talking about how to understand that, how to hire that out. I see a lot of people, one of the biggest mistakes if you guys own your own businesses, if you guys are doing your own taxes, you're hurting yourself massively. Are you guys doing your own taxes?
Well, we got
You're hurting yourself massively. You're better off trying to go out and seek the next opportunity, the next deal, the next thing. You guys got to get yourself out of that small business mindset. And you got to start bringing in team players that are components to your business. I'm telling you right now, hiring a bookkeeper was probably one of the most pivotal things that changed my business. Just look at her laughing. Something we didn't talk about was when she got fired, or when she had P, you became my bookkeeper. And that was probably one of the hardest times of working together as a couple. She literally is getting pissed off, leaving the office, and I know that subs are coming in to pick up their checks in about 2 hours, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta pay Ted the friggin' drywall bill, he's asking me where it's gonna be. So, exactly, but so in reality, you could buy her time back by getting a part-time bookkeeper, and usually it doesn't cost you as much as you think. And this bookkeeper, you qualify them, you vet them, but I had a lot of mental barriers to break through when it came to that. As far as, they're gonna be too expensive, I can't afford to hire them, I don't trust them with my money. A lot of times business owners get so contractual and scared with giving financial information away, but that goes back to being so scared that someone's gonna rob you blind. That's really, if you look at it, a victim mindset. It really is. It's really thinking about this, everybody's gotta get me, everybody's gonna do this. Reality is, dude, the people that you hire, you may get robbed. I know people that have had hundreds of thousands stole from their companies, and I can't tell you won't face something like that, or you won't go through something like that. I bet you'll learn a lot from it, though. It just is what it is. And you got to learn how to hire better. You got to learn how to vet people. And so through this process, understanding businesses, understanding what businesses work, understanding what margin is, understanding how to make margin, understanding how to grow it is super important. And some of the things that we can go over, I have notes right here. Asset protection. One of the first things that I get a lot of times from people that want to get into real estate investing, they're like, do I need an LLC for every home? And I'm like, no, you do need an LLC. You should set up a company. You should start this process. But what you do need to do is you need to start looking and do the things that move the needle the most. You can have all the LLCs in the world and no properties, and it doesn't do you any good. You're just gonna pay a shitload for your CPA to do your taxes on all these companies that you don't do any business in. Other things, outsourcing. Right here I said bookkeeping. Write that down. Bookkeeping, CPA, attorney, whatever kind of business you're in. You gotta understand there's different types of attorneys. That's really important when you're building out your book of business, your repertoire. This is another huge one right here. Building a team. Being scared to hire. I remember being scared to hire or work with people, or even understanding how to structure that. I would ask my friends, the guys that own the landscaping business, the guys that own the real estate company, how do you hire? How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you fire? What to do? What do I say? What do I not say? I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for other companies to come consult on our companies in the past, and we've created processes, procedures, and stuff like that, and it's helped a ton. Setting targets. If you're looking at a specific business, I'm literally talking to people that are entrepreneurs, but you guys can apply this to your personal life too. 90-day goals, 6-month goals, 1-year goals, and 5-year goals. What happens a lot of times is people overestimate what they can do in 5 years and underestimate what they can do in a short period of time. You can get a lot more done, but you need to compress it. So you need to be thinking, where do I want to be in X amount of time? And this is something that hit me during that building time. Was like, if I want to be here, living this life, whatever this is, paint this picture. If you guys paint your own picture, whatever it is, if I want that perfect vision, that dream you have, is what I'm doing today, is the industry I'm in today, is what I do today going to give me that outcome? And I don't think people really ask that question honestly, and because they just get stuck in the bog of entrepreneurship or owning their own business, and they're like, I just got to stay above float, or I'm making good money, I have a nice boat, I have a nice house, I have these things, I have a nice car, whatever it is. And you get caught up in it, but you don't know, you're not even really chasing the vision that you really wanted in the first place, that clarified dream. You know what I'm saying? So that's huge. This is my last little quote, and then we can get ready to break here for lunch. No, we got some time. Sorry. It really is like, if I were to go back and to talk to myself X amount of years ago when I started entrepreneurship, I would have told myself, and you guys have heard this from Grant Cardone, you've heard this from other people, but I would have thought bigger. And it's really hard to think bigger when you're stuck in the grind. I wish I would have thought bigger, dreamed bigger. And so I ask myself now, so you guys can understand and know, and if I'm gonna put in this effort, if I'm willing to do what it takes, if I'm willing to hustle and grind, if I'm willing to do things, and I find joy in it now because it's what I like to do and it aligns with my life, then what vehicle will get me there? A lot of people would say, oh, your education's doing well, you guys are here, are you learning? You know, is that how you make your money? Like, obviously, you guys know I make money in real estate, but it's like, what's gonna allow me to get to the next level? Everybody could probably raise their hand if they know that the majority of millionaires in the United States are made from real estate. And so I was like, maybe I'm just like, but I was like, oh, let's do that. Let's figure it out. And so I'm like, how do I want to live? How much money does it take to live this dream lifestyle? So once you've clarified that vision, once you've clarified that lifestyle, whatever it is, you need to do the math backwards of like, does it take, and you may be shocked that it doesn't take $100 million in assets, and it doesn't take hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in net income. You may be really shocked how great of a life you can live when you start to make, net income a month, or you have, and that sounds crazy. You're like, guys, that's freaking crazy. $50 million in assets. Well, what I'm going to show you guys in a little while, the concept that we're going to apply on a base level of residential is very applicable to scale. And you can take those concepts in residential, and once you get your feet wet, once you get stabilized, once you understand these things, which a lot of you guys understand them, and you start to have proof of concept and you implement them, you'll realize it's the same concept to move from a house to a $2 million freaking apartment complex or a commercial building or whatever it is, and you can scale those, and then now you'll start to realize like, oh, that's how you get to 50 million, And it starts, and we'll deep dive into why this is super applicable, but I'm gonna beat on a drum right now. Is about business. You guys heard my journey. You heard all the things been up and down. Probably didn't even hit all the details. And so what I thought, I was like, hey, what's gonna help out the most when it comes to like setting up business? We talk a lot about real estate in the inner circle. We talk specific about, how to get deals. We talk about how to do all that. But what I want to do is I'm gonna make you guys an offer to do a business blueprint. So we're gonna do a bulletproof business blueprint. And that's where I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna bring guests on, I'll bring my bookkeeper on, I'll bring my CPA on or a CPA on. I'm gonna show you guys the whole layout of how to structure your business, how to set targets, how to set goals, how to not get distracted, what's worth your time, it wasn't business cards, it wasn't silly hats and stuff like that. Was it fun? Yes, but does it move the needle? No. Like we need revenue and we need to focus on margin. I said that earlier. And if you guys don't know what that is, there's no dumb questions here. Revenue is the total monies that you make, total money coming in the door. If I sell these flyers for $5 and I sold X amount of them, all of that is revenue. Net profit is the money you put in your pocket. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. And that's what matters. It really matters, especially when you're starting out. It is very important. And so you can scale too fast. I've been there. He's smiling. He's probably been there. I've scaled too fast. Even in real estate investing I have, and I've been cash poor and asset rich. and then you can scale too slow, and you can wait, and you can be doing all of these jobs and wearing all of these hats and bookkeeping and CPAing and, I know that are like trying to, they business, and they're the ones that are doing all of it. At the beginning, you have to do a lot of it, right? But when you make margin and you understand margin, you understand your P&L and your balance sheet, your P&L is your profit and loss, then you'll understand where you can and where you, and then a lot of times, like at the beginning, I have the money to go hire a full-time employee, but I did have the ability to hire maybe a contractor or somebody that could come in and do contract work. And you'd be very surprised how many people could do that. My bookkeeper is still technically a contractor. She's not a direct employee, she's not W-2. She gets paid for the time that she's there, she logs her hours. She's part-time technically, but she'll work whenever. She's amazing, she's awesome, she's a godsend for me and my marriage. And, and systems. So if you guys want to do the same, if you want to create a business blueprint, we're going to have 12 calls. I'm going to do a weekly Zoom call. And we're going to bring on people. I'm going to bring on guests. It's the same price as yesterday's offer. It's $997, or you can split the payment in two. And my objective is to literally kind of show you a lot about real estate. There's so much to learn on real estate, but for any business and for anybody that's setting up a business or wanting to have a business, there's so many things like Edwin just said that I can prevent you from making these mistakes and or implement in your own business that will accelerate you so much faster. So if you guys are interested in that or you have questions on that, just ask me. That's my objective too on these calls, is to do that. It's a 90-day deal. We're going to do a call every week. And then you guys can get with Colin, Maya, or Alicia if you want to sign up and do that. I'd love to see you guys on there. Yeah, it's separate. Literally going to just talk business. John Sims that I deployed with, great person. He was one of my service businesses. We talk a lot about business, and so I still have a service company which has done great since he's been involved in it, which I appreciate and want to tell you that. And so my point is, you have a service business. I know you have a service business, and these things are a little different. They're different than real estate. They're different beasts, and the way the moves, the way the money goes in and out is different. In real estate, we talk specifics on how to get the deal, how to fund it, how to do all that in the inner circle. I'm not even trying to sell you, I'm just trying to explain all of it, bro. Yeah, so we're gonna deep dive into all of the actual things that it takes. How to set up an LLC. Who was that the other day? Who set up an LLC? Was it you, Jeff? Yes, sir. All right, I'm gonna pick on you for a minute, so bear with it. Hope you got thick skin. How'd you set up your LLC?
LegalZoom.
Okay, we've done this, and what happens is when you go to do your taxes, your CPA wants to punch you in the face because you may have set the company up wrong. I'm just telling you, right? He's laughing because he owns businesses. I know he does. And so how Alicia has used LegalZoom in the past because she was like, fuck that CPA. I'm not paying $1,500. And she's like, and then we sit at the end of the year when we do a pro forma. Yeah. So we set up your LLC. It was an S Corp, a C Corp, things. Very much so can impact you on how your monies are moved and how it applies to real estate investing. It's very important. Because everything is a flow-through entity. I'm not a CPA, but so you have company over here that has assets. You have company over here that does drywall or waterproofing or coaching or service business or lawn mowing. And then they all flow back to you and the other owners. And otherwise, you have K1s if you have partners, which you guys probably, I think you do. And what's really important is if you do it wrong, you may end up paying a lot of taxes, and you may not be able to get the deductions that we're going to show you here in a minute when it comes into real estate. You can cost yourself a lot of money and a lot of time, and I think $1,000 to learn how to do it correctly is pretty damn cheap than what it's going to cost you to freaking pay out to the tax man and to set it all up. Yeah. All right. Yeah. What's up, bro?
Did you have any issues finding your first investors?
Good question. No, because of my reputation prior. My building community, it was not difficult at all. Now, though they knew I was a builder, but they didn't understand the other side of it. And so they were like, And one thing tough at the beginning, this is a great question. It's you'll have investors. Everybody's a person. It's an individual, right? And so some people want to know how it works, and you have to be really careful. And people want to know how it works. Of course, especially if they're investing money with you, they want to know how you're going to give them a return, how it's going to go through. And so, what's really expert in that field, being somebody that's already done it, being somebody that understands the ins and outs. And so that's one thing that I talk to people about. They're like, well, I only have, 10, 15 to start it in the inner circle or something to get in the program. How well will I get the rest of the money and parlay it into real estate? That's the question I get all the time. It's a great question. I felt the same way. And I tell them, I promise to find deals. If you learn how to structure it, if you learn how to go and talk to somebody that has private money, it could be a family friend, it could be somebody from church, it could be somebody from the gym, it could be anybody, and you lay it out clearly, you will be able to find the money. If you have a real deal, if you learn how to find the deal, if you have the knowledge, you'll be able to find the money. There's more money out there than there is deals. Way more money out there right now. Hands down, more money out there than there is deals. I mean, I literally hard money lender out here from a connect that I have, and the dude's on the phone, wild dude. He's like, yeah, man, I can get this because there's a lot of foreign investors down here in Southern California. I can get all this money. So the money is abundant. Reality is the money is abundant. But learning how to handle somebody else's money is very important, super important. About that in the inner circle, because that's pivotal. You know, you don't want money and burn them. You're going to get a bad reputation and probably burn your career for the next 5 years minimum. You know, but if you had a deal and you knew it was a deal and you borrowed the money or you worked with somebody on the project or you gave them 50% equity or 70% equity, you know, or whatever started, then you start to build. This is on our last call. Some of you guys were on that call, this last call. If you start to build up the reputation and you start to get a few of those deals and you've given up a lot of your profits at the beginning, if that's the position that you have to be in at first, then you're going to expedite your process. Because what happens is, and there was a lender on the call, everybody over here can verify that was on that call, and he's like, I just need you to do a couple deals. Like, I'll give you money. I'll fund you the deals. I want some credibility. He's like, so if you partnered with 2 or 3 people before and you've created this reputation for you, it's having credit, right? Like some people will say, oh, no debt, blah, 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 blah. You have a 0 credit score and you have no credit. You don't know if you can pay your bills. That's all a credit score is. It's like, we'll deep dive into like more of that, get around some of that once you guys start building up. I'm going to talk about buying and holding property. It's going to get in depth. We'll talk specific on how you can scale that. But does that kind of long-windedly answer your question? Yeah. Learn how to find deals is my answer in short. Learn how to find the deals and you will attract the money. What we're going to dive into is just the fix and flips in general. Something that I want to talk about at the beginning is the reason I got into fix and flips. What's funny is coming from the builder standpoint and having a bit of an ego and having the sign and all this fancy shit, and you see it a lot of times in the builder community. But what I realized really quickly is sometimes if you're just a builder and you're not a developer or an investor or understand money on the other side of it, a lot of times it's all show, no go. The margin's not there. They're not making as much as they really say they are a lot of times, right? And so fix and flip, the cool thing about that is, and the bad thing that I thought at the time was like, oh, it's not very sexy. Like I joked around earlier about flipping a shit box. If you can buy a house for 50 grand, now it's harder to do now, but I've done it. Bought a house for 50 grand, put 20 into it and sell it for 100. You were all in at 70 grand and you sold it for 100. And that was very possible in Oklahoma before. Now it's buy for 100 and add X amount. Obviously markets shift. Right now we're in a slower market, but we're gonna go over today is the concept of it. And so you understand the principles of why to do this. And then what I want you guys to do, if this will help us out, we've all gotten to know each other pretty well now. I feel like it's a pretty open room, small enough community. So if you have questions while I'm going through this, dude, literally ask me while we're doing it. If you wanna really learn, ask me the question right while we're going through it, and I'll give you all the information that I know. That's the objective. Everybody here? Cool. Yeah, so let's dive in. I'm going to show you my concept. First, we're going to talk about for this hour is fix and flip, and then the next hour we're going to talk about buying, holding property, wealth, and scale. And then the last hour we're going to go into creative financing on both sides, whether you're creatively buying portfolios or deals or you're creatively selling deals. But I say all of that because our inner circle people here, they know my model is essentially, if we can take it down as a fix and flip, we still want to have a contingency plan. And the contingency plan is sometimes you can buy and hold it. We'll call it a buy and hold. I'll write that down. And this is a rental. And if you can't do that, you can sometimes have a third tertiary plan to where you can do seller finance. This is the reason you're learning what you're learning today. The intentions of this right now are to go from, if you can't sell it as a fix and flip and you're stuck with it, I was in 2018 with 2 spec houses. I couldn't rent those properties out and cash flow them. In Oklahoma, even though I had a property that was worth retail value of around $1 million, my payment to the bank was like $bucks a month interest only. I could probably only rent that property out, even though it was nice, for probably maybe $5,000 or $4,000, just because the rental market's not as strong, right? Like even crazier is like if I were to finance this house right here, if I were to go slap down 20% or whatever it may be on this home, which is probably around 3.8 to 4 million, I'd have to put down the 20%. And then I would turn around and I'd have to finance it, and then I'm financing it, and it's probably more than what I pay in the lease. Okay, so there's a benefit to renting personally. You kind of had that question a minute ago, Jacob. But this is why you're learning what you're learning, is because my objective when I realized that, when I hit that risk, when I had 2018 and I was like, dude, I got to learn something else, and I started going to these classes and learning these things, these are some of the key components that I learned, and I was like, okay, so a speculative investment to build a property and to hopefully only sell it. Like that's speculative investment, and what that basically means in my terms is like it's gamble. It's a risk. Yeah, one strategy. You have one thing you can do with it. That's not what I wanted. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Why am I'm just gambling. So some years it's good, some years it's bad, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And it's too much of an up and down, and so this trajectory doesn't lead anywhere. So I wanted to have other plans for the property. Like, what can I do with the asset if I can't sell the property? Like, I want to have some other plans. And what I realized, like I said, is I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I needed to learn. And so what I learned was, like, if instead of building the home, now building a home is good, so I'm not going to talk trash about it, but building a home to rent to somebody, building an affordable home is great. But fix and flip, the cash conversion cycle is much shorter. Let me give you an example. If it takes me 7 to 12 months to build a home from ground up, and I can sell it, and depending on your market, so this is a very broad audience, areas from different places, so depending on your market, but I'm going to use Oklahoma as an example. I could use here too if you want me to. But if I built it, I could maybe make $40,000, maybe $50,000, $60,000 on that size property. Okay, but it's going to take me 7 to 12 months to do that, and I don't know what the market's going to look like in 7 to 12 months. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the rates are. And so what happens is when you fix and flip property that are smaller and more affordable at first, just the concept of affordable housing, whatever area you're in, is that you now have an opportunity to move it faster. It may take you 30 days. It may take you 30 to 60 days to get that property turned and burned and put back on the market because you got to do flooring, paint. I'm not doing anything crazy, like I'm tearing walls down. We're not making this HGTV. Even out here, well, I'll take the same concept that I had in Oklahoma and I'll do it out here. The only thing that's going to be different is the actual property itself, like the price. When you purchase these and you get into, does everybody understand cash conversion cycle? What I mean? That means how fast you get your money. That's how fast you get paid. So if it takes me 12 months to get paid on the brand new construction house and I make 50 grand, but I could do a fix and flip in 30 and 40 days, and now I have a contingency plan if I can't sell it, and now I have more buyers because it's more affordable, it's less risk. So it's really less risky. It's a lot less risky. So what I looked at is affordable housing at first, and I knew that my price point, and this is specifically from my market, and I suggest everybody kind of towards the median range. I'll show you why. This is my triangle. This is the top 1% of purchase price of property. And then this would be the bottom percentage, right? This is like the expensive properties on the market in the United States. And then these would be the most affordable. I want to stay in this world because whatever happens in the economy, everybody shifts down. Even if we have a 2008 or anything like that, people in this bracket that make median income still need to pivot and come down and afford a house here. The guy that has a job that's a doctor or he's an attorney or he has a high-paying W-2, all of us know every one of these people in our community. And if something happens, or they're losing their jobs, or they're moving and things like that, or they're Austin in 2018, they're going to have to pivot, and they're going to have to get a more affordable house. Well, everybody changes their bracket and goes down, and that's why it's important to be down here when you have assets and hold assets at this level right now. Right? Does that make sense? Like, you can trade up, and we can talk commercial and stuff. I want to overwhelm you. But right here, that's what I realized. And I was like, I want more volume of people that can buy the property. And I'll tell you something about the volume of people. They're happy to have a home if they're buying a home a lot of times. Like they're not the same clients that are texting you on Easter because the $200,000 window package didn't show up over the weekend. Like, it's a different client, totally different basis. So these people are like, they don't not buy the home because the countertops aren't soapstone. I really wanted soapstone, and I want a deduction on the purchase price. In order to get the soapstone put in, will you do that on the deduction and take the price? That's the difference. And these people are like, oh, well, this is great. This is nice. You remodeled it. It's new. It's white. It's clean. It's better than anything, and I can get a good loan on it, and you guys redid it. And so they're happy to have a home. So you have more client base. You can get FHA loans if you do a remodel right. They have more loan programs for these people because what we have in the United States, and we talked about this at lunch, some of us, is we have an affordable housing crisis across the United States. A lot of times that people ask me, they're like, Austin, well, what do you think the market's going to do? What about this? What about that? I'm going to get into the game when bottom hits. I'm like, no, you're not. You're sitting on the sidelines when bottom hits. We're going to be ready to roll, and you're going to be trying to get into the game. That's just how it is. You can't time the market. And so everybody's sitting on the sidelines with cash or wanting to become an investor when the market's good. They don't even know what a good market is a lot of times. I heard that a lot in the building community, you know. They're like, I'm going to do this and buy these things when the market's good. I'm like, it's not. You don't become a good fighter after you get punched in the face. So you should become a good fighter before, right? So when you have this bracket down here, there's so many more options for you. And there's a lot of, we even talked about a second ago, there's a lot more loan programs, a lot more government programs. For one, the buyers that are buying your property, and two, if you choose to get to a certain level where you're developing the property, you can get deductions in your company that are growing it, right? It is a problem in the United States, and they're trying to solve it. But in 2008, what we had was people were given loans. They were given tons of money. They were given loans. If you were a freaking stripper, you could get a $500,000 house and maybe 2 of them just because they were giving you loans. They weren't underwriting you. And so the banks locked down over the past years after 2008 because of this problem, and that's why we had the crash. So what we had was too much inventory out there immediately and no buyers. But what we have now is not enough inventory and a ton of buyers. Because ever since 2008, they have all builders, developers, everybody back big time. They stopped building, they stopped developing, they stopped producing product for a long time. And it's been like that. We've never, with the demand. There are people being born every day. There's people that are new home buyers every day. There's people that are coming into money every day. Like, there's a lot of it. Of course, there's people that are dying, but there's just not enough to keep up with the demand. And so strictly from that standpoint, it made sense to me in business to be like, oh, I need to figure out how to be a part of that solution. So, and one, it's more secure, right? So in 2008, they stopped building, or they have not built enough since then, okay? And so that's where we're now. That's literally where we're at now, whether you're in almost any place. The only places that have like developed quite a bit that could be a little more sketch, like you saw Florida and Tennessee a little bit, they're building a lot. They still have the economics to hold it. But Florida was like booming, and then it slowed down a little bit when the market shifted. But it's still, overall, as the United States, we just don't have enough product. Okay. Has everybody grasped this?
It's like in our area, they're only building huge houses.
Yeah, that happens. You know why? Because they know that they already have a client for it. And so that's exactly what happens. They're only building huge houses, and they're not building affordable because there's not enough margin in the affordable. That's what sucks. What?
That's how they do it there.
That's exactly what happens in Oklahoma.
Like at Iron Horse, so I got 6 specs right now. They're like at 3,000, but the next 100 lots they're buying, nothing's going to be under 4,000 because they can't make.
He's talking about square foot. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We're selling at 300 square foot right now. Another they can sell for like 319, and we make $250,000 house. We're here, we're gonna make 40 or 50 off of it. We got to build 6 of them.
Exactly my point. That's why it's hard. Is because you'd rather I know. But if you're doing it as a business from this side, what you guys are learning is that you don't want to hang on. You don't want to build that as a spec, like a spec investment. It's a dangerous investment. But if you're doing a customs, like you just said, then you can make more money that way. Why would you go and build all these little homes and all this work and have these superintendents, these trucks, this development, all of that in certain areas? Everybody's economy is different. You wouldn't go and do that for the small margin that's on these properties. A lot of times developers that are building big neighborhoods and doing these kind of things, the only way that they're making big dollars is 1, through volume, and 2, through the purchase price of the dirt that they purchased 10 years ago. And so they purchased that freaking lot, or this area right here, probably 10 years before they developed it. And so you can imagine what they're doing is they're making most of their margin on selling the dirt. The dirt value went up. That's big boy dollars. That's big boy games. So your question, or my question, was like, how do I even get started? How do I get into that game? How do I parlay my building skills in general into making money this way? And so I said affordable housing. And whatever that number is in your market, I'm going to use some numbers up here. If you guys want to throw stuff at me too in the future or here in a minute, I'm open to it. We'll skin cat. But the objective when we buy these properties, and I'll show you, I'm using a very, you can add zeros to this if you want, but I'm showing you guys a very cheap number just for sheer numbers. So if you bought a property for $50,000, you were able to find one for $50K, purchase price is what PP means, and then $20K in rehab cost, your all in is $70,000, right? This is your all in. Before we got into this property, what we would have done is we would have evaluated that this property was worth or could be worth in this neighborhood $100,000. It's what we call ARV, as repaired value. It's a literal term. You guys can write that down if you want it. Some of the Inner Circle members already know. ARV, as repaired value. And we shop for these deals, when we look for these things, we're looking for as repaired value and we're looking for a discount. Well, why were we able to buy that property for 50 grand? Now, these are just numbers, guys. I mean, we could change this to 500 in this market, or we could change this to 250 or whatever you want to do in your market. The same, the math is the same. This is just easy for us to concept. So why are they selling for 50,000? They're selling 50,000 because it needs work. It's maybe an old hoarder house. Somebody passed away. Somebody's grandma passed away and they're trying to sell it. Maybe it's a house when they live here in San Diego. Maybe it's a house in Tennessee and they live, in Oklahoma. And they're like, we don't want to mess with it. The kids are going to split it. We got to get rid of it. There's so many reasons. What are some ways that you found properties that are like this? Or what are the reasons they sell them at the discount? A plethora. Find people always, no matter what market you're in, no matter what time you're in, people will go through two different types of strain: financial strain and or personal strain, right? So it's a money issue or a personal issue. Like I said, unearned equity is a good point too. That's not even a personal, it's more of a pain in the butt. And so unearned equity means that let's say at least me and sister, my parents die. Me and my sister don't live in Oklahoma. We want to sell the property. We didn't earn the money, so we'll just take a hit and a haircut because we don't want to deal with any of it and fly back to deal with old mom and pop's house. And so you'll take a discount. And so that's how these properties will come about, just like that. And there's all sorts of ways that you can find this deal. That's a whole nother lesson, but I'm going to go into it in a second too. But so the concept right here is that we knew before we got into this deal, before we purchased it, that it was going to cost us 50 grand, but we knew we could sell it for 100 grand. We knew it was going to cost us about 20 grand in rehab costs. Well, how do we know that? I show you guys, the way I show the inner circle is like, so some people don't have construction experience. I'm very fortunate that I had construction experience so I could kind of look things over and get idea, especially get acclimated in my area. Like what's things cost, what's going on. I knew when someone was bullshitting me or not because I had construction experience, right? Like you know subs, you know people. And the best way to start that out though, if you guys don't have any construction experience whatsoever, you need to find and you need to get some of these contractors and vet them and have multiple of them. So I know it's gonna be harder for you to close a deal, which is what some of them have dealt with, because you have to have somebody come into the property and give you an estimate on a checklist, and then you get another one. Even if you don't end up closing that property and you run through that process multiple times, you're gonna learn in your area what the rehab costs are for those square footages and houses. So you can kind of make a faster decision on one or the third one, the fourth one. Does that make sense? It's more important, yeah, your own thought process of it, right? Like you know, when you go to a restaurant for the first time, you know what to order. You go the second time, you're like, oh, I kind of know what to order, and then just keep going. You know what the price costs, the place costs. You don't really have to ask, and that's the same concept of what you're trying to build up when you start building rapport with these. Well, how do you find those contractors? Let's just say I know a lot of you guys have construction experience. A lot of you guys have contracted contractors, but some of y'all haven't. So let's say you don't know how to find contractors. The craziest and the easiest way to find contractors is through Facebook groups. But Facebook groups, join like your local investor groups. You can get on Facebook, search real estate investor San Diego County, and then get on there and be like, hey, I'm looking for a contractor that does remodels on affordable housing or does remodels, light remodels, not anything crazy. You know, send me a DM or email and you send me a contact. And you're going to get people that want to work. You'll find a lot of people through that. I have met a ton of connections that way. So you can also find deals on Facebook. Who was I talking to the other day? I think I was talking to you, Jacob. Like you were like, dude, you were right. There's on Facebook. I know it's crazy, but that's where a lot of deals are done. Like that's almost the way to find a lot of this stuff. There's wholesalers on Facebook. There's other agents on Facebook. You know that. It's just how these big communities. That's a massive hack for you guys right there. So that's where you can find these two components to the problem, right? But we want to know how to run the numbers. Well, what did I do here? I said $100,000 is our ARV, our as repaired value. How do we know the as repaired value? Well, the simplest way is to kind of get a good idea. I mean, there's a more in-depth find these more accurately, but the fastest way that I'm making decisions is just looking on Zillow, and I'm going to go over, if you guys want to write this down, think about this. If you want to go to the sold tab on Zillow in the area you're looking in, and then you want to go to the filter and you want to say the last 3 months or 6 months, and you're going to get a good idea of what properties sold in that area. If you're in Texas, you guys are going to need a different type of CRM to get access to that because Texas is a non-disclosure state and they don't show the properties that have sold over the last period of time. So you won't know what things have sold for. That's just Texas's thing. So you have to have an MLS license or you have to have a software that has some kind of access. I didn't have that issue and there's not that issue. So if I'm like, oh shit, all these houses, that one sold for 98, that one's 900 square foot and this were 110 and it's this much. That's how I'm going to start understanding and start knowing things are going to go for. So you get a pretty rounded idea, right? These are round numbers, but whatever the number may be, I'm going to figure out what the square footage is for the exact same comp, which is the exact same bedroom count, the exact same bathroom count, and the rough square footage within, 50 square feet if you. And so you're trying to find something sold for. Maybe another flipper's in the area, and then you want to look at the house itself. You want to see when you're analyzing that house, you want to look and see, well, was that house flipped already? So is it getting max value? Or is that a shit box that hasn't been flipped that sold to maybe a person that's willing to pay a decent amount? So we know that's not really a comp that we're going to use for our specific situation. Is everybody tracking? You have any questions so far? I'm moving through this kind of quick. You good?
I do have a question.
Yeah, Brandon?
On the repair clause, Is there a certain square foot price that you could figure, like if you don't have the contractor?
Different.
Right.
So every area is going to be different. It's tough, but you can come up with your own. Yes, $30 a square foot or $20 a square foot. Yeah, I would always overestimate it. Like I did my quick comps. I bought property I've never even seen before. Like I've done it many, many times, and I just look at the numbers, and if it makes sense, then I get out there. And because of the way I see it now, this is a lot, but the way I see it now is like, oh, if I have to park $5,000 here, or I make $5,000 here, I just keep rotating. It's like a volume game at that point. But you can make your own cheat sheet. Yes, you should. And it would be quicker too.
That's what I was
Yeah, absolutely. Investors do it all 100%. Yeah, that's like a blanket square footage. You know, there's going to be things that, you know, you got to watch out for what it is. Jacob, do you have a question? Yeah, great point. So on Facebook groups, a lot of times when you're in the investor-friendly groups, you're going to be able to find people that are investor-friendly agents. And that's the objective. So they're going to bring you off-market deals. That's usually what I tell them. And the other thing is, like, everybody, are you guys familiar with what's changed with the National Association of Realtors on the buyer side? So some of the regulations and rules have changed on the buyer side. Do you want something, David? Yeah, you have to have like a buyer's agreement and shit, like, which is fine because in my perspective as a real estate investor, I was negotiating that at the very beginning. Like I always negotiate everything. Because a lot of people walk in and they don't think. They're like, does the bank say I have okay to get the money? I'm gonna go to the real estate agent. The agent gets me the house. She turns the lights on. I say I like it. She handles it. I move in. I get a loan, and now I'm maybe fucked. But the reality is, that's how a lot of people get started in real estate. They don't even know, like your first home, like they just did the situation. Everything in real estate is a negotiation. Like every single component of the situation. You wanna list my deal? Sure, I do quite a few deals. You know, I'm gonna negotiate the interest, or the commission. Yeah, I'm gonna negotiate the commission right up front. Like so, all that kind of stuff. I mean, so. But you have to learn it. Yeah. So you're talking buying. Oh yeah, for sure. And what?
Something I've done is when a property listed on there for longer, you can kind of
market. It's called DOM. So when you're buying property, you want to look at the sold properties, but then the ones that are for sale. If you're cruising Zillow or even on Facebook, they're not listed a lot. But a lot of times, if you can still find low-hanging fruit on MLS or Zillow, and you're looking for DOM, days on market. So you're looking for like the property that's been on there 50 or 100 days, for 200 days. As far as agents commission goes, yeah, everything's a negotiation. You can always do it. Now, when you're buying the property, you don't need an agent. There's already, if it's listed on the MLS, or you do not have to have an agent to purchase the property. You can utilize the agent that's there, and what I will do, and what I've done in the past is like, ring, ring, hello, yeah, you got 124 Smith Street for sale. That's cool, awesome. And I even did this when I was licensed myself. I'd say, hey, I'm licensed because I have to disclose that, but I'm also an investor, and I don't want any commissions out of the deal, but what I'd love for you to do is to get the full commission, and then I would submit my offer because the agent's gonna look and propose my offer more likely when I'm giving them both sides of the commission. I'd rather pay the agent more commission and me get a lower deal than try to finagle. It's just negotiations. It's trade. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is that tracking? Cool. Yeah, so I'm literally like, hey, I'm taking a commission on this deal. I am licensed. I want you to get it. That's cool. Whatever you negotiated with the seller, but I want this property for 50 grand instead of the 63. And that's my offer. And I'll pay cash. Let's go. Okay? 100%. 100% they'll push that more. On the other side of it, I've been on the other side of the table. If I'm this investor and I want to move the property, I just want an offer. Like, it's not emotional. Like, people get tied to, like, oh, this is what happens to everybody at the beginning when you guys start making offers, is you think that they're going to get offended. You're like, oh, I don't want to make this offer. That's too low. No, that's not the game. We're making offers. Like, even if they are fucking nutsack, it's going to be bad. Excuse my French. But, like, it is what you want to make offers too. And you know, you may get 1 out of 20. But you get one, you get a deal, you know. And if you're too low time, then you have to recalculate why you're too low all the time. Is it me? Is it the market? Is something off that on my underwriting? Things like that. So, does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. And the reason this is what it was called, all real estate was called the 70% rule. And why is it called the 70%? Well, we're all in at 70% of the ARV. Does that make sense? Does anybody know why that's important? Raise your hand. Yes, exactly. Thanks. Because what you can get on a loan, there's different types of loans for this, but let's talk about these buy and holds. What you can get on a long-term loan is banks will always loan you, always, like 99% of the time, always loan you 70%, what's LTV, loan to value, okay? So if the value of the is $100,000, the bank's gonna loan me $70,000. So in this specific deal, if I couldn't sell the property and I needed to turn it into a rental, how much money is stuck in the deal? Anybody want to answer? If I got a loan for this, let me do this again. If I got a loan for this on the purchase price, a bank loaned it to me, and then a bank loaned me the rehab cost. How much of my own money is stuck in the deal? Zero. Exactly, you nailed it. You nailed it. Yes, for the question because I didn't articulate that. But you're able to get loans on these, $50,000, because that's 50% of the purchase price. And then a lot of times these lenders will still provide you with rehab costs. You're a great example of this. You've walked away from the closing table after you purchased the property with rehab money. What was the check? 34 grand. What are you using for? For rehabbing the property? That's because you purchased it at the 50, for example, and he got the 20. He got more than that, but his situation's numbers are different. So, and that's a small lender. So let's go back and what kind of lenders will loan on these? Does everybody understand the 70% rule and why, though, we're targeting for this now? If you don't, by all means ask. There's no dumb questions here. I'm moving quick.
Creating equity.
Yes, you're creating equity, what she just said. The gap between what we've done it for, and what it's worth is equity. And I'll show you how this scales in the future.
Traditionally, when you go to buy like your first time home, you put 20% down. So that 20% down, that's your equity that you put into the deal.
You bought equity. We created wealth. Okay? And once I learned how to create that, I just said, how many? How many do I got to keep going? Because this $30,000 in equity turns into, and then it turns into $3 million, and then it turns into $30 million. It's the same concept. Does everybody make sense? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay. So once you conceptualize this and you get that, we'll move over and we'll go to buy and hold, and I'll explain the pros and cons of that concept of holding the property for that equity. But a lot of times at the very beginning, you really want to flip the property at the very beginning. And even throughout the process, there's times that your business, your real estate business, will require you to the property and sell it. Why is that? We need cash injections, right? Holding rental property doesn't really make us a ton of active money. And now we have equity created, but we're really not getting rich today. We got to eat today. And how do we eat today? Well, we would do fix and flips, or we could do wholesale. You know wholesale. Aaron's done many wholesales now, right? Some of you guys also have maybe done wholesales. We're not going to get into wholesale. Who's familiar with wholesale and understands what wholesale is? You do? Who? Nobody else? You? You know? Okay. You want to explain it?
Yeah, you property 70%
Or less. Yeah.
Well, yeah, less than 70% and sell that to an investor that'll.
Yes.
What you just explained.
Exactly. So what a wholesaler would do, and they would sell us this property for 50 grand, and they would have got the contract for 40K, and they made the 10,000. That's what a wholesale fee is. Does that make sense? Well, you say, how do they get that contract? Well, those are the guys that you see on the corner that say, we buy houses fast. We want homes. They blow you up if you have any property. I have a fuck ton of property and they blow me up. Unfortunately, don't have my personal line anymore. And that's what they do, and that's their job. And a lot of people on Instagram and social media will talk about wholesale. So you guys have probably heard the term, but not really necessarily understood it. And one thing I talk about with wholesales are great. Wholesale can make you a lot of money. What's I think our biggest profit on a wholesale? $45,000, and we never took title to the property? I beat you. We were competing for a while. When the market was 122, I think she made a $30,000 on one, and I'm $42,000 rip on one, and I take the top. Yeah, true, yeah. But it's a whole nother business. Yeah, buddy. You just need a buyer, so you just need to get the property under contract, purchase agreement, and then you send it to title. Yep, but you gotta have a buyer on the back end.
The assignment comes into place is when you have the buyer.
Yeah.
That's when you assign the contract over to them, you're selling them the rights.
Yeah, trading spots. I got this. Let's just say I got under contract from Edwin for 40 grand. I'm like, sweet man, no thanks man. I'm sorry you passed, but thanks for this freaking piece of paper with a signature on it that you're giving me. And then I'm gonna sell it to you, and here you go for 50 grand, bro. You wanna buy this deal? And he's like, hell yeah, I wanna buy that deal. I know exactly what I'm gonna do with it. I'm gonna do that. And so I made 10 grand and I never owned the property. That's what wholesalers do. But it sounds easy, and that's why you see so much noise on social media about it. Same with Section 8. I talked to somebody else about Section 8 a minute ago. I'm just as truthful as it gets. I experience in both of it, and I'll tell you pros and cons. And you can probably vouch for me. You literally, I think you work for a wholesale company now, or are you your owner? You're on your own now? Sick, dude. Heck. So you wholesale actively? Okay. Pros and cons, right? We could agree on it. And then it's usually a good facet to have to your business if you go full bore with stuff like this. But the only downfall to it is for a lot of you guys, I can look at you, I know you guys do for a living right now, I know what kind of time you have, and if you have a full-time gig, you run a full-time business, you have a job or whatever, being a wholesaler is a full-time job. It will take a ton of time. So you're about buying a deal, I'm better off buying a deal from Aaron and him making $10,000 as long as the math's out at first for me than it is for me to go spend $10, $20, $30, $40,000 in marketing a month and then not be able to answer the phones. because you have to spend money on marketing. You have to have the calls, you have to have the mailers, you have all sorts of things. So this is by all means not a wholesale class, but I want you to understand where you are getting some of these properties from and what they're doing. A cool thing about real estate investing that that attracted me to it, that I told y'all, is I was like, the wholesaler can make money. If they're getting out of a pinch, they're getting help, they're making the money. The wholesaler made money, I can make money. If I sell it with an agent or I become an agent, they can make money. And then the homeowner's happy and has a property, like, this is legit a win-win-win. Like, how does this go? I'd only buy from a wholesaler, I'd only buy it from Aaron if it made sense to me. You know, and his objective as a wholesaler would be to get the most money out of the deal. But if I'm buying 20 properties from him a year, he's gonna give me a better deal. And he's gonna give me more properties and I'll give him my buy box. So that's how the rapport builds. And that's how it starts. And I'll say, hey, Aaron, really, I'm looking at Midwest City. I want to do X amount of deals. Can you find me deals at this purchase price? You kind of know my buy box. He's like, sure, man. He goes money on marketing. He starts building his business that way. It's perfect. It's never a bad thing. So everybody can make money and nobody's an enemy, right? It's just all about the numbers. It maths out. It's literally a non-emotional transaction. It may be a little emotional for this person right here because they're in a financial strain or some sort or something's going on, maybe. But sometimes situations where it's not. They're just like, yeah, I don't care. The thing's a piece of shit. You guys want the property? I'm like, sure. So that's the 70% rule. Does everybody understand? Everybody tracking? Everybody awake? After lunch, we're all getting tired. And real estate's probably the most boring thing for me to teach on this after this, right? I mean, it's kind of exciting because you're talking about, you're like, damn, it's a lot of numbers. If I can do it, you guys can do it, I promise. So the question I get a lot of times, like, what kind of lending? Lending, right? There's two things we're gonna need in instant flip. We're gonna need deals and we're gonna need money, okay? You how to find the deals. There's multiple ways to find the deals. You got real estate agents, you've got wholesalers, you've got Facebook Marketplace where wholesalers and real estate agents are on. You've got Facebook groups. You've got all these places. Friends and family, that's huge. Absolutely. You let everybody know we're buying rentals, we're looking for houses. You know, if you guys know anybody that's got these properties, that's huge. And then you're looking for money. So what's the money? How do you get money? There's multiple different ways. And in Oklahoma and some of these smaller things like there's local, there's credit unions, there's things like that will loan you. Pros and cons with using them. So I'll write that down as small banks. Good luck with reading my writing. There's hard money. Hard money is a large lump sum of private money. And there's multiple ways to do it, but essentially what hard money is, it's high interest rate money. They're gonna give it to you. They're basing it off the asset itself. So what that means is they're giving you the loan based on the property itself. So if they're, Mr. You got a property for 50, it's gonna take 20 grand, your estimated that you submitted to us, you're going to be worth that. They send it to and usually they'll get you an answer and they can close within 2 weeks if they have to. So it's fast money. It's where a lot of people come in and I pay, but it's not really cash, it's just hard money, right? That's how it is. So hard money is great, but the good thing about it can become a tool to keep you going because these people right, they're going to scrutinize you. They want your son's blood sample, they want all your tax returns, they want all this shit. And what I realized is like, a small bank would give me like a guidance line. And that's because the loan officer, his limit was 200 grand without asking the board. And so they're able to loan you. So that's another hack right there. Like a lot of these small lenders, they have a loan limit and they're allowed, especially if they've been there a while. And so they have a limit and you can basically ask them like, hey man, you know, can you give me a guidance line on this? Like what's your limit? And so they'll give you the guidance line. Well, guidance line essentially is just, we're saying that you can get it toward the property, right? You can scale these numbers up or wherever you are. What? And close slower. Yeah, this is a 30 to 45 day close. Cool? Hard money, you can close anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days. Why is that important? Because if I say I can close in 2, I'm gonna pay you cash. I don't wanna negotiate the price. I have nothing going on. I wanna buy this property from you. And then Alicia comes over and she's like, I can close in 45 and I want a TRR report and I want all this stuff fixed and this and that. Who are you going to use? You're going to sell the property to me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to get the deal. That's why, because hard money is a tool to get the property faster. So now you're going to pay for it because you're going to pay usually about 2, which means 2% of whatever purchase price of the property. And then you're going to pay 12% interest typically for 12 months. That's okay. I don't really care because I'm baking it into my numbers when I'm underwriting these deals. Does that make sense? It's a lot. You got some of you guys looking at me like, I kind of know what you're saying. If you have questions, this is the time. Ask questions, seriously. Questions? None? Tracking? Go ahead.
Would you use hard money for like just fix and flips, or just like if you're looking at it as a fix and flips, would you use hard money, or is it like any like specific type of way financing way?
So the way I would look at the deal is like I would use, it depends on the person, right? It depends on where you're at in your real estate investing journey. I had to use small banks at the beginning because hard money wasn't that popular back in 2015, 16 when I bought my first little deals. And so I used small banks because they would give me, and he's used small banks. That's what he's talking about, that example of money, is that they would allow me to have the purchase price, they would allow me to have the rehabs, and they would give me all the money up front at the closing table when I would go to the property. And so that was awesome. It's more rare now because the risk the bank runs is giving you the 20 grand to skip off like Edwin and you go buy a boat. Like that's just what they did. Like investors screwed the banks, so the banks got pissed. They took it's just how it is. Regulations have changed things. And so more likely than hard money is much more popular, much more present now because there's a lot of money. And like I said, so people with big money always want to make more money. So they use their money and they loan it out or they'll put it with a type trust and then they'll make whatever and they'll loan it. So the good thing about it is you can close quicker, right? At the beginning, the reason I say it's going to depend on you is because on the hard money, if you have an LLC or a company set up, they're going to loan it based on the asset. On the bank, they're going to scrutinize your credit score. They're going to look at you guys and underwrite you more like a traditional financing, or they're going to make you guarantor either way, but they're going to look at you more so as the financee. Does that make sense? So it makes it a little harder, but I use them both, and depending on the deal and depending on how I need to structure. Yeah. If I knew I could get off the property and I could close it faster with hard, then I would buy the property with hard money all day long. And I have those resources pre-lined up to go hunting before I shop for deals or simultaneous to me for shopping for deals. Does that make sense? So I want to have all these tools in my tool belt. There's no wrong answer for your question. It's going to depend on where you can literally get started. If you have no deals. And if you have, then you're going to start choosing what tool you use in the field depending on the deal. That's it. That's how it works. There's private money. Did somebody raise their hand? I'm losing my mind. What? Private money? So private money is literally Ted. Ted loans me 100 grand. Edwin loans me 100 grand. I go purchase these deals. And there's multiple ways to do that. There's two ways that I like to do it. And there's really the only two good ways to do it in real estate. You can raise private money, and I only suggest you do the first one when you become more advanced. So you raise private money and you put it on what's called a promissory note. A promissory note literally means, I promise I'll pay you back. That's literally what it means, a promissory note. It's a legal document that you gave me 100 and I promise to pay you, and it has the terms written in it. So usually it's like 12% interest or whatever we negotiated after you gave me your money. I pay it's annualized 12% interest or whatever it is, and then we have the option to reinvest at the end of the year. So that means all the monies will come due at the end of our term. Does that make sense? So that's one way to do it. The second way to do it, and the downfall to that is you can't go use that money. If you go use that money for like a rehab on a certain, it's all spread out and stuff, there's almost no way to recapture that revenue. There's no way to me to repay you back unless I go out and make another 100 grand to pay you, which is a jam. You can put yourself in a real jam that way. Does that make sense? But if you raise the money and you go and make them, let's say I purchase this property, let's say Edwin gave me 100, or I would only raise, for this type of deal, I would probably only raise 80 grand for this one. I'd have Edwin would give me 80 grand, I'm gonna bring you on this deal, and what I do is I purchase it with his, I rehab it with his, and then once I sell them, I pay Edwin, and there's so many ways to pay him back. There's ways I could pay him in a percentage, there's ways that I could pay him and cut him into the deal on the exit, right? I have 30K here, in an ideal. Let's say I only have 20K at the end of after the commissions and the closings. I can pay Edwin a percentage of that, 20K. So he gave me 80 and he maybe walked with, let's say, and 50% would be 10. But that would get me into the deal. Now that's not super sexy. You're like, I work for 10 grand. What if the reputation builds up so that you can go get your own, that you can start doing this? That's what's important. So that's why I always say there's so much money out there. The money's out there, but the deals are what's going to be harder to find. Those are the ways that I like to do it. Do you think of any other ways? Buying, but we'll dive into that over here on seller finance.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So another thing that will kind of help if you're starting off is, on my second, he wanted to get rid of the house. I bought it from him.
Okay.
And he needed to get rid of it within 7 to 14 days, so 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I went out there and looked at it, I kind of worked my numbers, and I can kind of use a little bit of leftover material, put as much money into this one, and keep my costs low enough to where I could offer him more, and the small bank to where I didn't have to use any money.
Gotcha.
Offer him more than what somebody had offered him to close in 2 weeks, so he was okay with me.
It's for you to buy it for more.
So I bought it from him.
Exactly, because that's a negotiation tactic. Yeah. And so what he's, just in his example, is he bought this property for 60, but he knew it was only going to cost him because he had extra material from the last job, and he had a guy that was willing to do the work for cheaper. That's why it's, right, for what you know and how you can finagle it and going back to finding it. So when people are, what's the deal? Like, you got to trust the math. It's just the math. And the math starts on understanding what the property is going to be worth. It's a moving target based on the, so you have to conservatively underwrite it. Underwrite means run your numbers, right? But when we're doing affordable housing, it's a lot less risky because we're talking about property that's more affordable to the masses. Yeah, this will parlay. Does anybody have any questions on fix and flip so far? The objective of this model and this fix and flip model right now is to make, if you were to sell the property right now, going back to our other scenario, either it's the same math. If you were to sell the, you're going to make the gross revenue, okay? Depending on your closing, depending on how you listed it, all that. Who in here would impact your life like this, right? Like make a big difference. That's one fucking deal in Oklahoma at this price, right? Like, it can be done. I would rather you spend 6 months to find the deal that has these numbers than go buy the wrong deal and maybe make $2,000 and work your ass or pay into to sell it. But the point is, like, so many people, and I did the same thing at the beginning, I need to own, because I was building, so I had to activate, but I need to own rentals. Rentals are going to be the next step in what we're going to go into, but let's just say this property, and I'm going to look it up just so you guys real numbers. I'm going to look it up on a mortgage calculator right in front of you. So on this property, if you guys want to, I'm going to give you a super hack. This is worth your whole, whatever you spent to get here. This is called Carl's Mortgage Calculator. Download this app. It's free with a K. K-A-R-L-S. It is amazing. I've used this thing for years. And you'll underwrite deals faster than anybody on the planet. You can look at inputs, and I'll show you why AMs are important in a minute. This deal right here. Let's say market interest rate right now is 8%. Let's say we get it on a 30-year loan, because I have connections for 30-year loans for anybody over here that needs them. So 30 years, I think we just paid 7.25, so I'll pay 7.25 on interest rate. So we got 70K, right? We got 7.25 interest here. A 30-year loan. Okay? The reason we're going to do this is if we had to keep it as a rental, this is just not the taxes and insurance. The payment is $477.52. What we'll do in this scenario that makes it easy and kind of do off, this is my backhand Kentucky windage math, is like $100 for insurance and $100 for taxes. It kind of gives me a rough idea on this size property. You could fudge it and go whatever your market's calling for, but let's say it's 200. This is how I underwrite quick. 677.52, that's my payment, monthly payment, projected monthly payment, right? And so on this type of deal, right, we could rent let's say this house realistically for the price, purchase price and stuff, let's say it's a month. I'm not even gonna try to do the math, yo. You guys already did it in your head, I'm sure. So that's $323 a month in positive cash flow. How many of these is it gonna take you to retire? And then how? Yeah, exactly my point. Yeah, I'm not advocating for you guys can do this in 4 houses. I'm advocating for the opposite side of the realistic side that I'm teaching you. Is that it's a lot harder to retire on that than you think because you just said it. What about the vacancies? What about literally, we've had to deal with it. You guys are both helping us on some of our properties in Oklahoma. People coming in and stealing the fucking copper and AC units while it was vacant for 2 months. Like, it happens in these areas. Yeah, you laughing. He's and so, my point, this is my whole point to this. I'm bringing it back home, all right? $323. Hold on. Ready? This is math for Marines. You guys laugh. It would take me 92 months to make the $30,000. Right now, or the $323 a month that you hope you make. That's if you make that. It's a long. Yes. But what I'm going to show you, and the reason that this is still good, is because like it's important right now. Like if you're in the beginning phases of this, and the cash would impact your life, a lot of hands went up more than the $323. Then you need to turn it. You need to sell it. You need to move on. You need to take the cash and keep moving, keep going. Don't worry so much about the little like capital gains and asset protection. Just fucking make the money. Let's go. Like you gotta get off high center and overthinking a lot of these little things that so many people get in their head because there's so much information out there. All this fear, you know? So let's rip it, let's sell it, let's get it, and we'll solve the problem when we get there. It's kind of what I told you guys about right? If we got a tax, good, we did something right? Then now we have to solve the tax problem. We're gonna go over here and hold property, okay? So does everybody understand all this? We're tracking? Cool? I'm gonna keep moving. I'm gonna move right into holding property. I think I'm on schedule too. Yep, on the dot, on dot. 1:30, it's 1:29. And I'm gonna leave some of this math up here because it ties right into it. So, let's say we can't sell it, okay? Cannot sell the property and make the 30 grand like we wanted to make. Well, the market's stuck. What am I doing, Austin? I'm paying this payment. You got me into these fix and flips. You sold me on this bullshit. You told me it was gonna make me rich. Here I am. Here we go. So I had to solve that problem. We gotta solve that problem. Since we got into we have a contingency play, and the contingency play is we're gonna refinance the property and hold it on longer term debt and rent the property, just like we did here. I literally did the math right here on what the payment would be. And you're still cash flowing. Like I shit on this a minute ago, but the reality is if you can do this and move it over, and then you can get another one, then you need to keep your business going. That's the most important part for anybody that's an entrepreneur in here. Like the most important is keep the business going. Like you're playing the game, the objective is to keep playing the game and not sit there, oh, I'm gonna wait till this one sells and then I'm gonna get another one. You got a contingency plan. If it didn't sell within 90, 120, we have another option, refinance, cover that, get a tenant to pay it, and then find another fix and flip where you can make the 30 grand. Or keep going until you can peel them off and into a market. We're getting ready to go into spring. The last 3 months have been pretty dog shit because nobody wants to sell or move or buy when we're going to Thanksgiving, Halloween, when the elections were coming up. People are very stagnant for the last 3 months. It's just common. It's real estate cycles. The real estate cycles move pretty quick, especially when we have the affordable housing crisis problem. Yeah.
So if you bought that and couldn't sell it, and can you take, now that you own it, can you take, like you'd have an equity or whatever else?
Bingo.
Can you refinance to take that money to buy your next?
No, but on this specific, you can't because the bank's only going to loan you 70% of the value of the property. And so they're only going to loan you this in this scenario. Does that make sense? And so they're essentially going to pay off, let's say you had a hard money loan. They would pay that off. The hard money loan gets paid off, and then you have a new loan now for the same, probably a little more on a 30-year loan at 7.25% interest, 8%. But what this allows you to do, the real key here is being able to keeping solution-oriented, is kind of what we talked about earlier. And when you're solution-oriented, this isn't a bad deal. Most of y'all probably wanted to get into rentals before you wanted to fix and flip anyway. So you're not a bad play. And there's benefits to owning property. I'll tell you something, when you're owning this property for these specific, you're gonna have maintenance issues and stuff, and a lot of times this cash flow is not gonna be near as sexy as you think it is. But one of the biggest benefits to this is if we have high income earners, or you guys are making a killing in your other business, or even people that are making a decent income, and you guys gotta, even if you hold this, you have multiple benefits to it, okay? I'm gonna show you. You have pay down. Pay down is where the tenant is paying the payment down. Now you've got someone covering the debt. Like literally, you don't have to worry about this payment anymore. That payment that once stressed you out because you couldn't sell it, you got somebody in it, boom, you refied it. At least you're getting the payment paid. Cool. I don't even think about it. We're good. Payment pay down. You have appreciation and equity. Depreciation, but I have a good one, and you need one. But depreciation is essentially the fact that the government says in the tax code that this property is going to go down in value over a period of time, and so they're going to give you a write-off for the loss of monies that you are going to obtain by owning this property over that course of period of time. Does that make sense? So, the property is going to be worth more in 10 years. I know. That's literally what the government is creating a loophole for you because they have a problem. When people get mad about like people that pay zeros, or you heard Trump like when he was with Hillary, I don't pay taxes, I'm smart, like that. Like the reality, the reason that that's there is to guide investors and people to change the economy and to change the markets. They're giving you that benefit because it's helping what their agenda is in the United States. Like it's not a bad thing. You're not stealing from anybody. It's not like somebody's stealing from the tax. I mean, fucking politicians are stealing from all of us. But that's a whole other subject. But my point is like that's depreciation. So if you were to have this property and it's sitting and you made whether it was your own, you're gonna have a tax deduction because you owned this. First I rehabbed our office in Oklahoma and 3,300 square. I think I bought it, I can't remember, round numbers, like 350, and I rehabbed it and it priced for like 450, just rough numbers. And I did a cost segregation study. It's called a cost seg. You guys may have heard of them. The cost segregation study is basically forcing the depreciation into one. And they go in, and your CPA can connect you with somebody like that. And I got like enforced depreciation in that one cost seg study. So if I had a tax problem that year, Austin now has a zero tax problem. So Austin actually kept just by buying his office. And that's what real estate does for you. It puts more money back in your pocket. So not a bad contingency plan, right? Like not a bad play. Like this will work. And what happened to us is that we did this, and we literally, this is what we did. And if we couldn't sell it, we'd move it to rental, and then we'd do another one and another 3, and we'd sell 2, and we'd keep 1 as a rental, and then we'd keep 2 as a rental and flip 2, and then we started doing what I'm going to show you here in a minute, which is creative, which will be the last hour of it. But the benefit of holding property is really more so along these things right here. Not to mention, this is huge. This is something I have realized, but I don't feel anybody ever talks about. When you're, how many of you own your own? You own your own company? Okay, entrepreneurs, good. So what happens is you guys are trying to write off as much, right? Just like me. I don't want to pay all these taxes. It's crazy. You gotta have expenses. And what happens when you do that? It's hard to get loans because they say you make 0. Yep. So you're zeroed out. I show 0 money. We can add back in a little bit, Mr. But I don't know about all that. That's just how it, bro. Okay, but what this does when you get this machine, when you build up this repertoire of houses, is over a period of, you just say you took down 20 of them. You had 20 of these properties, and for round numbers, it's $20 million in property, right? Well, that's $1 million a piece. It's not that. It would be less than that. It'd be $2 million. $2 million in property. So, and you owed the 70% of the first one, but it took you 5 years to do that. So on the first ones that you probably owe closer to, right? You've paid them down. The tenants have been going and paying them down. What I'm trying to show you guys is like over a period of your balance, the sheet that shows like you own a freaking city block like we do sometimes. Like you own 10 houses on the same, or you own 4 houses in this area that you may have never, like where we've gotten to, like they're going to say, they're looking at the numbers. They're looking at, he owns all these homes. They're looking at the left column, shows how much debt I have on them. They're looking at the right column, shows which market value is on them. And what they're looking at is the equity, which we talked about between these two. On a scale, they're going to be like, Mr. You can buy a G-Wagon, no problem, with 0 money down. And so now you're bankable in a different way because your credibility is in your balance sheet and your credibility is not on how well you pay your fucking bills from your credit score. And that's the difference. And that's how big money is made, and that's how it is because they don't need to go do their credit score. They have a shitload of assets or a business that's their asset that makes so much damn money that they can loan against it like that and text somebody to get the money. And so the truth, like the more money, the easier it gets. It's crazy. It's a horrible hack. At the beginning, you've got to carve your way out of it, though. And it is. It really is. And there's money right now. Like we can't get loans that BlackRock gets. It's right. BlackRock is going to get a freaking 2% interest rate less than us in buying a home so they can pay more for the house. And they're going to keep it for 4 or 5, put it in a REIT, and sell it to every asshole that wants to buy the piece of paper, and then they're going to turn the properties. It's just, I know I'm talking a little bit, a big talk about it, but that's just how it works. Does anybody have any questions on buying, holding property and some of these? Let's dive into them if you got questions. Nothing?
Do you want to do both? You want to hold and flip?
Yes, you do. And the reason you do is because one's that call what I call it active income, what Chris Rood, a buddy of mine, he calls fast money, faster money, right? We're talking fix and flips are really this kind of stuff we're looking to do. We're talking like 2 to 6 months to get a return. That's pretty quick, fast money. Boom, boom, boom. Let's get them out there. Let's get them out there. And then this is holding property is long money, but it's a good play because if I go make flipping 4 properties that make me 50 grand, 200, I don't want to pay X amount of dollars depending on your tax bracket taxes. So if I were to flip 4 properties and I were to acquisition and hold millions, and they want you to do that. That's how it works. It's literally the codes that are written. So does anybody have any questions on that? That was a good question. You want to do both. You really want to do both. The benefit to the holding the property too is like Alicia and I, coming up next year, we're looking at right now potentially selling 36 units. Take the money out because you sold them because you created equity and you bought them to a banker. Why? Because you now have an asset that has equity that you created. You now have an income producing asset is what they're looking at. And so once I realized that, I was like, oh, dude, just get more and more. So that's where the real value in holding property is. It really is. It's not about what I thought too, which was I can make $10,000 passive and then I'm living on the beach wherever I want. It's not really about that. You know what I'm saying? What? Are you laughing because we're here? Shit, it worked! But that's not what got me here, explain for sure. But, you know what I'm saying? So the rips, these impact you more. But you need to hold the property because you need to keep some of this cash before you get robbed blind by it. Does that make sense? Yeah. I can take off the table because I want to inject it into this market. Does that make sense? I'm literally like a return. What am I going to make, you think? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Oh, so I'm not doing like a cap or anything like that. A volume, not on those. No, because you have to think, I have some cash stuck into those deals, but most of them were created just like this. So if I sell these deals, let's just, for example, say I make $1 million off the table, and I sold the deals, and I had $200,000 of my own money stuck into those deals, created that money while it was getting paid down, right? Came out of thin air, literally just created the money. Well, how did I do it? Because I added value to the properties that I purchased. Here, a lot of people out here that you guys, we talked at the table, some of you guys have property that you've owned in California and the appreciation rate's so good that you have equity in your homes. And if that equity's sitting there, it's dead money. And so if it can cash out of it and take that money and multiply it and to divest it into more assets to continue to keep going, and then that snowballs from $1 million to 2 to 5 to 20 to 30, whatever it is, if you keep investing in it. It's a game, but the objective at that point would be like you pull that off the table to not pay the taxes on it, right? You don't have to do the tax, so you have another problem. Like us, we'll have another problem, but why would I sell my properties at the beginning of next year and not right now? Because I don't want to close on them because of taxes. Yeah, I said that exactly. Yeah, I'm trying to pay. I don't have a short period of time for capital gains. I want to sell them in January 2nd so that I have a whole year to go buy some more real estate. And if I have a whole year, I can go turn around and do a cost segregation study on a house I bought in San Diego County as a flip and kept. Yeah. You can buy commercial. But the cool thing about it, and I'm going to try not to get off subject or blast you guys with fire hose of information. The cool thing about it, the objective, what happens is you get to a level like, just for example, say I pull $1 million off, right? I'm going to keep that, and then I'm going to go borrow private money to buy all the other houses. Because I'm buying them at a discount, I can do the same deal. I'm just going to do private money. So now I'm hanging on to my cash. I'm using other people's cash to do the deals. Does that make sense? I'm used to it. I just don't want it working in this deal. So usually I'll keep running it and doing in other deals, divesting and growing in other businesses. Sometimes you do need to use it. You need to use it on your deal. Like sometimes a good pops up, then boom, you have the liquidity to do so. But you really want to be on standby with having some liquidity like that when you get to that point. Have to wait. The only reason I could do this situation is because of my experience and because of my education, because I've done this, right? Couldn't raise millions of money in private money if I had no background history of doing any of this. And so sometimes at the beginning, some people want to go and raise money. I got this guy, I was like, you gotta be really careful if you don't have, it's a loaded gun. It can be a loaded gun. It can help you accelerate you, but it can also destroy you. But does that make sense? Any questions on any of that? Yeah. If I sold, I'd have all year to buy something else. It's a 1031 exchange. I could do a 1031 exchange. The downfall, and I've never done one, so just caveat, I've never done one, but I know all what they are, is essentially, who doesn't know what a 1031 exchange is? Raise your hand. Okay, if I were to sell this portfolio and I was gonna get $1 million, what I can do is do what's called a 1031 exchange, and I can find on capital gain on 1031 exchanges. And so essentially you used to be able to get 100% tax deduction, but every year since they made I think it was in 21 or 20, they made it to where each year it's like 70%. And so they're trying to phase the 1031 exchange out to where investors can't keep kicking the can down the road, because you think this scale's crazy. Think about the investors that are trading $300 and $400 million at this scale without paying taxes. And so that's where a lot of the other parties are like, well, they should be paying taxes. But the reality is, if you want them to pay, the taxes are probably less than what the economics are of moving the real estate if you keep these guys going. Does that make sense? Yeah. For me? Yeah. So they don't care if it's my money or if it's your money. It's my asset and title. And so if I keep my $1 million and I have the property, I don't care if it's debt or anything like that. Does that make sense? On a 1031, let me be very clear. On a 1031, when he asked about, you have to do it within a time restraint. You don't have to do a 1031. No. What you do is you're going to realize the capital gains, right? You're going to realize that you're going to have the tax problem, but you have a whole year to mitigate the tax problem. That's why you have a professional CPA or a financial person that you can get with. 1031 to 90 days. Yeah, 1031. Yeah, it is. You would get taxed, but if you're also buying a bunch of real estate at the same time, you still have to make a decision by the end of that year. So yes, technically on paper, I will get capital gains on that sale, but over here I make a loss, and so it's all the same. as long as I have strategized that correctly throughout this process.
So if I was just keeping it, obviously, I'm screwing myself.
If you just went the cash and you never bought anything else, you screwed yourself. 100%. Yeah. Well, why would you go buy more assets if you learn how to, if you do this? There's literally no reason not to buy it. You know, you're for deals the whole entire year at 50%, and if you can find something through the whole year, I don't see any problem with parlaying it and doing it again. Yeah, I don't time restraint. And then the purchase price. Then the way I think about it, and I've never done one, but the way I think about a 1031 is like, I don't like just make a decision to purchase something, but big corporations and companies will purchase stuff at a higher price because they need to parlay their money into something else. So they'll overpay in a market. Like you'll have a 1031 guy that'll come and overpay for maybe he's my portfolio. He'll overpay for my portfolio with his 1031 exchange to mitigate paying the taxes. He just needs it. He's a time horizon, you know, and I want to do. But he may not be. He may be the type of investor where he's not going to go. He doesn't want to. It's maybe such a big amount of real estate that he can't go and you can mitigate $1 million, you know, situation. Maybe not be able to mitigate a $300 or a $30 or a $20 million situation. Does that make sense? To go buy that much of depreciation would be a lot of work. So that's why the 1031's there. A 1031 on a smaller level doesn't make sense to me. I've heard a lot of people do it. I turned 31 this anything over to this thing, and I'm like, oh, I don't know why. I don't know. You have essentially you're gonna yes, it's just doesn't make sense. Like you're putting it in a specific type of 1031. That's why it's called that. To mitigate the taxes, and it's perfect, it's kosher, whatever. But and the scenario is it's basically like I'm gonna stop now. I would receive the taxes, but if I sold some stuff, lots more real estate, then I wouldn't. Oh, let's go, baby. Yeah, I got you. Does this make sense? Anybody have any questions about any of this? I could probably go on and on. I think I had like 3 different thoughts in my head, but I don't want to get too down a rabbit hole. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to cover on any of this. Is there any questions, any concerns? Nothing? I know a lot. Like it is processing a lot. It is. Yeah, I'm trying. It's pretty deep. But we're about to go deeper, so prepare to go to the deep end. All right. I'm serious. You guys should. If there's no dumb question, if you feel it's a lot to process, what is it that you need to process? I want to go through that. We have all the time.
Is there like a percentage that you have, like where you like money profit before like you reinvest in your real estate?
No. You have liquidity. Like I would keep liquidity on hand, but like if you're living and stuff, then set aside, put it in a different account. One thing I would say that I like to do and I have been good at is decompartmentalizing accounts. So you can kind of like putting and having a business account and having a savings account and those kind of things. And then what happens when you end up running multiple businesses and you have multiple different assets is you end up having like 15, 20 different, because the people want you to open a bank account with us to get a loan and do this thing. And so it just keeps growing. But no amount of money, it's going to depend on you and how much money you have. And you just don't want to starve the growth. I would keep it down and keep laying it down until you actually get to a point where you want to pull some chips back off the table and play with the house's money. I mean, it's literally how I think about it. So, yeah, it's just, and it gets to be a game the more and more you do it. What was your question? Because I have a timeline, I have a whole entire year to mitigate my tax burden.
2024, I have until December.
Yeah, concept's the same. It's the same concept, so. Does that make sense? No, those. Renting versus owning. This is off topic of this, but we glossed over it a minute with, I think we talked about it, Jacob, a minute ago privately, and then just in general, and we've talked about it many times, renting versus owning, pros and cons. We talked about a lot of people have equity in their home right now after 2020, especially if they've been out here, they have more equity from appreciation. Maybe they have money sitting into the properties that they own. And so I want to touch a little bit on that. Owning has made me a lot of money too. So, right, I rent this home now, but that's because of where I'm at right now. But owning property has made me a lot of money and owning my own. But that's because I built my own property as a builder. So for the average person, and I'll even go back to Oklahoma specifically, if you're paying a retail price, and what I see a lot is people that are getting their first home, or I talk to a lot of veterans, and they'll talk about an FHA or a VA style loan, which I've had a VA loan. The downfall to those loans is they are a small percentage down. Right? You would say, downfall, what are you talking about? Dude, I only had to put $5,000 down, I only put $10,000 down, whatever it is. But the problem with that is it's volatile, because if the market does shift in a negative manner and it goes down, then you're upside down in the properties. So that means you owe more on the property than it's worth. So a lot of times at the beginning, the question I get is, dude, I'm a veteran, I saw you on this podcast, I want to get into these properties with my VA loan. And is it always a bad thing? No, it's not always a bad thing, but I can't tell you what the market's going to do. And so in some situations, you could get really lucky. Let's say you were out here in the Marine Corps and then you bought property 5 years ago with your VA loan. Well, think about the appreciation rate of the last 5 years. You would think that you did the best thing in the world and it was amazing. But if you bought property in freaking 2006 and 2007 with your VA loan and it dropped and got cut in half and you can't sell the property, you'd be super pissed and think it was the worst idea because you have little money into the deal. So equity is essentially the float that manages whether or not what your asset's worth and how much risk you're actually taking. Does that make sense? So when you go in and use an FHA loan or a VA loan and you have a small percentage down to get into this deal, why do you think when you get those type of loans that they ask for so many different types of paperwork and documentation and signings? Because they're taking a lot of risk on you. They want to see steady income. A lot of times they want to see what you're doing. Like I said, I joked about your firstborn's blood sample. So understanding debt, when to use debt, how to leverage debt, what type of debt is probably one of the most instrumental things to making you successful or fail. And I say that because people will be like, well, what's a deal at the beginning? How do you get a deal? What's a deal? You hear that all the time. Well, a deal is going to depend on what kind of debt and how you're purchasing the property and what position you're in life. And how much. We talked about tax havens a second ago. If you have a big tax problem and you could 1031 and pay more for a property but not have to pay a couple million in taxes, it's a deal, right? But you're overpaying for a property, so it wouldn't be a deal for me. So it depends on where you're at. And then the debt side of understanding debt, which is huge, is I can make a deal depending on what kind of debt I can get. I think I talked to a few of you guys a second ago talking about specific lenders. I'm able to get on hard money. With my reputation, I can get 100% purchase price and 100% rehab costs. So that means as long as I buy the deal at 75% below value and after my rehab cost, I can get 100% financing on that because I've done so many deals because they give me a big guidance line of credit. But is it good debt? Yeah, that's good debt, understanding it. So, and then parlaying that into long-term debt and holding the property. I also have lenders and loans where I can get 30-year fixed loans. So fixed on commercial loans are what we're talking about today. So I'll go back. A personal mortgage, which you guys may have your home on and things like that, is a personal mortgage. It's a mortgage. A conventional loan is also more of a mortgage. And their underwriting is different, meaning how they scrutinize you guys that take these loans out. And they're not scalable. I think the legal limit is 10 per person. So a lot of people, like real estate investor people out here, will buy property and they'll try to accumulate 10 of those because it's a low percentage of money down type of loan a lot of times. And what they'll do is they'll stay not married so that I can get 10 and she can get 10 properties. And then even you could parlay that and get duplexes and so you could get 20 units and you're like, wow, that's pretty good. And it's not a bad play, but you got to be careful if you only have this much equity into the deal, a little bit of equity into the deal.
Is that a 10-house limit? Is that a federal thing like everywhere?
It's just for those type of mortgages, yes. It's for a personal mortgage. So when you go get a personalized mortgage based on Austin Hancock, and you get these specific types of financing where you get the best interest rate, you get the best fixed term with no prepayment penalty, like what you'd buy your primary residence with, yes, those are federally mandated because of that. And it's not scalable, it's not a business model, so they're separate. When you do it with your business, now you have a commercial loan. A commercial loan is essentially what we've been talking about. And so you're using your LLC to purchase this, and people will say, well, isn't there a limit to that? Because they know what I just previously said. And I said, there's no limit to it. You can accumulate as many as you freaking want, as you can gobble up and handle from a cash flow and movement side. Does anybody have any questions on that? Because that's something that I get a lot of, and I think I should have covered a little bit a minute ago. No? Cool. Do what? Rates are different. So on mortgages, what you guys are typically seeing a lot of times is you're seeing what a mortgage is. Like if you see on the internet or you see this stuff spit around, it's usually 2 points above prime or whatever. Prime is basically what the feds are selling the banks the money for at. And so how many points above the money they get. So the feds essentially have money, right? The federal government, the Fed, the federal banking system. And then institutional banks loan money from them. So if the feds are at a 4% interest rate and they're 2 points above the prime interest rate, that means that they're selling interest or money at 6%. That's how money works. Everything is debt. Once we got off the gold standard in the 1970s, nothing's backed by anything but debt. And so that's why debt in general is a powerhouse if you use it correctly. If you go pay off all your properties, let's say Alicia and I want to pay off all of our properties and you wanted to be Dave Ramsey. You could. It's not a bad thing, but you're still going to pay taxes and you're still going to have insurance. And then now you have no tax. You're going to probably pay more taxes because when you close those out, those properties are going to be evaluated and they're going to be worth more. One more thing that's huge. This is a big hack, I think. We'll go into it. I'm in my own head thinking about how I wanted to talk about it. So let's take our scenario earlier and let's say the $50,000. And let's say that we only had $10,000 in rehab. And so we're all in, 60K. Let's say this property is still at the ARV of 100K. Everybody tracking? So now we're at 60% loan to value. You could do what's called a cash out refinance on this property, and you could get the loan that I talked about earlier and refinance the property, and you could take a 70% we talked about LTV loan on it. We'll call it a cash out. Cash off the table. Actually, we were on the call the other day. Who was on that call with the banker? You guys? So he said he'll do 75% cash out. Do you remember that term? Yeah, so he said 75% cash out. So that means that lender, when I refinance this property, will give me $75,000 as long as it appraises for the $100,000. So now I'm gonna walk on a new loan with 75K, but you're saying, Austin, your old loan was only 60K. You did it all in for 60K, right? Now these numbers, like I said, they could be blown up. We could add zeros to them and talk about this county. We could adjust these numbers, but this is just for round numbers for your concept. Cool? So what's the difference in the 60? 15, right? These are little numbers, but I want you to understand that this scales big time. So this is $15,000, but now how much do I owe on this property? Somebody tell me. 75 grand. Now I did a cash out refinance and I walked away from the closing table with 15 grand. But I still owe the bank that 15 grand because I added it to the 60, right? That 15 grand that I put in my pocket when I cashed out refi is non-taxable because it's debt. It's basically money. And so what a lot of investors will do is you can do this, add zeros to this, literally. Add 2 zeros to it. And you do cash out refinances. And so when you have a portfolio, for instance, let's just say I owned 10 million in real estate and I only owed 50% debt because of the scenario I showed you guys just in this room today. So now you owe 50% debt on your 10 million. 3-4 years from now, interest rates go back down to 3.5% or 4% on the commercial loan side. And you guys can do what's called a cash out refi at 70%. As you scoop up $2 million off the table that's tax free, and you keep buying more real estate and your payment doesn't change because the interest rate's so low, the cash flow is still the exact same. Do you see how this game gets played on a scale? Yeah. As far as what? I won't work with lenders that do seasoning periods, but I just don't, being restrained. But some lenders require what's called a seasoning period. And a seasoning period means that you have to hold the property for a certain period of time before you can refinance it. So some lender, for instance, like they'll be like, you own this asset for more than 6 months. You need to hold it for 6 months before I'm going to refi it for you. I don't work with lenders like that. So and you won't either, you know. But they're trying to do is make sure that you can pay your bills. And at the beginning, a lot of times, there's a lot of those small lenders. Well, I erased it, but the small lenders, they talk about it. They will require some more seasoning periods and stuff like that. But my point to this is I wanted you just guys to understand we're only talking about $15,000 cash out, but you have your portfolio, you know, for the next 15 years. That's why we talked this morning about what's our 10-year goal, because real estate is a longer play when it comes to this, and you literally can have $10 million if you choose to start applying this concept to a certain level. This concept's no different than commercial. Yeah.
The smaller banks, are they going to allow that, or is it going to be more like a personal, you get your 10?
Any commercial loan's going to be through an entity. And you want to set it up that way at first. You really want to have a company no matter what, because what that's going to allow you to do if you don't have a company is now you're going to enter the world of being a real estate investor, and you're going to be able to get tax deductions. You're going to buy, if you have a personal car, that's your car you go check property with. If you have a hat, like I joked about earlier, then that's your swag. If you buy shirts and clothes because you go meet people on the job site, then you can potentially write that off on your taxes. All your computer, your work bag, your Louis Vuitton, if you're carrying your backpack in it, technically you could probably, there's a gray area to write all that off on your taxes. And so as an entrepreneur or a business owner, when you own that LLC, the way your taxes are done is different than if you're an employee or a 1099 person, right? You guys that are entrepreneurs already know that. You guys are taxed at the bottom on what you actually made if you make anything, which we joked about a minute ago, instead of being taxed at the very beginning because the government essentially is punishing you up front. But I get it. Any other questions? Did somebody else have a question? I just wanted to kind of talk over debt, and I wanted to talk about this scenario in general because in certain markets, right when I got started, you could almost take cash out refinances if you did rehabs correctly right when you bought the property. You could rehab the property, and we've done it. The bank would give us money back. We got to a point where we were like, we don't want the money back Not that we had a shitload of money, but I just didn't want to raise my debt. I knew that it was more important for me to keep my total portfolio debt service coverage ratio lower. So when the fucking bank looks at me on my P&L and my balance sheet, they say, oh, Austin has 10 million in assets and he only owes 60%. That does look good. If they see that I'm bouncing off the top all the time and that my payment's really close to what my rent rate is, it's more volatile. And you guys would know that, you'd feel it. But I did want to say like that the other play to this is you don't have to sell them, which is another scenario we talked about, Aaron. You don't have to sell them all. If you hold them long enough and you want to keep those assets, a lot of times we end up wanting to trade. That's a much more advanced conversation, but we wanted to like into a different asset class or we want to do something else. But if you wanted to be a single family investor and just keep scaling your portfolio after you get to 100 or whatever, you could just simply refinance the properties and you could take some of that cash back off the table. And that's what I want you guys to think about on a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan. For some of you guys are pretty young, you could think that far ahead, maybe 30 years. That the stuff you're doing right now can ultimately make you millions of dollars in the future because we all know, hands down, without a shadow of a doubt, that property will go up in value over the next 30 years, with the next 20 years, the next 10 years, it's almost guaranteed, right? So, point being, when it does go up in value, that's what you're receiving. And then as they get paid down in debt gets paid down, you're creating the spread even more and more and more. And so you can just pull money off the table. You have buddies that do apartments, and they take all of their money and they buy these apartments. They do a lot of wholesaling and flipping, and they'll do the concept of buying these apartments as multifamily. They'll rehab the whole thing unit by unit. They'll do the parking lot and all this, and then they'll immediately do a cash out refinance, usually in the first 1 to 2 years. And they'll essentially pull a couple million out of it, and it's debt. And then what they do is, so they bought the new building. They made a bunch of money in fix and flip and wholesale. They bought the real estate. They renovated it. They cashed out, refied the property after they renovated it because it's all rented out now. We took it from 60% vacancy to 100% vacancy. All the rooms are new. It went from $1,000 a month to $1,200 a month. You guys are getting it? You can do this in a single family portfolio. And what they do is they cash out, refi. They go pull more debt. They live off the $1 million a year, and then they pay zero taxes because they have the deductions on the building. It works. There's different ways to do this. There's different games. There's different levels to this game. Is that crazy or what? It's cool, huh? That's why I learned concept of what I just explained to you guys. I was like, I can't afford not to learn this. I can't afford not to do this. I was like, if there's one thing that I do for the rest of my life, if I never educated again, if I never sold anything else again, if I never did any other service business again or anything, real estate, hands down, will make you a multimillionaire on its own. I was joking with somebody else on the phone the other day. I was like, yeah, they were talking about me putting myself on social media, which is great because now I get to meet all you people and stuff like that. And they're like, well, I kind of just I have to do this. I want to be quiet, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, the coolest thing about being a real estate investor is that nobody has to know your name and you can wear sweatpants and be worth you know what I mean? You don't assets. Nobody does anything. You just sign paperwork. You can sign an e-doc too if you never want to leave your house. So there's that. Well, we refinanced 26 properties within the first month we were here. And we had a mobile notary come in and do it. And I took a video of it. So we refied 26. We got a cash out on that too, wasn't it? Yeah. Like 80,000 something. Yeah. So we took cash off the table. We didn't pull a lot. But we got 80,000 that day and cashed out refi right there. So yeah, that's the point. So I'm living proof. I'm telling you it works. If there's anything, I kind of she goes, you're a little doom and gloom on real, but I'm I try to be real with you guys on what could happen and what goes on so that you guys can avoid those mistakes. But the upside of it is it works. It works, man. It'll happen. If you put the work in, if you go forth and do it, real estate can give you the time back. What I just said doesn't take a bunch of time. Check the projects, coordinate the projects. A lot of times when we build our team at the beginning and our fix and flip and the inner circle people know this, I have a whole scenario on it. But you want to build these people, this team, these agents we talked about, these wholesalers, these title companies, all of them have to be employees. Literally be contractors. They own their own businesses. It's a great, and you don't have to have 100 people under you, or you don't have to have a freaking office with a massive sign to make that kind of money. It's some of the people I meet at real estate events that are high level like that, are people you would pass down the street you'd never even think twice about. It's crazy. You may have questions on that before we move to creative finance. Exciting? Yes. Yeah? Kind of mind blown? probably feel cheated like I did. Like you're like, how did I, like I'm working my ass off, I'm paying taxes, I'm doing all these things, and you're like these other dudes, and no wonder these like billionaires are all turning and keep on going and doing, I mean, to understand it at a level, and if you can understand it at the level I just explained it, you're gonna go home and you're gonna start thinking about it or be on the flight, and you're gonna be like, holy shit. I see how these like multi-billion-dollar companies can continue to parlay and do things and et cetera, et cetera. What they'll do on companies too, not to get off tangent, but like you can even, they'll use their company just like I talked about the real estate. They'll go pull loans on, my company makes, here, this is the revenue, this is the profit margin. They can get a line of credit on how much money the company makes. They can use the line of credit to buy property. They'll pay it. I mean, it's just, keeps going. Yeah. Okay, over to creative finance. Creative here. Knows what creative finance is. Does anybody want to answer? All right, Aaron, I'm calling on Aaron.
Creative finance, it's basically structuring a win-win for the buyer and the seller.
Perfect, I love that. And I learned a lot more about creative when I was doing like what you do with wholesale. Like I knew about it, but I applied a lot of it when I was talking directly to the sellers or investors. Yeah, creative finance is what it sounds like. And so creative finance tends to be really common when interest rates are really high. And so, for instance, think of old school bartering and trading. That's what it's about. It's like, why does the bank have to make all this money and you and I are doing deals together, and we want to do a deal together, and we want to come up with terms? Why do I got to pay the fucking bank? That's what sucks. Like, what think about this? And so, I like to use the scenario of like, you have a sub 2 hat on, so it'll work well. It's like a truck. If you gave you a truck, up in high school, and he's like, I'll sell it to you, son, because I want you to learn to understand how to pay me back, and it's 10 grand, and you told your dad you're going to pay X amount of payments over a period of time to pay him back, that's a creative finance deal. It's the same concept with real estate. You can do that. You can title it, you can paper it up, and you can do these transactions. There's homeowners that'll sell you their property creatively. They're like, and there's multiple reasons why. We can dive into it, but it works, and you create a scenario to where it's advantageous for you, it's advantageous for them, like he said. And what I'm talking about specifically is on the creative buy side. We'll get into the creative sell side in a minute. And so you can, let's just give you an example. I bought I bought 10 units, single family, SFR, that's what that means, single family real estate. 10 units. And what I did is I structured it on what's called equal payments. So essentially, if I remember correctly, I bought these 10 properties for $1 million. They're about $100,000 a piece. They were immediate. I knew that I had equity into them, but they also needed work. So they were kind of at that discounted value that we talked about. If I wanted to get them at the discount I needed to in order to get them at more of a wholesale or a fix and flip rate, I really would have needed to purchase these properties closer to like $800,000. But she was willing to give me creative financing terms, and she was going to be the bank, and I didn't have to go get a loan for the properties. I was willing to pay her an extra $200,000, which is what she wanted, as long as she gave me my terms. Does everybody understand that? So there's the purchase price. I'll run this whole scenario. There's the purchase price, and then there's the terms. And these are separate. So the terms are essentially what I owe her a month and how I'm going to pay her back and what interest and if there's interest and how it's done. In this specific scenario, I did equal payments, meaning that I would give her the $1 million, and I took the $1 million and I divided it. I don't remember what I divided it on. You remember? It was 30 years. I divided by 30 years. So I had to pay her back X amount, whatever that is a month, off the top of my head. But she was like, I lived for 30 years. I want my money before 30 years is up. I said, cool. We'll give it to you on balloon payments. And so I did balloon payment. I did a 5-year balloon payment to where she got paid back in 5 years. Well, that means I purchased the properties today. In 5 years, I'll have to pay her all of the payment. Is that tracking? But 30 years from now, on a 30-year amortization, so meaning my payment is much lower. Okay? So that means to one, walk into the deal in cash flow because my payment's low, and it allows me to give her more for the properties because that's what she wants. That's what's important to her, is to make the most amount of money. And it allows me to take title to the properties, meaning I go through a legal closing, I do title, insurance and everything. So I close at a title company in the state of Oklahoma. You can close in an attorney's office in other states. And then I will have to balloon her. A balloon payment means all the debt comes due at 5 years, okay? But I'm not worried about that because I know that I'm immediately going to start, once I have vacancies with these properties, I'm going to renovate them. I'm going to do exactly what I just said about the apartments. I'm gonna go from $1,000 a month, the tenants that she had in there, I'm gonna make it $1,500 a month after I redo the properties. The properties are gonna be worth more than $1 million because I knew the ARV of those properties going in was probably closer to like 1.4. But I was gonna have to put some money into them. And at the year 5, what I'm on my way doing is I'm gonna refinance the properties. And so I'll just use a lender, say, yeah, these are a portfolio of properties. And then she'll get paid off the $1 million and I'll get a loan on the remaining. And I could cash out if I have enough equity into the properties and take money off the table. Does that make sense? And so I was able to do that, and guess what? Guess how many people underwrote me and approved me and all that? 0. He nailed it. 0 people approved any of that. And what I actually did on this specific deal is the closing costs on it at the title company were like 25 grand. I just used private money for that too. My private money gets paid back. Like, that's cool. That works. And I just had the equity in the deal to be able to play it that way. So I literally have 0 money into $1 million or 1.4-ish million dollar worth of property. We created equity. We created cash flow. We have a tax deduction. We have rent pay down with 0 money. Yeah, she was kind of a baddie lady, which is you're gonna get, this wholesaler. She wasn't a super experienced, and so she started to she had me on monthly payments, which is what we agreed to, and then she calls me up and she's like, hey, I don't want you to pay me per month. I was like, fucking A, let's do this. And she goes, I go, what do you want? And then she goes, well, I'd like to get paid at one time because I want a lump sum of money so I can buy another property because my husband and I want to buy more rentals here in another state. I said, okay, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to do a balloon loan for the next 5 years. I want you to stagger them out. Or I think, it was properties a year, 10 properties. She goes, I was like, okay. Ended up being, I think if you split it, let's just call it 150 or whatever it is, the math, and or 300, whatever it is, per property. No, it's 200-ish. So anyways, she wanted that, what's the math? I just confused everyone. My bad, y'all. The point is she wanted to get paid back on 2 properties per year, and she didn't want me to make a monthly payment anymore, but what she wanted was just a lump sum. Because for her, she wasn't thinking about the cash flow. I don't think she needed it. I think she wanted the lump sum so she could go reinvest it.
This unearned equity properties that she inherited from her mother.
Yeah, so she had these properties, so it was free money to her in her mind.
Rewind, the only way we found these deals is because one of her properties was listed on the MLS.
Bingo.
And of course I went into the conversation of well, does she have any other properties? She's like, well, actually, yeah, she does. You have to ask questions, right?
You have to ask questions.
She didn't have them all listed. She only had 1 property listed. Out-of-state seller, didn't want to deal with it, doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, a win-win.
Yep. So that's exactly what I did. I restructured the contract. I called my real estate attorney and said, hey, dude, this lady wanted to freaking pay me to pay her monthly payments. Can you add an addendum on the contract and put it as a lump sum, April, whatever date we decided it on? And so what I do is I just refinance 2 of the properties every single year with a bank after I've rehabbed those properties, and then she gets paid a lump sum, and then I just don't take any more leverage on it. And then essentially, same concept, just in a staggered motion. And the cool thing about that is my cash flow went up like crazy because I have 0 payment. I mean, every one of those properties is paying me thousands a month, but I have no payment to her. Now, at the end of the year, or at the whatever time in the year, April, I have to pay her back on those 2 properties, right? But I just refi it and use debt to do that. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand? It's all real.
I have a question. Do you ever want to throw up because of the debt?
No, honestly, no, it doesn't bother me at all. I get like a baby. You need to know your threshold. Yeah, no more debt. Because the way I see it is if I'm correctly, I literally, you'll hear real estate investors, we talk about this a lot, it's funny. I need 100 million in assets. So they're talking about, they're not talking about paid off properties. So you gotta think debt, I'm telling you, debt is the currency. Debt is how things move. Debt is the way the world moves right now. And so you can't be scared of debt. The people that are scared of debt don't know how debt works, and that's why it was important. That's why it's important. If you guys want to know, ask questions about it. If you're confused about it, you need to understand leverage. There's a reason it's called leverage. It allows you to do more. Think what other, is the bank going to partner with you 70 to 75% and you're going to be able to make millions? Tell me your business plan and I'll jump over to that and let's do it. There's not one. There's why? It's crazy. It's a leverage. Why? Because they know the same thing that I'm teaching you guys today, that property is going to go up in value. They're banking on it. They're literally partnering with you on it. You could tell them to eat shit and they get the properties back. They're literally your partner. So that's huge. What other vehicle is there like that? And that's when I was like, sold. Always in real estate. Always. And people that make a ton of money always end up in real estate too, because they got to put it. They don't even do it because of the cash flow. They're doing it for the tax deductions and the parking there, because they're hedging inflation. Because what happens now is, like, let's say over the course of, I don't even know how many years, but the average inflation lately has been like almost 8%. So you had $1 million in liquidity, you're losing 8% annually on that $1 million of liquidity of cash. But if you had that money buried into assets, you're gaining value. And so what you do, what I said just a minute ago, is that you take your cash so that you can be flexible and nimble. You know, I wouldn't take all cash off the table, but I would take enough for yourself to keep back in the case of an emergency, because what happens is the more debt you do get, the more things you do, the more that $10,000 looks like $1 and $100,000 looks like $1. Because, like, you just have so much. You're right. Like, when your monthly and your assets are 6 figures, you know, and you have more liquidity on hand. So that's really what it was. Somebody asked me, like, what would you do with your money? It's like the machines, you have to provide more juice for the machine just in case it needs it. But the debt itself doesn't scare me. It would scare me if it was, you know what's debt me more is probably like a non-cash or break-even debt. I'll tell you what scares me more, like a VA loan at 5% or 0% down that I have to pay for the payment. That scares me more. Why? Because I have to go work this job to pay for that bill, and I have no way to escape my life to make more money. That's where most people get stuck. That's the most scary debt there is, to me. Think about that. That's where a lot of people get stuck. That's scary debt. Not when you have 50 million in assets and you owe, 40 or 35. What that proves, for the most part, not everybody, but for 99% of people, is that you learned how to get there. You have a lot of experiences to go from 0 to 50 million when you're doing property, right? And so nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take away the knowledge that you guys walk away with today. That's what's huge. Nobody can take away that little creative finance thing. If that spawns one thought in your guys' head when you're buying the next property, you're thinking about it. Alicia and I we've talked. I won't say I'll never buy property here in California. I probably will. We won't get a traditional mortgage ever again. I mean, I just don't really benefit in it unless it was stupidly low interest rates. There's houses out here for 2, 3, 5, 10 million that I know that I could go to the person of that caliber and negotiate seller financing terms. Why? Because they've sat on the property for over 150, 200 days at that size property, and it's not their only problem. That's not a problem to them. They just want to do something with it, and so they're going to have an educated conversation. And when we talk like I just talked, and it works for them, and they get the payment paid, they're just looking at it as a return. So I don't know why I would go off and hope that they give me a mortgage and put X amount down and whatnot. I mean, I didn't, but 0 now. Now another portfolio I bought 16 units from another investor, and I put $200,000 down on it, but I raised that private money on that one. And what happens, let me tell you something bad about creative finance. You've heard about it a lot, right? You were, is that sub 2 hat, right? Yeah, so he talks about sub 2. The only thing is, like, the notes don't get called due. I'm telling you right now, they can get called due. So what that means is this investor, this lady, didn't have hardly any debt because she inherited the properties, okay? She didn't have any debt. That's what you have to be cautious about when you do creative. She didn't have any debt. But the guy that I'm talking about, the 16-unit guy, he did have debt, and he pre-disclosed it. It wasn't like a secret. I'm fine with it. He has debt on it. Where it gets a little deep. So ask questions or tell me to slow down. He had debt on the properties, and we did what's called a wraparound mortgage, meaning he had debt for, let's just call it $1 million. He sold them to me for 1.5, and so we made sure that we wrapped the old loan with his. So it says this, basically we have title to it, because otherwise I could be paying him and he never pay his bills. And so I wanted to make sure that took place, and so we had a wraparound mortgage. But when we did the wraparound mortgage, the bank got notified from either some situation at my office or his office in some capacity, put in some document that notified the bank, and then the bank, Oklahoma Bank, sent him a assist letter. Essentially, it says the note becomes due. It's called due on sale. A lot of times in your mortgage paperwork, they say if you sell the property to somebody else, and it basically says you can't do that. And they have every right to say that you need to pay all the debt. And they can take that 30-year loan, that 10-year loan, that 15-year loan, whatever you have, and they can say you got to pay this in 3 months. And they usually give you about that window. And so what you do is, it's not that scary. I know it seems scary in capacity, but fortunately for me, and this is where I don't like the sub 2 stuff, because I don't dislike all of it. Let me say that is that because I'm an experienced investor, I already have enough bankability that I was able to refinance that portfolio. But if I was an amateur investor, some 22-year-old kid that took down that portfolio because some guy online taught me, and I got hit with that, and I couldn't take down the properties, I'm in a shitty position, and I put that other person in a shitty position too. See what I'm saying? That's why I don't like some of these guys that say you have no money down. You can do no money down type stuff, but you have to understand a lot of this. I understand a lot of it. But then what a do all sell clause is exactly like I said. So it collapsed the time, boom, we have to pay this $1 million plus off, or he has to pay it off technically is what they're saying. But if he doesn't pay it off, then they take the properties, and I already gave him $200K. Like all of this snowfall, like this waterfall effect happens. Boom, boom, boom. So I call my lender, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna have to refinance these properties. I kind of need to do it in a period of time. He contacts them, contacts the bank, which is what you should always do. If you guys have ever been behind on a payment, or you've ever been through a struggle, people in 2008 went through a lot of it. I've talked to a lot of students and people in general that have been through financial stress, and you should talk to your lender. Literally see what you can negotiate and work through, because they'll set terms up for you. They don't want you to foreclose. They don't want you to go to bankruptcy. They want to negotiate with you. That's a whole nother realm. But so what he did is he called the banks, just what's on the email, and he started to basically tell them what's going on. He's like, look, here's the deal. You're right. I did a wraparound mortgage. They're like, cool. I had property, and they still said, yeah, we don't care. We're done. Like, I'm off. It was Bioki for anybody that doesn't know, yeah. Anyways, he goes and talks. That's what's huge. Like, he created the conversation. They're like, okay, we'll give you a little bit more time. Because they don't really want to go through with this. They don't want to freaking have these 16 properties on their books and go through all the foreclosures. It's going to cost them a ton of money and time and everything else. And so he told them what's going on. He kept them abreast of the conversations, and we ended up refinancing them all with a longer term lender, which kind of sucked because I didn't get to refinance them and juice the value of them as much as I wanted to. So I kind of had to move really quickly. But I'm telling you guys this because shit comes up. Things come up. You got to be handling it. You guys can do that when you learn this, and you have the bank. You've started, But like I said from this morning, like you just become the person that solves more problems when you start solving the problems, So good question on that. Anybody have any questions on the scenario on acquisitioning seller finance? No, nothing. Does everybody understand the concept? You kind of understand it? Like I'm getting somebody else, just doing the deal together, right? You can have debt on it. Let's talk about that. That's where I'm going to go into like selling creatively. And this is something that Alicia and I have done. And I told somebody on the break, are you out of here, bro? All right, dude. We'll see you. Everybody give Brandon a round of applause. He's got to catch a flight. I give him a hard time. So selling creatively. What we talked, who was I to on the, I talked to a lot of y'all, I'm sorry. But like what we done was you, Edwin, earlier. We talked about a deal that Alicia and I had, this rental property that went vacant. It was a Section 8 rental property. So everybody talks about Section 8. You hear a lot of it. You're like, affordable housing, Section 8, government pays, it's going to be more rent. This is great. But there's downfalls to Section 8, which I can talk about in a minute. But what we ended up doing is this property became vacant. And the property was falling apart. After we had gotten it vacant, we're like, oh shit, we don't have the money to rehab it. We already have new debt on it. Like, it's not cash flowing. Like, what are we gonna do? We had gone to a real estate class, one of the ones I was telling you about that quarter, and we talked about creative selling, creative financing, and so it was called a contract for deed on it. There are also things called lease options. A lot of people do contract for deeds in Oklahoma now, I think because like I taught Eddie and them how to do it. Yeah. So contract for deed is me on the other side of the fence. I'll sell the deal to you instead of creatively. I'll be the bank. And so the way I did it, and the way we do it with contract for deeds is we would go and buy these properties. And essentially what I had to do this with, my story, going back to my story, is like we had a rental property vacant. I couldn't afford to fix it. I didn't know what to fucking do. I learned the lesson at this little class and seminar I went to, and I implemented it. And so I did a seller. So what I did is I said, I'll sell the property to you. I put it on the market. I'll sell or finance the property. And then I owed like 80 on the property. I ended up selling it for 100. He put like 20 grand down. And so I took a vacant property that I was going to have to rehab that I didn't have the cash for, put 20 grand in my pocket. And then I had like 5% interest rate on this loan. I said, I'll sell it to you for 10. So I have a 5% interest margin. And I sold it to him and I put it on a 20-year. And so I just matched my loan. Boom, boom. And so I took it and I turned it into a positive and made more money. And honestly, what we're getting ready to dive into, guys, this would be the fastest way to start making real passive cash flow. You know why? Because there's no maintenance. There's really literally no maintenance. The worst case scenario is it burns down. I've had one do that. Christmas last year, and I got paid by the insurance, and then I sold the house, burnt down, and made 35 grand. So it's really not a bad scenario. The other bad scenario is you're like, well, what if they stop paying? That's the biggest fear, right? Like, well, what if they foreclose? I'm like, well, then give them some freaking money to get out and move on with their life. Like, give them some cash. Give them bucks. Give them 2,000 bucks and move on. They've been paying you for X amount of years. Keep going. But I'm going to show you the cool thing about creative and getting into a little bit of debt. It really has become one of our. I think it's one of the force multipliers when it comes to like real estate investing is understanding the side so well that you can start being the financing side. It's just mind blowing. So there's our scenario again. 50 grand, 20 grand, all in, 70,000, ARV, 100K. All right, so let's say off 30 grand, I got so excited and now I can't sell it. And then I was gonna rent it out and I have been sitting on the vacancy for freaking 3 months. What the hell am I gonna do? This is the worst thing ever. I'm gonna go broke. And I would say, hey, have we tried the tertiary method of seller finance and creative financing? Let's advertise this property for sale and say, hey, we'll finance the deal. Let's creatively sell the deal. So in this scenario, we still have equity. Good thing we made equity. We created it. The property's still valued at that. It just wasn't moving. Or you could sell them right off the bat like this. This is how some investors do. They'll build, we were talking about development a minute ago, they'll build an entire neighborhood and they'll do either lease options or they'll do seller finance, and they'll become the financing side of their whole development. But why? If you look at it on an amortization schedule of how much interest they're gonna make, maybe they were gonna walk away with 10 million on the development to sell the properties. On the AM schedule, it's gonna be like 100 million because they're gonna ride the loans. It's just insane. I mean, that may not be that big of a difference, but I'll show you the little difference here in a second. So let's say you sell the property at $100,000. Your interest rate, you did a refinance, like we talked about, right? We refinanced it, boom, 70K on a 7.25 loan. 30-year fix for you. This is for you, Mr. Investor or Mrs. Investor, for all of you in here. 30-year fix, cool. And then I'm gonna draw a payment down here. Don't be yawning, bro. You're gonna have to do push-ups. Who's yawning? Taylor. He can't even do push-ups. It was what we had earlier. Okay, that's our payment. Say we sell the property at 100 grand. Okay, I'm being modest. You think I should go up? Would you sell it for more? See, who's the bulldog here? She's like, juice the price. You can sell it for more. I'll say 100 grand. She's right, I am being modest. But let's say they put 20 grand down. 20 grand down payment. So now they owe us $80,000. And their terms are, well, what are you gonna charge them, big dog?
Go off of your example from earlier. So.
10%? What are you gonna charge interest rate to them?
Oh, I'm at 12 right
You're at 12% right now? See, she knows. That's what she's charging. She's crazy. Don't buy anything from her. That's right. Property value, boom, 100,000. This is where this calculator comes in. And if you guys have your calculators up, I want you to punch these in. If you downloaded the app already, punch these numbers in so you guys can verify and see the difference. If you didn't download the calculator, then get out. We'll do it on a 30-year because I want to match my loan. Their payment is $550 or $45. This is a small deal. This is not a lot of money. What is that, like less than 50, 60 bucks, right? No, it's...
You're right, you're just not adding in taxes and interest, guys. So just say
Yeah, that's fine. So if they take this full term, you'll make the spread between the total interest. So if you guys have your calculators out, go to the sum page, it's on the far right, and then you'll be able to see the total amount of the loan. So what you need to do in order to do the difference is you punch in your loan, and then you write it down, and then you punch in their loan, and then you write it down. And so what this is how banks make money, right? Like this is literally money on money. This is showing you the difference. So you're gonna pay a total to the bank $111,000 in interest over the period of 30 years. And then they're gonna pay you $216,000 over the total month. And that is the spread, that's the cash flow that you're gonna make over this period of time. Which in this scenario, per month, that's called an AM, your total interest on the AM is what? 22 minus, yeah, so 345. It goes back to almost our exact payment as if it was a rental, but we have zero maintenance. We carry the taxes and insurance. It's escrowed, so it's carried to them as well. So like if you want true passive income immediately and sooner, then you just sell or finance deals like this. So you can just own X amount of these properties. And what we do, I think we have over around 30 of these, 25, 30 of these seller finance deals. You were buying one like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
I'm trying to buy a commercial building right now, but I don't have the inventory if I don't have the houses that.
That's gonna be confusing. Okay, so what we're saying is like We have about 30 of these, but I still have rentals too, right? So, and the only downfall to this, literally the only downfall to this is that I sold the property at 100K, and over 30 years, in Oklahoma specifically, it's probably gonna be worth like 300K. Over 30 years, maybe 4 even. I don't care what it is. So you lose the value that you get when we talked about like long-term play. But if you're playing all 3 of these games, then you're getting each one of these. You know, this would be a cash flow game, and it's also giving you instant money now. So it's kind of a good tool if you can't sell a property. It's literally a good tertiary plan. Like I've had markets where things are not moving, but somebody else would buy the property, and I'll sell or finance it all day long like that. And it's kind of set it and forget it. Like it's literally is set it, forget it. Like somebody puts enough money down, not a bad deal. And your question may be like, who the hell is gonna pay 12% interest and put 20 grand down? Well, some people can't get loans. Like they just can't get loans, you know? And I'll let them refinance the loan out too if they want to, because I just scoop up a little bit of the equity and move on and get some more. What was your question?
Is this like considered a wrap?
So it's called a contract for deed. How we sell it to them is called a contract for deed. Since it's their personal house, that's what it is. If they were savvy investors, I guess it would be kind of a wrap. It would be a wrap mortgage, but it depends on how you write the document. If they tried to do a wrap mortgage on me, I wouldn't do it. It's contract for deed. It's a legal document, and essentially it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the contract, and you get the deed at the last payment of the property. So they'll have full ownership of the property, and each time they make a payment, they take more legal right to the property. Does that make sense?
And they just pay you, correct?
Yeah, they pay me, and I pay the bank. Yep.
So they're gonna do that for 30 years?
Yeah, sometimes they pay them off. Sometimes they pay them off early. Sometimes I've literally had people, some of my guys in construction buy properties from me like this because they couldn't get loaning, and they'll buy a couple properties, and that's how they get rentals. And so they'll get them from me. They'll pay cash for them because like my mason, for instance, he makes a bunch of money and he's just trying to buy properties, you know. And so they'll park their cash and buy these properties, and then they'll rent them out. It's a smart play.
Yeah. Almost if they default, that's like almost best case.
Yeah, it is. Nailed it. Best case. Yeah, I know other investors, this hasn't specifically happened to me, but I know other investors that have like 200 or 300 of these. And they're like, yeah, dude, I've had people just leave the keys in my mailbox. And I'm like, after 5 years. Because people get divorced and they just bounce and they're like, neither one of them want the debt. They're like, and he's like, I made 20 grand. And then over the course of the X amount of years, I made all that cash flow. Then I got the property back and it's worth more. So,
How do you
it's crazy. It's like the ultimate hack almost.
decide, like, do you, like, vet them or, like, decide?
Yeah, we vet them.
Okay.
Yeah, we vet them. And so it depends on how hard you want to vet them, but we vet them like we would a tenant. Now, if you want to, you guys ready to have your minds blown? Thought your minds were blown already. You want to vet them even more. You want to be a little more stringent. You can hire what we are starting to implement, a third-party processor to do some of the vetting. And essentially, what you do is you're creating loans and notes. And so you're basically becoming the bank. Like that's what the bank has, right? They have every one of you guys, let's say we all had our loans at the same spot. That's just that paper. They have paper. So what you're doing is when you get them and you qualify them, you can sell that paper. You could sell that loan. So now that I got these terms, an investor would come to me and potentially buy this loan from me because they want to make a return on their money. And they don't have to do shit. They just want to buy the return. And so I'll make the profit on it, a little bit of the profit on it, and I'll sell them my loan. You know, you can bundle them. The key is like one doesn't make sense, but 100 or 200 of them or 50 of them, whatever, it makes sense to sell as a bundle. Does that make sense? Like somebody's gonna take their money and buy your debt. That's literally what happens. Like you guys have ever had your mortgage and you got a new letter and says, woo, this bank bought your mortgage. That's what they did. They just did exactly what I explained to you. Yep. They traded debt, they bought debt. And what happened in 2008 is they had too much, I forget even the name of it, but basically bad debt. Like they had too many bad loans in there, unqualified people. And so they're looking at a portfolio back in 2008, the regulations have changed a lot, but their portfolio, meaning all the debt that they have, all this money they have out, all this loans they have out, X amount of them are supposed to be prime, that's the word, and then the other ones were subprime. And so what happened is there were subprime loans that were given to people that didn't really qualify for these loans. And so those loans, they just covered them and buried them up, and then they traded them over, and then these people stopped making payments, and the market shifted. If you guys ever watch The Big Short, it'll explain a lot of it. It was a great movie. Yeah?
Hey, how does it work with the eviction process? Say like they miss 3 or 4 payments, you just write that into your contract?
Good question. So you cannot evict this. You are a bank. You have to do foreclosure. That is a down.
You write it in your contract that they will be released of the contract if they don't pay within.
Doesn't matter. They have legal rights.
You still have to foreclose.
Yeah. There's literally like attorneys like we've met in the past that are headhunting investors that will try to evict people that have documentation that shows ownership because they had legal right and it's taking advantage of them. So I get it. You have to be careful in that one. You have to do foreclosure in the foreclosure process. And so I highly recommend that you probably do these types of deals in a state where it's more landlord and banking friendly. Probably not, yeah. But what I just described in this scenario and creative financing in general, whether it's on the buying or selling side, is super, super important. And it can be like the ultimate, like I said, force multiplier in your real estate investing, because this is how commercial deals are done a lot of times. Bigger deals, 10,000 or 10 million, 20 million, 30, 50, $100 million deals, because sometimes the lending's not always there. And investors need to make numbers work. And so you literally start laying out all the numbers and you start learning you guys start playing with that AM schedule, start playing with a Carl's mortgage calculator, start understanding like, I could pay more for this because I really only need to make this for the cash flow. And if I held it for X amount of years, it'll be this much more. And you start going through all this and it's just mind blowing. But that's how commercial real estate's done a lot of times. So does anybody have any more questions about those or good questions on this? This is it's pretty in depth and I don't recommend people start out with this type of investing. They get a home, so they get equitable title. So a lot of times, going back to what I kind of said about renting versus owning, everybody's sold that they want to own a property. So you're just selling it to them.
Which is why it has to be foreclosure, because they have deeds.
Because they have contract for deed, correct, nailed it. They have equitable interest in the property, that's why. If they were a lease, you could just, it's eviction. That's why they want to do it, because they want to own the property, And there's some people that want to own property simply off of emotional, because they want to own it, I want to own it. And then there's others that want to own it because they're savvy and they want to do more. And it's never a bad thing. Let me give you an example, right? Like I've had many people, I grew up working with a lot of Hispanics in construction, and so a lot of Hispanics will buy these properties and maybe they're first gen or second gen. And by all means, this isn't literally race, this is just genuine talk, right? Like, so I'm just being completely blunt with you guys. This is just how it works. And like, though, that's a fucking smart move because they're gonna buy this house and own it. And then so if they're the first generation to come to the United States and they buy this property instead of pay rent their entire lives, their thought process is, and it's true, that they get this property and they're gonna be able to pass it down, and or it could be worth, like I said, in 30 years, 300 grand. Well, 30 years, their kids are only 30. So it's a good play. It's an advantageous win-win. And what would be good is if they went and refinanced it because my terms aren't good, but I'm giving them those terms because it's more risky for me.
Oh yeah, what if they refinance?
They can. It pays my loan off. Boom, boom. I get paid back. I've had that. Yeah, it's fine. It sucks for us because we don't make the money over the long term. I don't make that money. But it's never bad. Like I can't cry about getting. It's basically like a flip. Yeah, I just get cashed out. Yeah.
You can put in anything in the contract too, within terms with them, like prepayment penalties. Typically, I only give them what I get. So if I get a prepayment penalty, they're getting the prepayment penalty.
Yeah.
You just push it over.
Yeah, I give them it needs to be advantageous for both of us, and we do the right thing and take care of them. And
Yeah, we've had a scenario. I always bring this up because people do take advantage of people like that, and it makes me emotional, but I feel bad because I don't like people that do that. And so we had a scenario. We bought a property, and these people owned the property outright. Like they had they had a contract for deed essentially with the investor before. And he told me, I've told you all this story on Zoom. And his guy owns like 200-something properties, this shady ass like investor, and he also owns a bunch of oil, mineral assets, just real weird dude. And we came across him through a wholesale, like a direct to seller type marketing thing. And the dude goes, he's like, yeah, these tenants don't pay, which is super common, right? Like you get that, like tenants don't pay, they didn't take care of the house.
he's selling the house to us for cheap.
He's selling the house at a discount because if it's a problem. And I'm like, normal fucking real estate deal, like literally normal. Well, we go through the whole thing. We're like, okay, no problem, whatever. We close the deal, title insurance and everything. Everything's covered, like everything checks out. There was no hiccups in the title. I can't even remember what we bought it for. I think we bought it for like 100, let's just say. And it comes, we send our property manager over there who's bilingual, and he's like, hey dude, you guys need to leave. We're kicking you out now, new owners, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, we own this property. They whip out some papers like they never filed, and they like have all this print off, and they're like, we paid it off in like 2014. This fucking guy was screwing them over because they never filed the paperwork, and he's double selling the property. So he sold it to them, because this guy's an older guy. He has like older property. He sold it to them, I want to say like 10 years before, so 2004 or something. They paid it off, worked their ass off, like I said, and then he's resold the property because they never filed anything on the property that says they had legal ownership or title. And so what happens is we're like, oh shit, well you guys really do have some like legit paperwork, and that's just who we are. So we're like, call the title company, say, hey, we got a fucking problem. And they're like, I was like, first of all, we told them, we're like, you guys need to get an attorney and you need to start working in that angle. You need to talk to them. You need to sue him directly for doing this in general. We weren't gonna kick you out. We're not gonna fuck with you. We're not gonna mess with you. It's not that big a deal. We went to the title company. We have title insurance. That's why it's always important to get title insurance. Title insurance kicks in. They hire an attorney, which is just part of the rigmarole. The attorneys, we meet with the attorneys, and the attorneys go to bat and track him down and basically settle it. And the attorneys go also, they're on our side. And this is a business for us. And we were like, we were gonna flip this property and we were gonna make a projected $25,000. And so he has the choice of essentially go through the lawsuit, get screwed because the attorneys can pay whatever they want. Insurance is paying for it. Title insurance is covered. I'm not paying a dime. And he ended up settling and buying it back, and I don't know what happened to the people, but he bought it back from us for $125, so that was the fastest 25 grand ever, or the easiest, I should say. But so, yeah, literally made 25 grand because we had title insurance. It's little things like that that are important. But that guy is a complete asshole, so people do that. But what we do is when we do creative deals, like you just do your paperwork correctly, and you inform them, and and like I said, we've had people refi. Cool, go do it again. You pay them off. Yeah, just be a good human. It's important.
What would have happened if you didn't have that insurance? You would have lost? Or?
Yeah, I would have been forced to fight them. Yeah. And what a horrible moral fight. And they would lose, bro. Like, I don't even mean to be a dick, but they would lose because, like, I have legal title with zero documentation that they're ownership, and I didn't sell them the property.
The title was clear when we...
Title's clear. So that means title looked over everything, meaning that there was no cloud that showed they had any ownership.
That title would have, or the deed would have clouded the title.
If they would have had anything filed.
I mean,
yeah.
You can still close a clouded title.
What she's saying is like that would have popped up before we bought it.
Yeah.
The title company would have been like, boop, oh, this is blah, blah, blah going on. And we'd have been like, fuck you about it.
Just like if you don't pay your taxes, it clouds the title when you go to sell it.
Correct. You get fines for not mowing your lawn on your properties. You'll get clouded title, all sorts of shit.
And at the time, how much was the insurance?
Oh, we always get it. Every time you close, you always pay for it. You don't pay it monthly. It's like a title insurance. How much is title insurance?
I don't know.
It's literally like rolled in. It's not even a question whether you get it or not. It's like one of those things. Like you get it.
I don't know. It's not crazy.
It's not even that. I think it's less than that. How much is
I don't know. I get a good discount.
I thought it was like $300 or $400. Yeah.
It depends on the Samson. Yeah. It just depends.
Yeah, and that size properties is cheap. Definitely get title insurance no matter what, always. But yeah, that's what would have happened. That's what happened. We would have had to fight them, which, like I said, would have been a horrible moral battle. Because otherwise we're going to have to pay this debt for the rest of the whole thing forever. We're stuck with it forever. And they still lived in it for free because they had paperwork. I have legal paperwork. So, yep. Any questions about any of that? Creative? No? What time is it? Yeah, 3:30. Dude, we're right on time. Dang. I am, dude. I appreciate it. We'll close out here. I want to ask you guys some questions. If you guys will do me a favor, any of you guys, I'm going to call on some of you that have ever worked with me or have any questions, and I kind of want to just, hear what you guys have done and stuff. Edwin, you're first up to bat. We talked about your deal. How many real estate transactions have you done since we've started working together?
Working with you and leasing and all that?
Yeah, total.
About 7.
Okay, awesome. Hell yeah.
Personally, 2 flips.
2 flips personally. How many, do you have rentals still?
I got the 1 rental.
Okay. Is it cash flowing now, or is it breaking even?
It's like $200.
Positive?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm gonna refinance.
That's all that matters.
And I'm probably gonna do what
You gonna sell or finance it?
I'm gonna refinance it and probably take some money out and use that to buy more.
Yeah, I'll refinance it. I'll give you a lender.
Or I might see if that guy wants to buy it because he had mentioned he wanted to buy it for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's perfect.
He has money sitting around, so yeah.
What you want on this deal, guys, is you want more down, like as much as you can. We'll do them even at 10%, but you got to think you're never losing. Like if you don't need the cash, technically. Like when we did that first one, we needed the fucking cash. That's the same time we were talking about in 2018 when I did that contract for you. I was like, thank God I learned this information. I can breathe. I got a little bit of money, and this is over here, like.
Also, you're creating your own equity in it too, right?
Yeah, that's why. That's the only way we're able to do that.
I'm juicing up the numbers to sell to them, but.
You can do that for seller finance. Yes. But my point was, like, I would have done 10% down on this deal. Why? Because they're going to owe 90, and then 90% on 12% is going to be more than 216. So I'll make more money over the period of time. If that's the same concept for you guys that are talking about like VA loans and stuff, even though they're lower interest, they still make more money. When you start playing with that amortization schedule and that thing, you'll realize like how banks make money, how debt works, how money's made. So, yeah, man, I appreciate you saying that. Cool. Does anybody have any questions? Any more?
For the seller finance, is there any type of licensing or anything you need for that? Or?
Nope, not whatsoever, no whatsoever. If you say, yeah, Cowboys, baby. You just need to make sure you have correct documentation. I always recommend you run it through a real estate attorney. Always. Like have them, I'd even closed many of them at a real estate attorney's office. And then people like that too because it's more formal. But I've had I'll tell you some funny stories too, guys. I've had people show up with 50 grand cash at my office and drop it off, and I'll just rock out with like a rack of 50 G's because they'll put 50 G's down. And I've sold property, you can do this with more expensive property too. I've done this like $300,000 property, and then they'll put 50, literally I had one put 50 grand down.
One lady bringing 80, I was like, I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, she brought 80 grand cash, and we were like, we're gonna have to get a cash machine, look like Scarface. Yeah, but see, so you have to be careful, guys. This is a good point. This is a good point. This is the rule. This is like the rule. You don't go out of this. Is you can't put them on a 20-year and you on a 30. You have to line your debt up correctly if you're gonna have debt. You can't have them owing. They put 50 grand down. You're like, Austin said 50 grand. Hell yeah, 50 grand. They only owe 50 grand. I still owe 70. You're gonna have a problem when that loan comes due. You're upside down on it. So you have to make sure you understand both sides of it. Because you may not have a problem today, but you're gonna have a real big problem when they go to pay the loan off, and you're like, shit, I got a pocket.
Yeah.
So if you had like a 28-year loan and you want that to say 28 with a random number like that?
I'll do a longer loan. So like if I had 20, well usually it's only 25, but like 25-year loan, then they could have a 30. Yeah. What you're trying to play with for them is make sure that they can afford the payment monthly. Because think about what everybody always asks you, right? When you're brand new, most of y'all, you're laughing because it's true. Like they're asking, what could you afford for the payment? Yeah. What can I lock your fucking ass into with your W-2 job, and you can never escape the grips of my money? That's what happens. This is it. I'm showing you the backside of it, literally. So. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like they're gonna ask you the payment. Same when you buy a car, they're like, oh, they don't care like how much the car costs, like how much is the payment. So, and you have to do that to where they can afford the payment too. You don't want to put them in a bind. We've had some that I think people stretch themselves too far, and I went to them and I was just being generous. And I'm like, hey, you've had a problem paying this payment for the last couple months. I think we should redo the terms. And I'll basically be like, we need to lengthen them. We need to, because they'll be like, oh, we want to pay it off quicker, so let's put it on a 20-year or 15-year. And I'll be like, if you can't make the payment, then we need to pull it out and make it further. As long as I can cover my debt and make a profit margin, I'll be all right. And some of these deals, like, no joke, some of these deals, like these numbers will get crazy if you start to do this. If you can get deals at a deep enough discount and you could sell them, like we bought property that didn't need any rehab for like 70 grand, and how much did you sell that one in Del City for? 140, 150. It was like 150 or 160, dude.
Yeah,
it was 168, but I'll just use 160. But it didn't need that much. It just needed like updated. And so we sold it for like 160. We owed this, they owed that. Somebody pull the calculator up on that. I'll show you the big difference, and you're gonna be like, oh, now I see this.
And I got that house off a referral fee, and I paid the girl that told me about the deal $1,000. Dude, I was like, Brandy more, baby. Yeah. They're just so happy to have a home. But the house was smoked in for like 30 years, never remodeled. And the guy's in construction that bought it, and he just redid it all, and wow, it's really nice. So they're in the Del City.
So are you buying properties in Oklahoma still?
I will, but we just paused for a minute.
The only ones I'm buying right now are contract deed ones.
That's my monthly income on that spread.
Yeah.
See, they never call. I'm not on one call.
And every year, if insurance or taxes go up, then their payment goes up because,
It's written in the documentation, just like you guys would on your homeowner's insurance or whatever else. Yeah. That's probably one of the best ones. Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? Yeah. So.
Would you ever, because we're in California, would it ever be a good idea to get something that has a negative cash flow, but it's not a lot of negative cash flow?
Never.
Never.
I don't know why. I would never get into a deal for negative cash flow. It's just, now the only negative cash flow that you're going to have is like while you're remodeling the property. I mean, there are scenarios, but it's a very advanced player's game. It's not like you have one deal. Like if you can diversify it, I've bought deals at higher purchase prices because I know that I could take them down, but I'll never have like a rental that's negative. I hate that. That's like the worst. That you never want to set yourself up with that. The short answer is no, never. The long answer is like there's a time for that card to be played, but you need to be a very advanced player. Yeah. For instance, some people will finance like buildings and eat shit for like 2-3 years because the upside is so massive for the long time. But it's not like, we're not talking $160,000 house, bro. We're talking like, You know, people buy companies at a deficit because they know they can turn them in an X amount of period of time, or larger assets. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because they'll be like, say you buy a commercial building, for instance, just to answer your question long-winded, but like you buy a commercial building, a couple millions of dollars, and you know it's going to be much more, but the construction's going to take you freaking 2 years to do, and all this stuff to renovate it and change it out and to do this stuff. You know, but the upside of it is so high that you don't really care, and usually there's a lot of capital partners involved in that. It's a big boy play. You never buy things at a deficit, not at the beginning. I would avoid it for the most part, especially if you're going to go like, if you're going to stay a small, not smaller as in volume, but smaller as in team, and not raise like massive private capital, then no way. Yeah. Yeah, look at the spread between this. This is the total amount you'll accrue over the 30 years. 378,000 minus the, so 200. Yeah. But that's your monthly payment divided up essentially, so. And that's with 20 grand pocketed too, so. Does anybody have any questions? Any more questions? Those are good questions. Yeah.
So pretty much when you go to the bank, do you show them that seller financing contract?
No, not me. I mean, not really. Is that what you mean?
Like appraise and like get a loan out and stuff like that?
No, I already have the debt.
I already have the debt, yeah. Yeah, one thing, that's a good question I'll bring up. Like you want to make sure that you have solidified fixed lending before you jump into these, because if you pre-negotiate this and then you go to refi, I've made this mistake, it's the only reason I know. You go from a hard money loan to a long-term loan during that transition, and you pre-negotiated this, banking on this being X and the appraisal being higher. You may have sold it at that, but the appraisal may come in at 130. And if the appraisal comes in at 130 and they give you less of the 70%, and then you're like, shit, I got stuck money in this deal. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you kind of want to fix your loan first, and then you want to do this one. Or simultaneously, like almost like we've done them like within days of each other. Is that my phone? Probably. And no other questions? That was a good question. Yeah, but yeah, banks do see that on my balance sheet. They see, and I still have that on my balance sheet, so it looks great. You know, they look at that lease like, dude, that's person paying $1,400 a month. You know, they don't ask questions really. I just make sure on the back end that I have these, my bookkeeper takes care of like getting paid down and stuff, and the debt's the same. Yeah. What's up?
If, like, the person that's gonna buy it through the creative financing, they wouldn't need an agent, correct, to represent them?
Oh, no. Sometimes they will, though, so we work with agents. Alicia has really good connections with agents, and it helps a lot of times when if there is literally a language barrier sometimes for us. Like, we've had people on our team that are bilingual and stuff like that. Yeah, Edwin's bilingual, that's right. Well, just to make sure that, on both sides, like not because we want to hustle and get the deal, but because we want to make sure that they completely understand the contract too and what they're getting themselves into.
I'm not even putting it on the MLS, it's just Facebook.
Because he's an agent, right? No. Oh, Edwin's putting it on MLS, is that what you're saying?
Edwin is too,
Yeah.
but like you don't have to be an agent to list these properties in Facebook.
Used agents that have people too that do that. So I would use both. Whatever, I don't care how the deal comes to me. I pay him on the down payment.
No.
Oh, you wouldn't know, you not bench? We used to pay him on the down payment.
Well, that's when until I got 80 down, and I was like, that's too much percentage.
Oh, that's true.
I would pay
2% of the purchase price. There you go.
because they're literally not doing anything in the deal because they're buying the house as is. We're not. I mean, it's a very short window of closing, no inspections. So the agents literally.
They don't do anything. They just brought them there, and they're like, you guys figure it out.
And I pay them directly. So.
Didn't we have somebody trying to make a big rip on a? Oh, we did recently. We had somebody trying to make a massive. An agent, they can totally ruin deals. Amateur agents, I'll go on my soapbox for a second, can absolutely fuck your deals up and screw deals up. Just bad. So look, he's not in his head 100%. This agent got in between us selling a lot of properties to this other company that was willing to pay for it. We couldn't come to terms because she wouldn't forego her commission that she thinks she deserved, and we were gonna sell her finance them. And I was like, you don't deserve a full regular retail commission. I just negotiated all these terms with them. I'm doing your fucking job. And it made me really irritated, and it went south really quickly because she was like, I deserve this because I brought you this person. I'm like, you didn't do anything. It's like the same shit when they turn on the lights thinking they need freaking 10% of the purchase price. I have no problem paying, and this is something that's huge. I have no problem ever paying an agent that really is badass, right? Anybody that's ever worked with a badass agent that knows real estate, that can get shit done or find you something or brings you people, dude, straight up, I love that. I'll pay the commission full price. But if you're not doing anything, it's just crazy.
Didn't understand it, and she doesn't understand. We're not getting funded at closing.
She wanted a percentage of the total sale, and it was a $5 million deal. And she wanted 4% of that for doing nothing. And I was like, that's my entire down payment from this person on the seller finance deal. And I said, and I carry the loan for him for the next 5 years because he was gonna balloon it. I said, so you want me to assume the debt or assume the risk of him not making the payment and you walk away with the down payment, the properties that I own? Fuck you. That's basically what I said. And she just didn't understand why, because she just doesn't understand real estate investing. She was an amateur agent. And so you have to watch out for that because they can screw up stuff. Amateurs can get in the middle of these deals and they don't know to get business done. A good agent would have been like, well, what do we need to do? I'll take a flat fee. Let's get it done. She could have walked away with a cool $25,000 or $50,000. I'd have paid that. Let's go.
Well, real estate investing is not taught in the retail agent world in education.
Not at all. You guys just learned way more about real estate than 99% of agents.
It's black market to them, and it's not traditional, and they don't know what the hell. You're doing something wrong.
Yep. Only person else I want to call on you, if you would, just kind of, have we helped you in any capacity with real estate? You guys both?
So we had a house that we bought in 2019. We had some equity in it, and so we were like, after talking to Austin at the gym one morning, he's like, why would you just leave that money dead in there? Why don't you do something with it, right? And that was never something that would have ever come to my mind had I not been around Austin and talked to someone who had done it. So I brought it to her, and she said, hell no.
She was like remodeled her kitchen and everything, and I was like, she's hanging out with that motherfucker.
Dude, why don't we all go to dinner and we'll talk about it, right? And so we sat down with you two, and just how comfortable with it, we were just eating chips. Just do it.
You just sell your home and just...
We'll just move. Like you said, we remodeled the kitchen. We had 2 kids there. We were very emotionally attached. I planted all the grass in the backyard. But once we detached from that and we saw the potential that we had, it made it a lot more obvious of a decision. But just talking with you guys how comfortable you were, and you walked us through what it could look like and what it would look like, we were like, so I think a week later.
You guys, you did it. You took it to action. But what's huge about that is, like, not everybody needs to sell their house with equity, but you guys had, we talked about big aspirations before that. It wasn't a random conversation. No. It was like, what you guys are, I want to do this. And I'm like, well, how the hell do you ever expect to do that if you don't move off of freaking, if you don't move off this dot to get to this dot, then you can't really go anywhere. That's where a lot of us get hung up. You got to go. You got to pivot. You got to take this little step. You got to move. No pun intended. Literally.
I think it's cool because it's getting away from that lifestyle. You just get raised up and you're supposed to get this house and stay there, and that's what we're taught to do. And so it breaks that mold, and I feel like we're teaching that to our kids. It's not moving with all this stuff, but now it's the potential for us to do more or invest in more. And Alicia has been walking me through it, and so we're our own agents on the property. I'm dealing with all the potential
Good
buyers.
point.
We listed up, did our own photos, did our own sign, did our own MLS. So it's been a really—
You have learned a ton.
So much in 40 days. And so is it scary? Of course, but it's scarier to think that I would have been stuck in that house because I remodeled my kitchen for the next 60 years. I'm sitting in a house now that I never imagined I would have been able to be in.
And you're leasing. It's a smart way to go. That's what we do here.
Our kids have 2.5 acres now to run free and wild on. And if I stayed there, I would have been in a neighborhood with my neighbor begging me to trim my trees.
Really? I've been there, yeah. Yeah.
Experience, and it's scary, but it's like—
It's so good point.
Do you want to touch a little bit more on like the own thing? Because I think there's a huge stigma about like owning because of the whole American dream.
Oh, yeah. Like, oh, I rent, so it's like low.
People would be like, well, at least I own my home.
Yeah, the bank does, bro.
Yeah.
So don't. Yeah, like, well, I have it paid in cash, and I'll be like, okay, well, do your taxes for 2 years. You own your house. Like, literally. So you conceptualize that. Like I said at the very beginning of today, I was like, you don't own anything. Like, we'll die, you know. It's gonna impact your life more. Moving liquidity, changing, pivoting, you know, the faint of heart. There's nothing wrong with, like, if you've always wanted to have this thing, or if that was the place you wanted to be, then there's nothing wrong with that. But you do expect to grow. If you want more in life, then you have to be willing to sacrifice where you're at in order to reach the next level to what you want, you know. Renting versus owning, like I told you guys, I've made a lot of money owning, you know, into my properties. Like I said, I applied to cars. Some of you guys may be car people or like that, right? And I would be like, I couldn't afford the top level car or the top level truck, but I knew I could buy wheels on Craigslist, and I could freaking get some cheap wheels from a buddy at Discount Tire, and I could put them on there. And then I had a shop that I worked at that I could put my own lift kit on, so I could drive basically the same. Then I would sell that truck, and then I would pivot it and do it again. And like that's the exact concept I had implemented from that into building homes. Like I afford moving to that neighborhood retail because I didn't have 20% or 10% down to buy those houses in the first place I lived, but I built it at cost, and it was worth it for $400,000. I was able to get a freaking loan on it with stupid low interest rate at the time after being in the military, and it was worth $600 the day that I got it finished, you know. So next, and that's kind of how it works. And if you're going to utilize that money that you guys are going to walk away with when you sell your home for something dumb or a vacation or something like that, then it's not a good idea. you need to continue to parlay that into more wealth and more growth. And even if it's something that we've done, is when we have walked off from a deal or something, we've invested, like, no, I can always tell you this because it's the facts, and I realized what we did before is like we've a lot of money into educating ourselves. Like you away with a couple $100,000 from when you sell something, or it is like I to learn the next level. So I would spend a ton of money on coaches and classes and mentors and take it to the next, or joining masterminds. And I talked to you guys about a minute ago that has the high level real estate dudes in it that I go to once a quarter. That costs us almost 40 grand a year. You know, like a business, it's better than a business consultant. I show up, I talk to them, I got connections. Dude, I guarantee like the I've made through that community are insane. I can ask a question to somebody that's done 10 the deals that I've done, or doing it at a different level. Or maybe I want to pivot and sell some of my portfolio and get into multi or get into commercial. That guy I just told you about, he's gonna pick up the phone when I call, you know, if I'm investing in the, because I can have a conversation with him though. I can have an educated conversation of like, oh, need this one component, bro? Oh, okay, cool, thanks, bye. I'm not wasting his time. I know what I'm doing, so. I went on a long-winded rant about that one. But renting versus owning, it depends on where you're at, it depends on what you're doing, and I don't like the stigma with it. But like out crazy is like you get a property for much less right now where interest rates are than what you could freaking finance it for, and you don't have to lock up 20% of the property, right? But like I said, I would not own out here. I just would only own with equity again. I just never buy something at retail. There's no way I would do it. I would want to add value to anything to juice the equity right off the bat. You know, it is dead money. Like, why not take X amount of dollars and reinvest it into these deals to pay me good debt? We talk about debt, good than to just go put all of it down if I put it on this home. And now what? I have to go and make more money to go buy more of these? No, I could have just juiced my business to the gills to make 4 of these and 10 of these or 20 of these. So that's what's huge. And like I guys kind of told some other people, is like, same with the fix and flip. What's gonna impact your life more? Friggin' couple $100,000 right now, or like property and getting bitched at by your neighbor for the trees. And they're like, fuck, it's an easy decision, you know? Wanna live, this is something that's a more personal side, the personal development. If you have big aspirations, like we've talked about, how do you expect to get to those without giving up the neighborhood that you don't like the neighbor at? I mean, it's just not, and I don't know why. It's just fear, and we don't even know that it's fear. It's like there. I appreciate you saying that, dude. That was awesome. You guys are gonna do great.
Most people, I'm sorry.
You're good.
I always hear people saying that renting is like just your mind.
Yeah, and I would not disagree in some aspects, right? I'll give you an example right now. You guys are all here in this house. Do you think I can write this off? Bingo. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yep, it's a business expense. Yep. So it depends on what you do. And I know renting, even if I didn't have this event and stuff like that, it would still renting at your way. It is, but if you're making the money to pay for that and you're using your money to make more money and buying assets that pay you that you could do more with, then who cares? It's usually a fraction of what kind of income you're bringing in anyway, you know? Totally. Like something like really when we rented when we had to before we built that next one, we regrouped basically. There was something really free about that felt good after we got out of that situation. I was like, this feels nice. Like, even if we had to peel out of here, like, I'd be in less than 60 days, right? Like, they took my deposit and I would move on, and there's something freeing about that. And what else is not taught, or not thought about, I guess, is when you look at a DTI. When they look at you and they see your mortgage on there, and they see your car payment on there, and they see all these personal debt on there, they're looking at you and they're giving you loans differently. When you know your debt to income ratio. Good question. And when they're looking at you on paper, the banks, the lenders, the people, they're actually looking at you worse because you owe a lot. Like I said, you have a fixed income, you have X amount that you pay for your house, your cars, your insurance, these things, and they're running a number. They're literally treating everybody like a number, and they're doing a math equation on what they're gonna give you on your DTI, even if you have a business and things like that. And when you don't own a home, they're like, oh, he could get out of that, you know, about it. Like this lease was $5,000. It's not $5,000, but let's say it was $5,000 a month. Yeah, let's go. Let's say it was $5,000, and I leave to the next house. Like nobody's like, well, Mr. Hancock, tell us what the new lease is. You see what I'm saying? But when you go apply for a loan, they're gonna be like, well, how much do you owe on your property? How much your payment? Yeah, yeah. Different levels, new devils. So.
I think like because I always heard that too. Was raised like you open. And so after Taylor had met with Austin at the gym and he came home and asked me about it, and immediately I was like, no, like why did I sell my home that I did this? And so we sat down, and one of the things he brought up is like, you have to, right? Most people do. And most people can't put money away into that, right? And if you can, so we thought about it, we're like, okay, what did it take for us to put the money away that we can yearly to get to the point where we could put money down to buy a duplex, an apartment complex? Years and years and years. But then we looked at the equity that we had dead, sitting in the house, and all we had to do was sell that and we could buy all of these. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
That all I have to do is this, and then I can still move into a cooler house, and I'm gonna make more money off of this. Like at that point, once explained it to me like that, I'm like, why would we do this?
Yeah, well, here's the scenario on him, and what I said was like, okay, X amount of equity, right? He's like, yeah. I said, well, wouldn't it have been nice if you had 10 of them? He was like, yeah. I said, okay, let's do it. The point? Like, that's like, oh, got equity in your house? That was sweet. Let's own 100 of them. All is time. It's just time. It's gonna be worth more. You guys are sitting here today, what is it, November 16th? You know? What will it look like? You know, house go up, right? And that's where they say it's beneficial to own the property, because it is. Your only asset, if that's the only thing, and you don't do anything else but work a job and you want to retire at 65 and you have a 401k and a pension plan, then that is the best investment. But if it's the best investment, then why not dedicate your entire life to buying more of the best investments? That's what I came up with, at least. Boom! That's all I got, for real though. That was a good mic drop. I'll end on that.
I just want to say that the fitness and the business plan that we had mentioned to you guys, that's only for today. So if you want to sign up, get with me or call him.
Got it. Cool. Only today. Flex.